The boy always thought that he and his sister would have an ordinary life. But then dragon blood got into his eyes. Summoners have infiltrated the human world. The whirlpool of fate drew me in and gave me a great opportunity. The guy with blue hair kept repeating that no one passed the exam. However, the main character decided that he would still fight for his future. Even if his enemies mock him, his friends betray him, and those around him look down on him, he decided to prove his strength to everyone and rise above them, destroying their illusions and rising to the very top. 1,000 years ago, the magical beasts were ruled by a clan of dragons, and the one who stood above all was called the demon god. He had enormous ambitions and sowed chaos everywhere, led an army of magical beasts that conquered the human world. His greed knew no bounds, seeking to plunge every part of the universe into endless darkness. And then, in the face of death, humanity fully revealed its potential. At the dawn of the awakening of spiritual power, a select few gained the ability to control magical beasts and became known as beast hunters. The blue-haired rider, riding a lion, destroyed one dragon after another. The dragons groaned in pain and died in agony. She reported that a magical beast had been shot down over the northern district of Qingfeng City. The animal fell into a residential area, so emergency assistance is needed. Xiao Xinyu, a third-grade student from Xiangnan High School, looked at the falling magical beast with his mouth open. The dragon, covered in blood, fell face down next to Xiao. The dragon's blood unexpectedly gets into Xiao's eyes. The buildings around were destroyed. Everything was on fire and blood was splashing from the dragon's carcass. Looking at all this, Xiao stood in shock and could not move. She looked at everything that was happening with surprise and fear. The dragon was hit by a spell from the fire lion. The blow was so strong that it should have killed the dragon. The dragon, covered in a purple glow, began to fall lifelessly downwards, after which the rider confirmed that the magical beast was dead. Xiao rubbed the blood from his eyes and heard screams in hopes of finding out if there were any survivors. Xiao opened his eyes and was very surprised by what he saw in front of him. In front of him stood a huge lion and a beautiful girl, Su Ruyan, the headmaster of the Azure Dragon Academy, who was apologizing for the inconvenience. Su said that she would compensate for the damage caused to the Xiao household and pay compensation on behalf of the Azure Dragon Academy. Xiao happily snatched the letter and looked at Su with admiration. Su and her team of trappers said goodbye to the young man. Looking at them, the guy thought with admiration that these were the hunters. Xiao looked at the letter and really wished that he had a chance to become a trapper, as everyone in his world dreams of becoming a trapper. While the frustrated Jiu was thinking about how he didn't even have the money to buy the beast without which he wouldn't be able to pass the national trapper exam, a small beast suddenly appeared at his feet. It was a blue-eyed dog with a red seal on its forehead. He started licking Zhao, who was embarrassed and not very happy about it. Taking the dog in his arms, he wondered where the dog came from and whether it could be tamed. He remembered that the textbooks mentioned a dog-like creature. It was a storm dog. Since it didn't require much spiritual power, Xiao would be able to feed it. Xiao was happy that he now had the beast and would be able to pass the national exam. But then he was immediately visited by doubts, since there were only 3 days left until it. Despite the deadline, he happily tossed the dog, calling him a good boy. In the city of Qingfeng, there was an unremarkable trapper's shop. That's where Xiao went with his dog. He still doubted his abilities and thought that he could give the dog to someone who could take care of him. Xiao understood that the dog had no future with him because the dog ate a week's supply of food in one night, and the guy did not have enough money to buy that much food. Suddenly, the doors that Xiao was standing in front of opened, and a man with a red headband came out, asking what the guy was doing in front of his shop at such an early hour. Xiao offered to buy his dog from the store owner. The owner drove the boy away because he had no intention of buying a dog with such a low pedigree and no evolutionary path. The man with the red bandage on his head scared the dog with his screams, and Xiao asked him not to scream like that. If he didn't want to take the dog, then he shouldn't take it. Suddenly, a blue glow appeared, which made Xiao very surprised. A system window appeared above the dog with its characteristics: level, affection, pedigree, hidden talent, hidden talent, evolution path, hidden evolution path. Xiao couldn't believe it, so he rubbed his eyes. The window didn't disappear. There was still a system window above the dog with its characteristics, where it was indicated that the storm dog, thanks to a hidden path of evolution, can be a doomsday wolf. The shop owner told Xiao to get lost and that storm dogs don't have any evolution path. It turns out that the system window was only accessible to Xiao and no one else could see it. Suzha, a third grader from Xiangnan High School and the son of the richest man in Qingfeng, appeared in front of Xiao and laughed at Xiao for not taking the exam because Xiao didn't have a beast. Suzha saw a small dog in Xiu's arms and leaned over to him, saying that he had managed to collect a few coins after all. Xiao abruptly turned away from the nasty guy who was making fun of him for having a storm dog and told him to mind his own business. Suja said that Lin was right that Xiao didn't want to take the trapper exam. Su continued to mock Xiao and said that he would not have passed the exam even if he had really wanted to. Xiao asked Lin if she had said that. Su announced that he was now dating Zhang Lin. A girl in a red dress approached Suja and asked him where Su had disappeared to. He replied that he had simply noticed an old acquaintance, Lin, and decided to greet him. Embarrassed, Lin said that she had broken up with Xiao a long time ago and thought that the guy looked like a loser, and also dragged some mongrel around with him. Sai shouted at her not to forget who helped her when she was at her lowest point and that he didn't care. Lin could continue to spend her life with the rich idiot. Suji was shocked that he called him a rich idiot. He promised that he would grind Xiao into dust during the exam. Xiao was determined. He wanted to prove to everyone that the storm dog was not useless. 3 days later, the exam began at Jilin Square. The examination center in Qingfeng City welcomes candidates and asks them to take their seats. The test began and Xiao hurried to his seat. The people around him were shocked to see Xiao Xinyu here, because everyone thought that he didn't even have a beast. People said that Xiao had been unable to buy the beast for some time, but 3 days ago he signed up for the exam and applied to the Azure Dragon Academy, the best of the 4 academies. Everyone was shocked that such a loser would even dare to do something like that, and such statements made Xiao nervous. Xiao walked up to the table where the large golden ball stood and greeted the teacher. Chen Qingyan, a teacher at the admissions office of the Azure Dragon Academy in Qingfeng City, asked the young man who he was. Chen Qingyan tensed up, because Xiao was the only one in Qingfeng City who applied to the Azure Dragon Academy. Suja told Xiao that he knew no bounds, and that in the past 5 years, only 8 students from Qingfeng City had applied to the Azure Dragon Academy. None of the 8 people who applied over the past 5 years passed the exam. Suja is willing to kneel down and call Xiao Xinyu his father if he thinks he is so special and can enter the Azure Dragon Academy. Xiao warned him to prepare himself because he would soon have 2 fathers. Suji was angered by this cheeky joke, and Xiao informed the teacher that he was ready to begin the exam. The teacher warned that the selection process for the Azure Dragon Academy was extremely strict, so Xiao also needed to choose other schools in case he failed the exam. Otherwise, he would no longer be able to become a beast trapper. No one believed in Xiao, since the passing score was 800 units, but Xiao resolutely stated that he understood everything and was ready to begin. Chen Qingyan explained that the first test was a test of spiritual strength. Xiao placed his hand on the large golden magic ball. The ball showed a result of only 316 units. People started laughing at Xiao, and the teacher thought that he had a promising student in front of him. Suddenly, the spiritual power indicator began to grow rapidly and reached 621 units. The numbers on the ball were still rapidly growing upwards. There were already 711 units. The spiritual power indicator has already exceeded 800 units. People thought that the spiritual power measuring device was broken, as it showed an unimaginable 956 units. As a result, the ball stopped at 1,028 units of spiritual power. The teacher was shocked to see such large numbers that the device even cracked. The mood of the people around suddenly changed to horror. They did not understand what kind of monster was standing in front of them. The spiritual strength indicator is directly related to the potential of the hunter. Every 100 units of spiritual power allows you to make a contract with one magical beast. In the future, Xiao Xinyu might even become a 10-star level beast hunter. In recent decades, only a few such trappers have appeared in the land of the dragon. Chen Qingyan announced the result of candidate Xiao Xinyu. He didn't expect that Xiao would be so strong, only 2 points less than the genius Ye Ningshuang. The crowd was furious because there were 2 tests in the Azure Dragon Academy. The second was a test for the quality of the magical beast's bloodline. The teacher was about to announce the next test, but then his assistant approached him. The assistant reported that there was a minor malfunction in the spiritual power meter. The final result was 1,032 units. Chen Qingyan asked not to tell anyone about this because it was 2 units higher than Ye Ningshuang. The teacher announces the second test, a test of the quality of the magical beast's bloodline. Xiao raised his right hand to summon his magical beast. He shouted the name Black Fang, and the creature began to slowly appear piece by piece. A golden whirlwind formed around the creature. This spectacle fascinated people and terrified them at the same time. The storm hound appeared. It caused outrage because it is the worst choice for pedigree testing. At present, no one contracts with it. The teacher was upset because the quality of the pedigree is one of the decisive factors limiting the development of trappers. The teacher was going to upset Xiao because his beast. Suddenly, shouts could be heard from the crowd that it was not a storm dog. The dog was transformed before our eyes into a huge beast. People couldn't believe it, because storm dogs don't evolve. After the dog's evolution was complete, the teacher approached him and began scanning the dog to a pedigree level that was equal to epic. Xiao Xinyu passed the tests and was accepted into the Azure Dragon Academy. Suja realized that it was time to quietly slip away with his new girlfriend. But then Xiao noticed this and asked where he was going, if he wanted to say goodbye to his father. Suja called Xiao a freak and said that he needed to know his place because he was not going to kneel down and call Xiao father because he would not do anything to him anyway. Xiao gave a command to Black Fang, causing Suja to turn around in horror. A second later, he found himself under the dog's powerful paws and Xiao asked him what he would say now. Suja asked for forgiveness from his new father, Xiao Xinyu. Xiao told him to get out, as he couldn't have such a worthless son. Chen Qingyan confessed to Xiao that she had fallen in love with him very much over the past 2 years, and she thought they still had a chance to start over. Xiao left and said that she and everything connected with her was already in the past. Chen Qingyan fell to her knees, exhausted, and begged him to forgive her because she was wrong. Xiao picked up the phone and started calling his sister to brag about getting into the Azure Dragon Academy. He greeted his sister happily, but heard nothing in response except beeps. The boy realized that his sister was in danger. On the outskirts of Qingfeng City, where there was a farmer's market, chaos reigned. People were running from monsters. Someone was trying to find their child. Hiding behind a rock, the white-haired girl hugged a crying child. Suddenly, a huge sting of a monster appeared from behind the stone. Behind them was a giant scorpion. Xiao felt that something was wrong. Something had clearly happened, so he rushed to help. After running to the farmer's market, Xiao immediately started looking for his sister. The monster was already ready to attack the girl with a small child. Xiao rushed to help his sister. Suddenly, his eyes started bleeding and a blue glow appeared. A system window appeared in front of him, offering to use the new available skill of the Hellish Storm Wolf, the Bonds of Hell, Hellish Howl. Xiao shouted in a fit of anger, "Black Fang! Hellish Howl! Hellish Bonds!" But nothing happened. Xiao was confused and didn't understand why. The monster struck its stinger first at Sister Xiao. At this moment, Xiao remembered that when the magical beast attacked him, the man from the Azure Dragon Academy shouted something like a spell. Then he decided to try to read the same spell. At the beginning of this catastrophe, when heaven and earth were not yet separated, a pact was made, sealed with his blood, and the spirits from the void were called, "Let blood become payment and words become bonds." He shouted loudly for the beast to listen to his order. A powerful beam burst out from the Hellwolf, which split the monster into several parts. Xiao didn't understand whether he had killed him, whether this was the power of a beast hunter. Xiao remembered that his sister was still near the monster. He ran to her, asking if everything was okay. Xiao apologized for coming so late. He was glad that everything was okay. He bragged to his sister that he had entered the Azure Dragon Academy and was now a beast hunter too. Suddenly, Xiao's dog jumped on him, and he was unable to stay on his feet, falling with him. He said that this was his new contract animal. Xiao introduced him as a hellish storm wolf, Black Fang. People were shocked that the monster was dead. Xiao confirmed this with a satisfied face. The woman who had lost her child called the little girl to her and thanked the trapper. The girl cried very loudly and asked her mother where she had disappeared to. Xiao and his sister noticed some strange stone on the monster and decided to check it out. A system window appeared in front of Xiao, describing this stone as the core of a magical beast. She picked it up and looked at it, thinking that it was just an initial stage core with a poison attribute. He threw the cannonball to the dog because he knew it would help Black Fang evolve. Xiao announced to everyone that the beast was dead and they were safe. People began to surround Xiao and thank him for saving them. They called him their hero. The girl that Xiao saved told him that now she also wants to become a trapper like him. Xiao encouraged the girl and said that he was sure that she would definitely succeed. Moonlight filtered into Xiao's ruined house. It illuminated Xiao, who was sleeping under the blanket. Suddenly, his sister appeared in the room and approached the sleeping Xiao. She stood behind him. Suddenly, a blue glow began to be reflected in her eyes. A strange blue rune appeared on the back between the shoulder blades. It was a rune in the shape of a blue ancient dragon. The sister called the unknown person and reported that the curse of the dragon rune was still in effect, and the seal on the essence of the Dragon King was intact. She didn't understand why Xiao was able to make a contract with a magical beast back then. It all didn't make any sense then. The stranger on the other end of the line said that this was fate, and he ordered his sister to keep an eye on Xiao. She understood the order and said that everything would be done. Xiao and his sister were at the Qingfeng railway station. The parents tried to pass on a basket of salted duck eggs that Xiao Yu loved as a child and a sealed gift. She said that he shouldn't be seen off and that he would come back during the holidays. The guy gave up his seat by the window to his sister and sat down next to her. A couple of hours into the journey, an announcement was made to the entire train. Magical beasts were spotted on a section of the railway. The carriage may shake. After a while, the train passed the dangerous section. Xie was happy that they would soon arrive in Longyan City, and his sister decided to remind him that school would soon start, so he shouldn't shirk. Suddenly, the train started shaking. All the passengers were shocked by what was happening. The loudspeaker announced that there were magical beasts ahead, a flock of three-eyed giant monkeys, and everyone needed to stay in their places. The passengers were in a panic, as there was a loud crash on the roof and cracks appeared in the ceiling. One of the monkeys fell into the carriage and people ran in panic to other carriages of the train. Xiao ordered his sister to sit still and not go anywhere. She asked him what he wanted to do. Xiao didn't answer the question, quickly turned around and started to leave, but his sister tried to stop him. Suddenly, a huge three-eyed monkey fell from the roof of the train in front of Xiao. But then the monkey was hit in the face by a golden fox, and a question came from behind Xiao asking how long he would just stand there and watch. It was Qin Yanran, the daughter of the Heaven Guild leader, who said that if Xiao didn't want to die, then he should go into hiding. Qin Yanran began to twirl her staff and chant some spell. After the spell was cast, there was a bright flash and the fox suddenly rushed forward. She saw the system window with the description of this fox. He was surprised that it was a three-tailed thunder fox. The people were glad that the hunter was fighting the monster. They considered themselves already saved. But Xiao wasn't so sure about it. He shouted to everyone to get off that carriage as quickly as possible. Three-eyed monkeys live in a pack, so the guy couldn't understand why only one attacked them. Shu told Black Fang that he needed to help the trapper. Qian fought off the monsters one after another, but she was already running out of strength. Then two monkeys attacked from behind, and Xiao shouted to the girl in the hope of warning her of danger, which made the girl turn around. Xiao decided to use the Black Fang Hellbond spell. After all the monkeys were immobilized, he asked them why they were no longer so frisky. Qian was very surprised by the fact that Xiao was also a hunter. She thanked Xiao for his help, and he said that there was no need for thanks and that any trapper in this situation would have done the same. She stared at the Qin beast. A system window appeared with status, diagnosis, and treatment. Xiao asked Qin if the fox was too active during battles, and then very sluggish and sometimes even injured itself. This question greatly surprised Qin, because it was true. He said that the fox had post-traumatic stress disorder, and the manual on magical beast diseases said that three-tailed thunder foxes were the ones most likely to suffer from it. Now Qin understood why Xiao had hardly smiled lately. She thanked Xiao by hitting him hard on the back and calling him brother, and said that she would take care of her treatment when she arrived. Qin will now call Xiao younger brother. Standing behind them was Xiao's real sister, looking annoyed. She wasn't very happy with what was happening. She decided to insert herself between Xiao and Qin. After all, Xiao is her brother. She hugged Xiao's hand tightly, so that he couldn't even move. Qin suddenly snatched Xiao from his embrace and asked if this was true. The girls began to tear Xiao apart from both sides and argue about whose brother he was. In the central square of the Azure Dragon Academy, there were first-year students. The dean of the Azure Dragon Academy, Lin Kong, and his deputy, Wang Dongsheng, addressed them. He asked the first-year students to be more patient and wait for the principal. Xiao waved goodbye to his new sister Qin. Xiao finally got into the Azure Dragon Academy. The purple giant beast emitted a purple ring with its roar. The freshmen were delighted because Principal Su arrived on her beast. She flew past the crowd of first-year students, accompanied by their enthusiastic cries. The director began to land on her purple giant lion. The dean asked if Su could say a few words to the freshmen. Xiao remembered that this was the woman who defeated the Shadow Magic Dragon. He didn't expect that Su would be the principal of the Azure Dragon Academy. Su congratulated everyone on entering the academy, but decided to remind them of one more thing. It doesn't matter whether they are from a noble family or from a poor one. In the Azure Dragon Academy, they must obey its rules, especially the 8th rule. The first-year students were shocked by these words. No one knew about this rule and what it consisted of. Su said that the 8th rule of the academy is that if a conflict arises between students, it must be resolved through a duel in the arena, regardless of who is right or wrong, and the loser must apologize to the winner. Xiao reasoned that the 8th rule may seem harsh, but in fact, it prevents the scions of noble families from using their power to oppress the weak. Even ordinary students can defend their honor with their own strength. 2 hours later in class, Xiao's classmate couldn't believe that he was in the same class with him. After all, He is the same monster with spiritual power almost like that of senior disciple Ye Ningxuang. The teacher came in and told everyone to sit down because they were starting class. The whole class obediently obeyed their teacher and sat down in their seats. Someone from the back of the class whispered to Xiao that they would now always follow him. The teacher asked with displeasure to keep quiet in the classroom. He turned to the students and said that from now on, he, Chen Qingyan, was the supervisor and hoped that they would all achieve great things in the Azure Dragon Academy. Then asked the class to open the first chapter of the Illustrated Handbook of Magical Beasts. The strength of a magical beast is determined by two factors. The first is the form of the beast. At the moment, the following stages are known from the lowest to the highest: initial form, mature form, full form. The next stage is the transcendental form. And finally, the form of the king of beasts. The second is the quality of the magical beast's bloodline. According to records, the blood of magical beasts is classified from the lowest to the highest. Beasts with a higher pedigree can suppress those with a weaker pedigree. In addition, the attributes of magical beasts can suppress and affect each other. For example, the 5 most common ones: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The principle is as follows: wood suppresses earth, earth, water, water, fire, fire, metal, metal, wood. Based on these 5 basic attributes, others can appear, such as sand and lightning. But this is the topic of the next lesson. Xiao was fast asleep on his desk. He missed the teacher's entire lecture on magical beasts. The teacher noticed this and threw chalk at him, shouting at him to get up immediately. Xiao had a lot of courage since he decided to sleep in his class and during the introductory lesson at that. Since he was so smart, the teacher asked him to name the weakness of the demonic lizard. If Xiao didn't tell him, he might as well pack his things and get out right now. Xiao confidently said that the demonic lizard's weakness was the poison sac under its belly. The teacher asked the next question: which area does the ice giant crocodile usually live in? Xiao immediately answered that it was in the southern part of the Dragon Country, in the Shuangjiang Lake area and the Kunlun Glacial Waterfalls, and the whole class was delighted. The next question was not long in coming. If a guy meets a sky-tearing demonic tiger in the wild, what will he do? She said he would clutch his ID badge in his teeth and hide somewhere in the shadows. Xiao's answer caused confusion among his classmates and the teacher himself. He explained that the sky-tearing demon tiger was a magical creature at the Beast King stage, a mutated species that only a beast hunter of at least 6 stars could fight against. And if rookie beast hunters encountered it in the wild, they would die. Therefore, Xiao concluded that taking the ID tag in his teeth would be a better idea, since it would be easier to identify his body, and he would lie in the shade in order to slow down the decomposition of the body. The teacher shouted with delight that this answer was beyond all praise, and also asked how he was able to answer the questions from the following editions. Xiao, holding all the publications in his hand, replied that he had already studied them. His classmates were at a loss as to how they were supposed to keep up with Xiao and where he came from. The teacher told the class to study on their own, so that they could get closer to Xiao in knowledge, and also ordered Xiao to follow him. Xiao apologized to the teacher for sleeping during his lessons. The teacher asked if he had really learned the entire course in half a lesson. Xiao said that it was thanks to Teacher Chen's teaching talent. The teacher asked to stop this flattery and move on to more advanced materials. He gave Xiao a pass to the Azure Dragon Academy library. With this pass, he can freely visit the library and borrow any books for free. The teacher told Xiao to leave as he could not teach him anything more. The guy immediately went to study new materials in the academy library. At this moment, Wang Yun, the son of Vice Dean Wang Dongsheng, enters the library and says that this is his library today. He ordered all the boys to run out of the library, but lustfully indicating that the girls could stay and study with him. The girls pitifully begged him to let them go and let them out of the library. Xiao couldn't stand it and threw the book straight at the bully's head, telling him to shut up. Wang Yan was shocked by this action, and his minions said that Xiao clearly did not know his place. Xiao stood up for the girls and asked the guy, "Does he really have no conscience at all?" Since he mocks the girls, Wang Yan irritably asked who Xiao thinks he is. The girl advised Xiao to leave, since he was the son of Vice Dean Wang Dongsheng and should not be messed with. Then Xiao understood why the bully was so impudent because Daddy was the Vice Dean. Wang Yan was glad that he realized everything and ordered Xiao to kneel down and apologize. But in response, Xiao only swung, and with all his strength he hit the hooligan between the legs. He immediately fell to the floor and began to writhe in pain, and his friends asked if everything was okay with him. Wang Yan decided to remind who he is. Does Xiao think he can handle the consequences, since he will make sure that he does not leave the library alive? Wang Yan promised to show who is the boss in the Azure Dragon Academy. Suddenly, Su entered the library and said that she didn't know that Wang Yan was the boss here. Wang Yan wondered how Director Su had arrived at the library so quickly. Su stated that she knew everything, and since a conflict had arisen between them, it should be resolved as stated in the 8th article of the Academy's charter. The students began to fill the arena, because now Xiao Xinyu and Wang Yan would begin their duel. No one believed in Xiao, because Wang Yan had the legendary six-fingered ice leopard. Teacher Xiao also came to watch this fight. He believed that he would not let him down. The referee announced that the fight would begin soon and the fighters should get ready. Wang Yan said he would show what happens to those who dare to go against him. She said with a smile that he could just apologize, which made Wang Yan even more angry. The referee announced the start of the fight. Wang Yan immediately decided to use the Ice Flame spell. A blue mist formed around Wang Yan. From this icy fog, his magical beast with huge claws and fangs appeared. A system window with the characteristics of the six-fingered ice leopard appeared above them. Xiao began to study this window. Xiao was alarmed because this magical beast had two attributes at once. It was Xiao's turn to show off the power of his magical beast. From the flames emerged the mighty wolf Black Fang. The audience was surprised by Xiao Xinyu's beast. The beast looked impressive. It definitely won in beauty over the six-legged leopard. Somewhere on the teacher's podium, Su was sitting and she was also surprised, as she had never seen such a beast before. She suggested that the beast might be a storm dog that had evolved. But she knew that these beasts were always considered to have no path to evolution. So how could Xiao Xinyu achieve this? Wang Yan shouted that he wouldn't be scared by such a show. Xiao could prepare his apology. Wang Yan used the Ice Flame and Deep Freeze spells, and the leopard rushed to attack. Xiao, without thinking twice, decided to counterattack and used rapid dashes. Black Fang, dodging the enemy's attack, quickly reached his target. But the leopard still managed to hit the dog. The teacher thought that the Hellstorm Wolf was a magical beast with the attributes of fire and wind, while the leopard was a magical beast with the attributes of water and earth attributes of wind and ice, so it would not be able to overcome the advantage of the elements. Wang Yan shouted that he would destroy the Xiao beast and activated the Ice Flame. Ice burst from the leopard's mouth, completely freezing Black Fang. Wang Yan laughed at Xiao, because his beast would soon freeze to death. At the teacher's podium, everyone held their breath, wondering what move Xiao Xinyu would make. But the smile did not leave Xiao's face. Despite the current situation, Xiao asked Wang Yan if he was sure that the Fang would freeze to death. Xiao unexpectedly used the spell Hunt in the Dark. In an instant, Black Fang disappeared from his icy prison, and people were very surprised by this. The teachers immediately understood that this was an attribute of darkness, which meant that Xiao Xinyu's beast had 3 of them. Wang Yan shook his head from side to side. He couldn't find Black Fang. Behind Wang Yan, Black Fang appeared out of nowhere, already extending its sharp claws. The ice leopard managed to repel Black Fang's attack. She said in surprise that since he was able to repel such an attack, then let him show everything he was capable of. Xiao went on the attack using the Claw of Oblivion. Fang struck one blow after another. The leopard did not move and could not fight back. Oblivion Claw is a dark attribute skill that causes paralysis for 3 seconds when it hits a target. Xiao decided that it was time to finish off his opponent, so he used Hellish Howl. A powerful golden beam burst from the dog's mouth and hit the leopard straight. The exhausted leopard lay on the ground and did not move. Xiao Xinyu won the match, and the audience exploded with delight. Wang Yan couldn't believe his defeat. He fell to his knees and didn't move. Xiao walked up to the loser. Su announced that now, according to the school rules, Wang Yan must apologize properly. Wang Yan knelt before Xiao and asked for forgiveness. He then stood up and left, hearing Principal Su praising Xiao, saying that he was the second student who could impress her. She is waiting for Xiao to perform at the freshman ranking tournament in 3 days. Xiao was embarrassed and thanked Su for the praise and asked her who was the first thing that impressed her. Director Su replied that it was a genius girl with a spiritual power level of over 1,000, Yening Shuang. Xiao heard her name again, just like he did at the entrance exam. Su knows how to appreciate talent, so she gave Xiao a spatial ring as a reward. Xiao didn't expect such a gift, because this ring can store anything you want. He happily accepted the gift and thanked Director Su. Once he got out of the gates of the Azure Dragon Academy, he knew that his sister was probably worried, so he had to get home quickly. Xiao didn't notice and crashed into the little blue-haired girl. He asked if everything was okay with the girl. The girl was clearly still a little dizzy. Xiao asked the girl to look around next time so that this doesn't happen again. But now, let her run home. But the girl said she had nowhere to go, so she asked for shelter. When Sister Xiao came home to the family dormitory, she was shocked. She thought that he had kidnapped this girl. Xiu tried to explain himself to his sister, but she kept interrupting him and saw no point in it since he had already done everything. When everyone calmed down, Xiao told them that Ximeng was afraid of magical beasts, so she couldn't become a trapper, and that she was constantly bullied at home, so she ran away from home. Xiao decided to bring the girl home so that she could overcome her fear. The girl asked her sister for permission to stay at their house because she did not want to return home. The sister allowed the little girl to stay at their home so that she could overcome her fear. But she set one condition for Xiao, that he should never date a girl from the Ye family. During another class at the Azure Dragon Academy, Xiao thought about why he shouldn't date a girl from the Ye family. Xiao's classmate asked him what he was muttering under his breath. Teacher Chen said that in this lesson they would be determining roles on the battlefield, so the classmate needed Xiao's help. Xiao apologized because he was lost in thought. Then he clarified the question and began to explain that the trappers acted as a team, and their roles and responsibilities were different. Marksmen have ranged combat skills, allowing them to take out enemies from a distance. Mages have well-developed crowd control skills, which give them a significant advantage in team combat. The tank has strong defense and skills that restore health. The tank is a shield for the rest of the team. The killer is endowed with high maneuverability and the ability to finish off enemies. The killer's main task is to attack those who can barely stand on their feet. Support is famous for its buffing skills that impose a variety of positive effects on all team members. A classmate was very surprised by this information and asked Xiao what role he thought his butterfly bury was suitable for. The teacher reprimanded Sheng Yu to stop chatting in class. The teacher said that according to the ordinal numbers, it is necessary to call your animals to take the test. Sun Hu summoned a magical beast that has strong defense, so he is now a tank. Sheng Yu summoned his storm butterfly, which possessed mass skills based on the water element. The teacher asked if Xiao was ready. He confirmed that he was ready and summoned the beast. The beast hit the simulator with a hellish howl and an explosion thundered. The simulator showed a triple critical hit, and the numbers on it began to grow rapidly and stopped at 6,371. Classmates were shocked by this. Someone said that they wouldn't even make it to 1,500. The teacher thought that the attacks of beginner beast hunters usually ranged from 500 to 1,500. He didn't expect the Hellstorm Wolf to deal more than 2,000 with a triple critical hit. Xiao asked the teacher if he had passed the attack test, and if the assassin class was suitable for him. Next came the range test, using the hellish howl, which hit a whole 800 meters. Then the defense test. The Fang withstood the attack of Teacher Chen's ice-armored turtle. Xiao's control test was carried out using the shackles of hell. A buff test revealed that any beast within 10 meters of a Hellstorm Wolf gains a 30% increase in rage, 10% in attack, and 10% in movement speed. Classmates asked the teacher what role suits Xiao, because he is good at absolutely everything. The teacher admitted that in addition to these 5 roles, there is another special role called a generalist. The students asked the teacher about this role. What does this mean? The teacher explained that this is the name given to a beast hunter whose summoned creature is equally suitable for all roles. It is clear that Xiao has become the only all-rounder in his group. Xiao's classmates pounced on him with questions about how he could become so cool. But Xiao was modest and didn't think of himself as that cool. The teacher said that there is no need to rejoice too soon. Universalists are rare, but they still exist. At the moment, not only Xiao Xinyu is known, but also Yening Shuang and Han Tianjun from the second group, Murong Qingyang, and Li Xuancheng from the third group. The teacher reminded the students that they needed to continue to work hard and develop. Xiao was glad that the training was over, as he needed to buy some supplements to prepare for the beginner ranking competition. But then, several young men appeared in front of Xiao and asked him where he was going in such a hurry. Xiao asked with a dissatisfied face what else they needed. They smiled and flexed their fists as they asked, "Has Xiao really not heard of the Black Tiger Guild?" Then Wang Yan's voice was heard, saying that there was no need to talk to Xiao, he just needed to break his leg, and then he wouldn't be so impudent. The guys threatened and repeated that Xiao shouldn't have crossed the path of young Master Wang Yan, and that it was all his own fault. Xiao noticed the stars on the hooligans' jackets. They indicated levels. The hooligans were level 3 and level 4. Xiao asked, "Weren't they ashamed to attack someone who was only level 1? Wang Yan suggested that Xiao cry, and his subordinate asked him not to worry and he would deal with him. The 4th-year student summoned his magical beast, which turned out to be a thunder tiger. The tiger rushed forward to deal damage to Xiao. But then Black Fang appeared in time and attacked the tiger in response. The tiger was immobilized and fell to the ground under the onslaught of Fang. The bully was shocked because his master forgot to warn him about Black Fang's power. He guessed that the beast only appeared to be in its mature form, as it could withstand a thunder tiger that was in its full stage. This angered the bully, and he wanted to know who was stronger, some first-level weakling or the elite of the 3rd and 4th level Black Tiger Guild. A female voice suddenly rang out, saying that she was wondering who was stronger, the Black Tiger or the Heaven Guild. Xiao was glad that Sister Qin came to his aid. The hooligans found themselves surrounded and didn't know where to go. The Heaven Guild is the 2nd strongest guild in Longyan City. Even the Storm Guild does not dare to conflict with them. The hooligan obediently asked what brought Miss Qin here. Qin said, "If I hadn't passed by, I would never have known what the esteemed Lei was going to do to her dear little brother." This information made one very surprised, since Qin was the only daughter of the guild leader. She explained that Xiao Xinyu was her adopted brother, whom Qin Yanran had acknowledged. Qin warned that if anyone decided to offend Xiao, they would first have to deal with her and the entire Heaven Guild. Lei meekly said that there was a big misunderstanding. Lei pointed his finger at Wang Yan and said that he was the one who hired them to cause trouble for Brother Qin. Trembling with fear, Wan said pitifully that he didn't know about Brother Qin. Qin asked Lei if he knew what to do in such a situation, and he replied that he did. Lei ordered his men to teach him a lesson since he dared to offend the young master. Wang groaned in pain and shouted, "How can you do this?" Xiao and Qin were climbing up the Heaven Guild tower. Qin asked how he ran into them, and he replied that he just wanted to buy tonics for the dog. Qin objected with displeasure because he could have simply asked her, since her guild specialized in them. She said if he ever needed tonics, he just had to say so, and the nurse would give it to him for free. Qin began to show the guild's premises, starting with the training gym, equipped with the most advanced training equipment that helps the beasts master various skills as quickly as possible. Next was a recreation area, where hunters could relax after a mission. There was even mini-golf, a sauna, and many other entertainments. Then there was a conference room, where they hold meetings on important issues and make plans for further development. The medical area had advanced equipment and a wide range of medicines. The guild's doctors are highly qualified and provide the best services for the treatment of wounded animals. Xiao asked his sister if he could join her guild and become a doctor. Then another female voice was heard. She said that he would not be able to join the guild. It was Liu Yue, the vice leader of the guild, who was surprised that Xiao wanted to join the guild even though he was still very young and had no experience. Qin turned to Liu Yue. She said that he was the one who helped her on the train. Some guy ran in and shouted that they had just delivered several seriously wounded animals. The guy was yelling about how they didn't have enough staff to help everyone. The deputy told him to ask for help from other branches and asked Qin Yanran if she could take care of this matter. The animals were lying on stretchers. The guy said that they didn't have much time since the animals were bleeding heavily. Xiao proposed his candidacy to the deputy. A horned dog with severe bleeding was being transported to the 3rd operating room, and they also brought spare bags of blood. The animal has already lost too much blood. The bleeding needs to be stopped as soon as possible. The medicine should help. Conventional methods did not help and the bleeding still did not stop. Xiao began to scan the beast with his gaze, and a system window appeared with the type of wound. Since the beast encountered the queen of poisonous bees, and their poison interferes with regeneration, the beast bled to death. She said that he knows how to stop the bleeding of the war beast. He asks the owner for permission to help the beast. The owner agreed, since he had no choice in this situation. Xiao told the doctors to mix 1 stalk of heavenly grass with a purple crystal flower to make 20 grams of medicinal mixture. Then add the core of the mature magical beast with the poison attribute and boil for 5 minutes. Doctors were perplexed because all these ingredients were highly toxic. It was like putting out a fire with gasoline. She still insisted on his own and ordered that the medicine be prepared immediately according to his prescription. Otherwise, they would simply waste time and the beast would die. The beast's owner shouted, "Why are the doctors still standing? Let them do as Xiao said." 5 minutes later, the ready green elixir was brought. Xiu put on rubber gloves, carefully opened the bottle and dipped his finger in. He then carefully applied the medicine around the beast's wound. The beast screamed sharply in pain, causing horror among the people. But eventually the bleeding stopped, and the healing process began. The owner was glad that his beast was alive. Xiao asked the deputy if she was satisfied with the work done. She replied that the work was beyond praise. She admitted that her conclusions were incorrect and invited Xiao to the guild as a pharmacist. Xiao accepted this offer with pleasure. Sisters scolded Xiao for being late due to signing a labor contract with the Heaven Guild. Xiao confirmed everything his sister said. The sister was offended by the fact that someone completely forgot about his own sister. after he found some rich woman. The little girl asked, "Pharmacist, is it edible?" Xiao said not really, but he would be paid well now. They were planning to visit a restaurant over the weekend. Wang Yan lay in the hospital room and cursed Xiao Xinyu. He would never forget this humiliation. Yan's father called his son a worthless weakling, to which he asked him for help. The father couldn't believe that his son lost to some country boy from a small town. Yan cried when his father said that his son had brought shame on the whole family. Yan said that Xiao was backed by the Heaven Guild, so he didn't even have a chance to take revenge. Father asked sarcastically, if Xiao Xinyu accidentally died at the hands of a magical beast during the trials on Mount Yunnan, then it wouldn't have anything to do with the Wang family? On Mount Yunnan, all the arriving students were faced with another test, which would be broadcast in real time on all screens. The Vice Dean announced that the bracelets that the test subjects would wear would record the number of magical beasts killed, and would also keep a log of combat actions. Killing 1 to 10 magical beasts will result in a C rating. For killing between 11 and 30 magical beasts, a B grade is awarded. For killing 31 to 50 magical beasts, a grade of A is awarded. From 51 to 80 magical beasts are given an S rating. Killing more than 80 magical beasts will result in an S+ rating. Su asked the deputy to announce the particularly gifted participants among this year's recruits. The deputy announced that, according to the results of the entrance tests, 3 particularly gifted students would be singled out this year. Murong Yangshuo, the eldest son of the Murong family, first class. Murong Xin, the youngest daughter of the Murong family, first grade. Xiao Xinyu is a third grade student. There are 4 great trapper dynasties in the country, the Ye, Li, Murong, and Shangguan clans. In the broadcast studio of the Azure Dragon Academy, everyone was greeted by the host of this test, Yang Shu. Su asked the deputy how many magical beasts did he think Xiao Xinyu could kill. He replied that it was 50, and that he had taken that with extra. The teacher categorically disagreed with the deputy, because if you take into account his talent, he would be able to kill at least 80. Su said that they were wrong. She believed that Xiao would perform a real miracle and break Ye Ningxuang's record. Newcomers began to enter the testing area. The host announced the start of the test, and less than half an hour had passed before second-grade student Wang Lin successfully killed a short-tailed bear. Sun Tian Hao, of the 5th grade, had already killed 20 magical beasts. Surprisingly, just an hour after the test began, Murong Yangshuo of the first class had already killed 43 magical beasts. His griffin is the only beast to achieve full form in this test. The griffin's ability, Spatial Dash, not only instantly reduces the distance to the target, but also enhances any attack by adding a penetration effect. Although the silver-fanged snake has exceptional regeneration abilities, it was unlucky to encounter the white griffin, whose attack completely ignores its regeneration. Murong decided to extract the magic core from the beast and move on. At the moment, the Murong family was in the leading position with scores of 50 and 49, and Xiao was in 3rd place. The camera moved to the battlefield where a young girl from the Murong family was fighting. Her beast is a bone-winged wyvern of legendary bloodline, the only undead beast in this trial. She met the bloodthirsty lion, a second-stage mature magical beast with an epic bloodline. Its attacks deal 5 times the damage. If the girl kills this bloodthirsty lion, the total number of her victims will be 51. Elder brother Murong was at a loss as to whether she would be the one to take first place in this test. But then he saw that someone had overtaken his sister, which caused him confusion. His sister was fighting a lion, and her beast fired a powerful beam towards the lion. Suddenly, she heard someone ordering Black Fang to attack. Black Fang suddenly jumped on the lion and cut off his head with the claws of hell. Xiao, riding on the Fang, thanked his younger sister Murong for distracting the beast. This made Murong's younger sister extremely angry, and she wanted to kill the impudent boy. With his cunning, he managed to steal the beast from Murong and thus top the table. But it's too early to relax, as a dangerous beast has appeared, namely the 3-eyed magic ant. The presenter said that he felt danger coming from the beast, and he did not know who would dare to challenge such a ferocious creature. The first to attack was Xiao with his Black Fang. He used the bonds of hell. The ant has a very strong shell, but the Hell Wolf's fire ignores armor and still deals damage to the monster. Xiao gave the order to Black Fang to finish off the monster with a hellish howl. Murong Xingxin also decided to enter the game and ordered the wyvern to use sound waves to prevent the Hell Wolf from finishing off its opponent. She pulled this trick to use necrotic flame and kill the 3-eyed ant herself. After the murder, she walked up to the stone, bent down and picked it up. Xiao was shocked by this. He didn't think that his classmate was so vindictive. The situation in the tournament was becoming increasingly heated. Xiao Xinyu and Murong Xinxin were tied and shared first place. There was less than an hour left until the end of the test. It was unclear who would ultimately win. Xiao noticed a magical beast on the road and told Black Fang to get ready. But Murong Xinxin kills the monster again and snatches the glasses right from under Xiao Xinyu's nose. It seems that wherever Xiao goes, his vengeful rival immediately appears nearby and takes away his prey. In the last half hour, Murong Xinxin has firmly secured her position in first place by killing monsters, the host reported. Xiao asked Xinxin if stealing one beast justified her behavior. She stood there with a dissatisfied face, and the audience wrote in a stream about why she looked so offended. She said that he would not serve her anymore, so she could prepare herself. The host couldn't believe that Xiao had been holding back the whole time. But no one believed that Xiao would be able to overtake Xinxin, since there was less than half an hour left until the end. Minutes passed, and the number of killed monsters had already broken all records. Xinxin believed that she had air superiority and Xiao would not be able to get past her. But Xiao, with a great leap, was able to jump up to the eagle that Xinxin was hunting and kill it. Xinxin was very angry and kept saying that Xiao was a scoundrel. Xiao turned to his dear classmate, reminding her that there was less than a minute left and she could no longer defeat him. Xinxin kept repeating that Xiao was a scoundrel again, and he asked if that was really the only word she knew. A magical beast, namely a lion, watches their squabble over the stone. The lion emerged from behind cover and went on the attack. The leader did not understand how a fully developed magical beast of the third form ended up there. Leo attacked Xiao. He was clearly not prepared for this. Xiao fell from the Black Fang and flew down into the abyss. Xinxin was afraid that something would happen to Xiao and began to worry a lot. She was very lucky because he managed to catch hold of a branch sticking out of the rock. Xinxin tried to pull Xiao out of the abyss while her wyvern fought with the lion. Xiao noticed Wang Yan sitting on a nearby tree and immediately realized that it was his doing. The branch began to crack and break. Xiao held on with all his might. The branch broke and Xiao fell down. Xinxin was scared and continued to call him. In the broadcast studio, Teacher Chen put forward his candidacy to search for his students. Su asked him not to worry so much. Teacher Chen decided to activate the emergency rescue program through the security service. The vice dean considered himself a genius because he pulled off a little trick, and Xiao went to the realm of the dead. At the foot of the mountain, Xiao woke up and couldn't believe he was still alive. Xiao scratched his head and remembered that this was all Wang Yan's doing. The guy got up from his beast and saw that it was lying unconscious. Xiao couldn't believe that Fang had offered his body to save him from falling so high. He took out a blue bottle and gave it to his dog to drink to make him feel better. The clouds thickened and it started to rain. Xiao was not very happy about this. Xiao hid his dog back in order to quickly find shelter from the rain. The boy found a cave and entered it, but he was still worried about how soon the rain would stop. Xiao thought that his sister was probably very worried, and besides, he was worried about Xinxin. Suddenly, a sound was heard in the cave, as if someone had stepped on a branch. This made Xiao wary. It turns out there is someone else in the cave. Suddenly, someone grabbed Xiao by the throat, and he couldn't even make a sound. The unidentified beast accused Xiao of seeing the Empress's face, and now he would have to kill him. Xiao was in fear, but then a system window opened in front of him with a description of the nine-tailed fox. He was surprised that it was a nine-tailed fox with a mythical bloodline and 3 attributes. The fox was puzzled as to why some person knew who she was. She was ready to strangle Xiao when he asked her to wait. He asked if the purebred dragon had injured her. If so, then she would die in literally half an hour. The fox was amazed that the man somehow knew about the injury from the purebred dragon. The nine-tailed fox asked how Xiao knew about her serious injury. She realized that this was his chance. He showed his hunter's sign and blinded her, thus freeing himself from her grip. He replied that since he understood who she was, how could such a detail have escaped him? Xiao thought about how he didn't understand where a purebred dragon, whose species had been extinct for over 300 years, came from. But he knew how to cure her and offered her his help. The fox doubted his abilities since he was only a 1-star level trapper. Her wounds were inflicted by a purebred dragon. Even the most outstanding doctors could not help. It wasn't a difficult task for Xiao because he knew how to cure her. She said that he didn't want her to kill him once she recovered, so the fox had to make a contract with him. This proposal angered the fox. How could she submit to him and become his beast? The fox grabbed Xiao by the throat again and began to strangle him. He said that she could easily kill him, but then she herself would not live long. The fox didn't like this very much. Would she really have to bow down before a man? Lisa felt worse. Xiao asked if the dragon's power had already entered her body. Wouldn't it be too late if she didn't sign the contract? She didn't want to sign a contract with him now. She still needed to complete her sister's task. After long and painful deliberation, the fox finally decided to sign a contract with Xiao. Xiao bit his finger until it bled and pressed it against the fox's forehead. After submitting, the fox asked for help so that he could finally heal her from the terrible wound. She said, of course, since they were now connected. He began to undress, which embarrassed the fox. The confused fox asked why he was undressing, to which he replied that it was in order to cure her. The fox ordered him to put his clothes back on, but Xiao didn't listen and cut himself in the chest area to make blood flow. The wounded Xiao told the fox to drink the blood from his chest. The confused fox retorted, "What are you saying? I will never do such a thing. I can't do such things." Xiao tried to convince the fox that his blood would protect her heart from the effects of the wound. The fox resigned herself and realized that there was no way back and began to lean towards Xiao's chest. She began to lick the blood from Xiao's chest, and her heart began to fill with some kind of power. She said that it would help her for a while, and she could now say her name. The fox introduced herself as Dailu. Dailu asked Xiao, since he became her master, how did he know that her wound was inflicted by a purebred dragon? Xiao wondered if Dailu was somehow connected to the missing dragons. Maybe she could understand what was happening to him. He then admitted that his eyes had changed after dragon blood entered them 2 months ago. Now when he concentrates, he sees a panel with information about the animals, as if it were a system. Dailu thought that his eyes were very similar to the legendary eyes of the demon god. Eyes can see all the information about any animal. An ordinary person should not have them. Dailu thought for too long, so Xiao asked her why she was silent. She said that most likely his eyes had changed under the influence of dragon blood and became the eyes of a demonic god. Xiao asked about the demonic eyes. Isn't that a system? Dailu chuckled and said that this was not a system. He did not live in a fantasy world. Xiao thought after Dailu said that it was just a visualization of the demon god's eyes abilities. But why did he hear someone's voice then? He remembered sitting with his dog in his arms in front of a red ruby, and a voice telling him to take this stone, which would allow his beast to be reborn. The voice first appeared after the shadow dragon's attack, pointing at the crystal. The voice told him to give the red crystal to his dog. In the end, Xiao still fed the crystal to the dog, despite his doubts. And the dog did indeed evolve into a hellish storm wolf. Xiao wondered if he would have another chance to hear that voice. At this time, an aggressively minded lion approached them from behind and began to growl at them. Daibu grabbed Xiao by the collar, as he stood there like a pillar and did not react to the enemy's attack. The guy told Daibu that it was because of this lava tiger that he fell off the cliff. Xiao never expected that this tiger would be able to find him here in the cave. The tiger attacked Xiao and Daibu with one powerful leap, but they managed to jump away in different directions. Xiao was watching the tiger and what move it would make next, when suddenly purple dents began to appear on it. It turned out to be Daibu's attack. Even though she was badly injured, she still wouldn't let some creature growl at her. Daibu and the tiger fought. He knocked her to the ground and hovered over her. She did not understand how the tiger decided to attack the empress. The fox was able to turn the pathetic tiger into stone with the help of her eyes. Xia Xinyu calmed down because he felt safe, but something was wrong with him. He began to lose consciousness and was unable to move or say anything. Xiu entered the consciousness, where he met a large dragon. The guy didn't understand who was talking to him, although he saw a huge dragon in front of him. The dragon asked if he had forgotten him and how he had helped the beast evolve. Xiu realized that the voice was the voice of the dragon that led him to the crystal, so he asked him who he was. The dragon said that the blood that got into his eyes awakened his abilities, but he himself does not know who he is. But he knows how to help Xiao achieve greatness. The guy found it funny how someone who doesn't know himself can help him. Zhao, looking at the system window, realized that all these windows were his doing. The trapper repeated his question about where they were and how he got there. The dragon answered him that it was his consciousness. While he was unconscious, the dragon decided to meet him, but now it was time for him to wake up. Xiao asked with hope in his voice when they could see each other again. But the dragon said that there was no need since he was always nearby. Xiao woke up in a hospital room. He wondered how he ended up there because he was in a cave. Teacher Chen and Su stood in front of Xiao's bed and waited for him to wake up. When he woke up, he said that the last thing he remembered was a cave near the cliff. Su explained that he was found by a rescue team next to the body of a lava tiger. She said that he was unconscious. How could he know what happened there? Su asked Xiao not to worry. The academy would conduct a thorough investigation and sort out this situation. Xiao thanked Su for her concern and said that he believed in her in this investigation. Teacher Chen said that in the Yunnan Mountain test, he and Murong Xinshin achieved S+ rank and set a new academy record. So he'd better focus on recovering and preparing for the rookie rankings this weekend. Then Xiao's hand lit up and a projection of a fox appeared, and he realized where it had disappeared to. The fox was surprised that he sacrificed his blood to save himself and then lost consciousness due to his wounds. Daibu said that the rescue team arrived in time so that they wouldn't see her. She hid. She asked Xiao if he told the teachers that falling off the cliff was an accident. Xiu knew that this was not an accident. He suspected who was behind all this. Wang Yan won't get off so easily this time. Wang Yan burst into the Wang family's office and told his father that something terrible had happened. But he sternly replied that the guy should pull himself together and tell everything in order. Wang Yan shouted that Xiao Xinyu had survived and showed him the article about his rescue on his phone. The guy was in a panic because Xiao would not leave him alone and would definitely take revenge on him with the help of the Heaven Guild. But father was calm because even if Xiao Xinyu suspected them, he had no evidence. Van asked his father what he should do now, and he replied that he didn't need to do anything. If they start doing something, they will kill him with the poison that he threw to his son. It was already dark. Xiao was lying on the bed, and someone called him on the phone. From the other end of the line, he heard the voice of his classmate, who admired his results. He said that the freshman tournament had been postponed, but that wouldn't stop Xiao from defeating everyone and taking first place. This news surprised Xiao, because it turned out that it was because of him that the tournament was postponed. A classmate said that Xiao's disappearance was the most discussed topic. The academy declared a state of emergency and organized a large-scale search. The freshman tournament is the main event of the Azure Dragon Academy, which is held every year. All participants are divided into groups, and the order of matches is determined randomly. And after the 8 finalists are determined, the fight for the 3 prize places will begin. A classmate asked Xiao not to be late, and he accepted his message and wished him good night. Xiu thought that a good result in the tournament would attract the attention of the academy and its financial support. The skills of beasts depend on the level of spiritual energy of their master. The stronger the beast, the more spiritual energy is needed. With the help of the academy's resources, Xiao would greatly accelerate his development, which would avoid the situation where Dailu's skills completely exhausted Xiao's spiritual energy. And Xiao will need her help to get rid of this Wang family. However, in order for Xiao to use Dailu's skills, he absolutely could not stand still. So the pressing question was, how could he increase his spiritual energy before the tournament began? Xiao fell asleep to ask the dragon this question. The dragon reproached Xiao for looking for the easy way. She replied that he had it, so why not take advantage of this opportunity? The dragon agreed that if Xiao could return his memories, he would do everything in his power to help him, to which Xiao agreed. Only deep meditation will allow you to penetrate into the space of consciousness and communicate with the dragon. The dragon upgraded the data panel based on the game systems from the human world. Now Xiao will be able to buy the necessary items through the store. But to prevent Xiao from relaxing and forgetting about the return of the dragon's memories, he will periodically issue tasks through the system, for the completion of which Xiao will receive points and other rewards. Xiao chose the dragon's spiritual pill, which instantly increases spiritual energy tenfold, but after 5 minutes it drains all strength and causes weakness. The dragon said that this was the thing he needed, but it had very strong side effects, so it should be used with caution. To activate the system, it is enough to mentally say, "Divine Panel, submit to my will." And now the dragon needs to recover, and he asked not to disturb him. Xiao wished the dragon a good rest and said goodbye to him. She warned his sister that he had gone to class, but his sister asked him not to run like that because he had just recovered. The guy walked and thought that the freshman tournament was already today. I wonder if Shen missed it. Then a wanted notice fell into his hands and he began to study it carefully. On the piece of paper was a 9-tailed fox. 3 billion was offered for it, and it was accused of theft. Xiao accused Dao Li of deceiving him. The guy asked why she didn't tell him that the imperial family was looking for her. Xia was angry because she was wanted by the empress's personal order. Daibu should have said so herself. Daibu calmly answered him that then nothing would have changed. If he regretted the agreement with her, then he could hand her over and take the reward. Xiao was now her master, and he wanted her to trust him and not hide anything from him. Daibu agreed and showed the crystal that caused Shangguan Lan to set such a reward. Xiao didn't understand what it was, so he asked the fox directly about the crystal. The fox said that this is the highest treasure of dragons, the dragon's tear. Pureblood dragons have 3 great treasures: the scale sword, the dragon king's whiskers, and the dragon's tear. The dragon king's scale sword and whisker are artifacts with devastating attack power, and the dragon tear has no combat use, but is made up of the tears of 10,000 pure-blooded giant dragons. If you harness the full power of tears, you can turn back time and return to the past. Xiao had long wanted to ask, Weren't dragons completely exterminated 300 years ago? The guy was interested in what was behind the war against the dragons that took place 300 years ago. Suddenly, someone on the street called out to Xiao Xinyu. It was Morongi, the elder brother said. What a coincidence that he is here too. The guy with white hair was surprised that he had gotten out of a real hell. Next time they might even kill him. The guy said that after Xiao fell off the cliff, his sister was very worried and couldn't eat because of it. After Xinxin saw on TV that Xiao was okay, she ate a couple of servings at once. Brother Xinxin tried to say something to make him think about the consequences, otherwise his sister would lose her appetite again. But Xinxin shut his mouth. Xiu confidently said that this would not happen again. He could not make such a girl worry. Then Xiu suggested going to the freshman tournament together. The guy told him that they were not close enough to him to go together. Besides, he stole Xinxin's points for killing a monster during the test. The elder brother took Xinxin's hand and said that they were leaving, and Xiao stood and watched them go. He still didn't understand why the Murong started talking to him if they hadn't forgiven him. The test host welcomed the teachers and students to the arena. Since the freshman tournament is about to begin, they are required to draw lots to determine the order of the fights. All the first-year students stood in line and drew lots from the box one by one. Wang Yan looked at Xiao Xinyu and couldn't help but believe that he had actually returned safe and sound. Now Wang Yan decided to use the death box to ensure that Xiao would never rise again. It was Wang Yan's turn to draw lots, and the people around him were not very happy about him. The freshman said that he was taking advantage of his father's status, but Xiao beat him up, causing Yan to lose all dignity, and now he is a disgrace to the academy. Wang Yan was ashamed by these cries, and he understood how much humiliation Xiao had brought upon him. But now he is ready to trample Xiao and bring him 100 times more humiliation. Since Wang Yan drew Xiao Xinyu in the draw, fate itself brought the sworn enemies together. Now Wang Yan could not let his father down, since he had helped him by attaching the lot to the wall of the box in advance. Yan told Xiao that he would personally destroy the pet in the arena, to which Xiao simply chuckled and said that he wasn't sure about that. In the arena stood two sworn enemies, Xiao Xinyu and Wang Yan, both ready to fight to the death. Brother Murong asked his sister why she kept looking at Xiao Xinyu. She explained to him that she felt that after falling from the cliff, Xiao Xinyu had become much stronger. Su thought about the horrors Xiao had to go through in these few days to become so strong. The host of the match announced the first round of the match between Xiao Xinyu and Wang Yan and gave the command to begin the battle. The opponents immediately summoned their magical beasts. Xiao summoned Black Fang and Yan summoned Ice Flame. Information about the animals obtained using a scanning device was displayed on an electronic board. Xinxin didn't like something about the aura. Although the board showed the aura of a first-stage Hellstorm Wolf, it was clearly higher. At that moment, she realized that Xiao Xinyu was deliberately suppressing the level of his beast in order to use the battle to break through. Ice Flame jumped to the side, opened his mouth wide and used Ice Ball. The ball rushed towards the Black Fang, but then managed to use its hunting in the dark skill. Fang dodged and the ball hit the stands, so it became very cold there. The spectators were shaking from the cold. Black Fang used Hell Howl and struck out from the darkness at the Ice Flame. The presenter was amazed by such an exciting battle. Sometimes freezing cold, sometimes unbearable heat. Xiao Xinyu decided to use his signature move, the Claw of Oblivion. The attack hit the Ice Flame straight. He couldn't dodge and froze in one place like last time. The host commented, "The six-fingered ice leopard fell under the Claw of Oblivion and cannot use its abilities. It had the same stupid expression on its face as its owner." But then Wang Yan declared that he was not so stupid as to fall for the same trick twice. Wang Yan threw a blue ball into the leopard's open mouth. The leopard swallowed it and began to rapidly increase in strength, and he developed an icy mane. While no one was expecting it, the leopard carried out one of his most powerful attacks. Xinxin didn't pay attention to this. She was still thinking about how Xiao Xinyu could become so strong in such a short time. Xiao noticed how the leopard's strength began to increase sharply and did not understand why this happened. He decided to check something, whether Wang Yan had used a forbidden potion that temporarily strengthened the beast. Xiao turned to Wang Yang. "Did you really force your beast to take a forbidden potion in order to win?" But he told Xiao Xinyu to mind his own business, and then continued to attack him with an icy barrage. Black Fang took the blow and was wounded, but still stood on his feet. Xiao supported his beast, shouting at it to hold on a little longer. Then came another powerful attack from Wang Yan. It was an ice hammer. The ice hammer froze the Black Fang, and he couldn't even move. The audience was shocked at how the six-fingered ice leopard suddenly became so strong, and they were worried that Xiao Xinyu was losing ground. Wang Yan proudly said that he had given in to Xiao Xinyu last time, but now he would see his true strength. Wang the Elder said to Su, "Is it true that my son's talent is no less than Xiao Xinyu's?" Su was very surprised that the ice leopard had become so strong that even a blind person would notice something was wrong. She continued to think that Xiao Xinyu was in a really dire situation. If this continued, the Hellstorm Wolf would not only lose, but would also be seriously injured. Xinshin and Su couldn't believe it. They were very worried about Xiao Xinyu. They thought that everything was already decided. The teacher believed that Xiao Xinyu had a trump card that could turn the tide of the battle. Xiao knew that it was not for nothing that his Black Fang killed more than 100 magical beasts on Mount Yunnan. Xiao ordered Black Fang to use the Hellfire Lotus. This was his trump card that was supposed to help Xiao win. Wang Yan realized that this was a very dangerous attack, and if his ice flame was not dodged, he would lose. Black Fang opened its mouth and released hellish fire, which formed a fire lotus. The teacher happily noted that the fire element combat skill is precisely the lotus of Hellfire. Su was amazed that Xiao used a combat skill that was only available to fully developed beasts. Xiao's future was simply limitless. Hellstorm is still only in its initial form, but it has already mastered the fire element combat skill. If this continues, Xiao Xinyu might even surpass Ye Ningxuang and become the best in the entire Azure Dragon Academy. The lotus fell straight into the icy flames. Xiao was intent on completely defeating the enemy. Through the flames, one could see the enemy dissolving from the heat. There was a deathly silence in the stands. Everyone watched this scene in horror. Suddenly, the host announced to the entire stadium that Xiao Xinyu had won the battle. The stands were shouting with delight that Xiao was a real monster. The Lotus of Hellfire was simply incredible. The spectators' gaze quickly turned to the electronic scoreboard. Everyone was shocked, as the Stormwolf's data had changed. At first, he was only at the first stage of the initial form, but now he has immediately reached the third. Xiao Xinyu set an unprecedented record for the first time since the Azure Dragon Academy started holding the freshman tournament. The beast was able to rise 2 steps right in the arena, and the person who caused this miracle was Xiao Xinyu. Xiao praised his Black Fang, who happily wagged his tail. Since Black Fang had killed dozens of magical beasts and survived many deadly trials, he was already on the threshold of evolution. Xiao used the Ice Leopard's ice abilities to corner Black Fang. Wang Sr. sharply expressed his dissatisfaction that everything should be supported by evidence, whether they have any. He said that the rules of the competition state that the fight continues until a winner is determined. The Ice Leopard is dead? Isn't that proof of victory? Su's subordinates began to speak harshly and negatively about Xiao Xinyu. Although he was talented, he was cruel and ruthless and had no place in the academy. Su replied that there was no point in jumping to conclusions just yet, and that until the truth came out, she would not spare anyone who tried to slander her student. She ordered the Ice Leopard's body to be brought in so that a veterinarian could perform an autopsy. The doctors brought in the leopard's body and began to examine it carefully. Su asked what the results were and if they had found anything. The vet said the internal organs were badly damaged, probably due to the Hellfire Lotus. Wang Sr. immediately thought that things were going well because he had bribed the academy's veterinarian in advance. He knew that the rector might resort to this method of verification. He asked Su what she would say now, since even the doctor confirmed the death of the beast at the hands of the enemy. Xiao suddenly interrupted their conversation with an objection, asking what kind of killer would act so brazenly in front of so many people. Besides, the Lotus of Hellfire attacks only the soul, and the leopard died from internal bleeding, especially since the spiritual attack does not leave physical damage. Xiao asked again if the doctor was confident in his diagnosis. He whispered into the doctor's ear that it was not worth risking his career for penny bribes. Let him think again. The doctor said that the matter was extremely serious, and he was asking for a blood test on the ice leopard to check everything again. 10 minutes later, the doctor brought the results to Principal Su and said that the ice leopard had died from the rampage pill. Wang Yan was infuriated by this conclusion and went berserk, calling the guy a worthless doctor who was blatantly lying. Wang Yan tried to justify himself to Su. How could he give his beast such crap? But the doctor gave Su the test results. The tests showed that Wang Yan's beast had taken the Furious Pill, an item that would send magical beasts into a furious state, enhancing their abilities, but had many side effects. Wang Sr.'s subordinates did not believe that the vice principal's son was so cruel that he even gave his magical beast this poison. The vice rector asked Su to give his son another chance. Su also told him not to forget about his position, and that he was not only a father, but also the vice principal of the Azure Dragon Academy. She threatened that if he planned to cover for his son, he could go home with him right now. The deputy understood that if this continued, he would also suffer. At this point, he said abruptly that Wang Yan had violated the Academy's rules and given his magical beast a rampaging pill, so he needed to be expelled. Wang Yan couldn't believe that his own father would expel him from the Azure Dragon Academy. Wang Yan's father added that the fact of using the prohibited pill had already been established. The guy left them no choice. He ordered that this scoundrel be thrown out of the academy. The crowd was discussing that it was finally all over, and now the list of the top 8 was out. The audience discussed that Xiao Xinyu had become a real dark horse among the newcomers. Without connections and wealth, he managed to enter the top 8. He is a real genius. Brother Xinjin told her that Xiao Xinyu was among the top 8. He stole so many points from Xinjin on Yunnan Mountain. If he met him, he would definitely avenge her. Xinjin looked at the scoreboard with the names of the best, where Xiao Xinyu was, and said that she now wants to beat him herself. Xiao Xinyu's friend ran to meet him. He had good news for Xiao, because he got into the top 8. But Xiao didn't think it was something to be proud of, and his friend was already ready to celebrate his entry into the top 8. Vice Director Wan was very angry with Xiao because he failed to harm Xiao, but he already had a plan for revenge. Xiu walked through the city at night after celebrating his victory. Although he didn't really want to celebrate, he was now happy to get home. When Xiao arrived home, he was surprised to find that the front door was broken and the house was in disarray. Ximing's sister ran out to him, very frightened with tears in her eyes and horror on her face. She started hugging Xiao and told him that her sister was kidnapped. It was done by a man in a black mask and he left a letter for Xiao. Xiu began to read the letter with concentration, which said that if he wanted to save his sister, he had to go to the Yinanshan Mountains. Frightened, Xiao dropped everything and ran to save his sister. He did not understand. Who could dare to touch his sister? Having run to the place, the guy saw his sister lying unconscious by a tree. A man in a black cloak came out to Xiao and told him not to shout because his sister was still alive. The guy shouted for him to let his sister go quickly, but the man in the cloak was in no hurry. He was surprised that Xiao didn't even ask who he was. Xiao frowned and told him that he had a conflict with Wang Yang recently, but he would not dare to steal a person, so the man in the cloak was Wang Dongsheng. The man laughed and began to remove his hood, amazed by the boy's insight. Dongsheng fantasized that if Xiao Xinyu were his son, he would make him the most powerful beast hunter in the entire Dragon Empire. But then Dongsheng became serious because life had turned out differently, and Xiao had even wounded his son, so he had to die. Dongsheng summoned a stone guardian and a huge, powerful bear jumped out of the ground. It wasn't just any bear, but a ruthless stone demon bear in the form of a beast king. Powerful. The bear is constantly in a state of absolute defense, which makes him invulnerable to physical attacks, and he can also neutralize any control skills. Dongsheng laughed at Xiao. After all, he was a 1-star level beast hunter who was currently facing a king-level beast, so Xiao's path had to be interrupted here. At this point, Xiao smiled and told Dongsheng that he would disappoint the deputy director. Adjusting his glasses, Dongsheng was surprised that Xiao really wanted his dog to become a snack for his stone bear. Since Xiao had another beast in reserve, he raised his hand and ordered Dailu to kill this bear. This frightened Dongsheng because he sensed a powerful aura. Then Dailu appeared, yawning and stretching, and in a lazy voice told the owner to think carefully about moral compensation. She allowed her to sleep as much as she wanted, but first she needed to kill that stone bear. Sweat began to drip down Dongsheng's forehead from excitement. Dailu terrified him so much that he decided to act unexpectedly. Right now, the stone bear flew towards Dailu, swinging its massive hammer. But in one moment, the bear froze and turned into stone, due to which he could not even move. The frightened Dongsheng realized that this was the same 9-tailed fox, a king-level beast that was wanted throughout the country. Dongsheng was angered by the fact that Xiao had made a contract with the most wanted criminal in the empire. But Xiao smiled and interrupted him, saying that since he summoned the 9-tailed fox in front of him, it meant he didn't plan on leaving him alive. Dongsheng went berserk. The gap between 1 and 6 stars could not be bridged with just one summoned beast. The bear, turned into stone, was able to break these shackles with his powerful roar, causing the stones to fly apart. Wan Sr. sneered at Xiao. The 9-tailed fox was strong, but that wouldn't change the fact that he was only a 1-star level beast hunter. Dongsheng promised that he would now show him how difficult it was to overcome the difference between a 1-star hunter and a 6-star hunter. The stone bear suddenly became stronger. A demonic aura appeared around it and the stones began to rise up. Xiao tensed up, realizing that the opponent was using black fog, an attribute of darkness. The attribute of darkness meant that the beast had to feed on the blood of humans or other magical beasts to replenish its energy. Xiao blamed Dongsheng for the fact that it was because of him that low-level beasts began to disappear in Longyin City about 5 years ago. A red skull mark appeared on Dongsheng's satisfied face, and he assured him that it was a great honor to die from the fangs of his bear. On the opponent's face, Xiao saw this red skull and horror began to appear on his face. After all, it was the Red Skull Guild, which specialized in training hunters with the attribute of darkness. The guild was listed as a sinister terrorist organization. The people of this organization inspired fear just by their appearance. Xiao asked what would happen if everyone found out about the status of the deputy director of the Dragon Academy, but he said that the guy would not leave here alive. The fox was scared because she couldn't use any of her combat skills due to Xiao's low energy reserves, but he reassured her because he didn't enter into battle unless he was confident of his victory. The guy took out a purple pill and ate it without thinking. Immediately after this, Xiao felt a powerful surge of strength, and an aura of the same color began to emanate from him. His opponent put his hand forward and told him to prepare to die. After his words, the fire bear immediately rushed forward. Xiao raised his hand, on which the seal glowed, and he called Dailu, who appeared in front of him, shielding him. To repel the bear's attack, Xiao used Bloody Gaze. The fox took on a beast form. Its eyes lit up, emitting a purple glow. The purple beam pierced the bear, and his opponent threw and threw, the latter screaming in pain, falling down without strength. The blow was delivered by a huge eye that the fox had summoned. In response to this, the enemy began to summon comrades from the Dark Guild. Jie started to feel unwell, and then he realized that the side effects of taking the dragon spirit pill had begun. His eyes began to close, and the last thing he saw was Dailu, who was looking at him with fear. Sitting in front of the lying Xiao, Dailu slapped him so that he wouldn't dare fall asleep, but it didn't produce any results. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Sister Xiao appeared and grabbed the frightened Dailu by the throat. The sister, holding Dailu by the throat, addressed her saying that she was a magical beast of the form of the king of beasts. The sister could not think that Dailu would make a contract with her brother. Dailu felt that the power of a dragon was coming from her sister. She had never encountered such a powerful aura before. The fox asked her if she wasn't Xiao's sister, even though she had the power of a dragon. Who was she really? Putting her finger to her lips, the sister said that the fox did not need to know who she really was. After letting go of Dailu, she immediately sat down next to Xiao, who was lying on the ground, and began to examine him for wounds. The sister put her hands on Xiao and began to treat him. A white glow appeared around her hands. A worried Dailu watched this and hoped that Xiao would be okay. The sister stated that Xiao had taken a medicine that temporarily increased his spiritual energy, and he was now experiencing side effects. She reassured Dela that he would be fine. He just needed 3 days to recover. The sister stood on the rock and began to sing. A blue aura in the form of notes emanated from her. It was a force that restored everything around them. Surprised, Dailu knew that it was a dragon whisper, a skill that is unique to purebred dragons, which allows one to restore any essence in the world through a special melody. The sister turned towards Dailu. Blue dragon scales appeared on her face. She said that there was no trace left of today's battle. Dailu remembered that among purebred dragons there was only one dragon with such scales. A blue glow emanated from the sister's eyes. She inspired horror with her very appearance because her name was Chaos. The sister turned to the nine-tailed one. She didn't care that she was wanted by the order of the Empress of the Dragon Kingdom. But since she was able to make a blood contract with her brother, then she shouldn't betray him. She ordered her to help Xiao properly, and then she would not harm her. Pointing her finger at her tails, she threatened that otherwise she would cut them all off. In response, the fox said that she understood everything clearly and distinctly. Her sister also ordered her not to tell Dailu anything about her real identity. She woke up in a hospital room and saw his sister and Director Su sitting next to his bed. The sister lay down on him and started crying because she was very worried about him and she was glad that he was okay. She said that after she woke up, she found him unconscious and decided to immediately carry him down the Yunnan Mountains so that he could receive help. Xiao thought that since his sister didn't find anything strange, it seemed like Dailu had cleaned everything up thoroughly. Director Su informed Xiao, who was lying on the hospital bed, that he had been lying there for 3 days already and had missed the semifinals and finals of the freshman ranking tournament. She said that Murong Xinxin won first place and her brother Murong Yangshuo won second place, so his absence was considered a voluntary withdrawal from the tournament. But there was another piece of news. It turns out that Deputy Wang disappeared 3 days ago. Xiao broke out in a cold sweat because they might start to suspect him of Deputy Wang's disappearance. Sister Xiao tensed up and extended her claws behind her back, ready to kill Su if she harmed his brother. but Su immediately stated that Xiao was innocent and would continue to investigate the case. But for now, it was necessary to find a new deputy director of the Azure Dragon Academy. Xiu thought that Director Su must have decided to protect him. Su also told Xiao that she came not only to check his health, but also to tell him about the Supernova competition. The Supernova competition is a major event jointly organized by the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Red Crane, and Black Tortoise Academies. Since each school selects 3 of the most talented newcomers, everyone at the Azure Dragon Academy considers Ye Ningshuang to be the most talented student. But in last year's Supernova competition, she lost to Li Mucheng from White Tiger Academy and only took 2nd place. Therefore, Director Su said that Xiao should become one of the representatives of the Azure Dragon Academy and restore the honor of the Azure Dragon Academy. This was a great chance to make up for the missed opportunity at the freshman ranking tournament. But Xiao didn't know the conditions for participating in this competition. Director Su explained the conditions for participating in the tournament. A participant must have at least 2 battle beasts, and the participant must be at least a 2nd-star trapper. Su put her hand on Xiao's shoulder and said that she believed in him, and that he would be able to qualify as the 2nd-star trapper before the competition started next month. Xiao was determined because Director Su believed in him, and she had always helped him. He couldn't let her down, and he would also have a chance to see the power of the White Tiger. Xiao told Su not to worry because 1st place in the Supernova competition would be his. As he walked through the Yunnan forest, Xiao thought about how the participants in last year's Supernova competition had made a contract with at least 2 beasts. Xiao also had 2 beasts, but Delu is wanted all over the country. She can't be summoned in open battles. Also, Black Fang is now just a Hellstorm Wolf in its initial form. Standing in the night forest, where only the moon lit the way, Xiao summoned the Black Fang to make it stronger. Everything was ready for evolution. As Xiao had been discharged from the hospital and had bought several fire supplements and materials with his salary as a beast doctor in the Heavenly Guild. He also earned some magic stones from Mount Yunnan and the freshman ranking tournament. A mountain of magic stones lay in front of the Black Fang. Xiao thought that this should be enough for evolution, so the Black Fang could begin to absorb all these stones. After absorbing all these stones, the Black Fang began to feel hellish pain. Red flames formed around it. Xiao shouted at it to hold on with all its might. Xiao called Dailu to guard him, because the Black Fang might have a breakdown during evolution. Here the hunter fell to the ground from wild pain. He felt everything that the Black Fang feels now, during evolution. In order to find out how much time was left until the end of the Black Fang's evolution, Xiao ordered to obey the Divine Panel. The Divine Panel showed that evolutionary progress is now only 30%. After a while, the panel froze at 99%. Xiao thought that Black Fang had failed. But then, an evolved Black Fang appeared through the flames. Xiao looked at the system panel and analyzed his new characteristics, and saw that Black Fang had a new attribute: Demon. Dailu was very surprised that the Black Fang's demonic attribute had awakened. She was also amazed by Xiao because this guy is truly a unique hunter. Xiu happily hugged the Black Fang because it had become much stronger, but he still needed to make a contract with another animal. Xiao came to see Sister Yanran, who was happy to help Xiao buy a new beast for him so that he could participate in the Supernova competition. Xiao felt awkward and wanted to refuse her help, but she said that his problems were her problems because he was her brother. She took him to a pet store and told him to choose whatever he wanted. She would pay for everything. A girl met them at the store, and seeing Mrs. Qin, she asked what exactly she had come for today: an electrical preparation or a lightning crystal. Sister Yanran said that there would be a supernova competition in a month, so Xiao needed to find a suitable beast to contract with. The girl happily decided to help and began offering Xiao new animals. The first was the demonic red spider. Its attack was much higher than other beasts of the same level. There is also a shadow tigress, very fast, and deals increased damage from stealth. Mrs. Qin said that they didn't need cheap options. They needed the highest class animals. She would pay for everything. The girl decided that she would not hide the treasure from them then, and would present it to the attention of the best animals in the store. Various magical beasts were kept in special chambers. There was a huge snake, various beetles, and wolves. Xiao, using his panel, began to evaluate the animals. First, there was an underground pangolin with very good characteristics. Next up was the three-eyed fire snake, which impressed with its poison and fire damage. Also, the icebone bird was not bad in its characteristics. It has a legendary bloodline and 2 attributes of ice and death. But none of this suited Xiao, because none of the proposed beasts had a hidden pedigree. The girl asked, "There are so many high-class animals here, and he is not satisfied. What kind of animal does he need then? What requirements should the animal have? Then a man entered the room with a cage in his hands and said that he had brought new goods, some of the best animals he had ever seen. She was surprised by this because there were 2 fairies in the cage, and these animals are considered useless. Why would they be needed in the store? Sister explained that if they were sold as fighting animals, no one would buy them, but as pets, they would sell out in no time. Xiao looked at one of the fairies and saw that she had a hidden angel bloodline, although her other characteristics were not very good. He continued to look at her thoughtfully, and Sister Yanran was confused and asked what was wrong with him. Xiao made a decision and told Yanran's sister that he was ready to buy her. Everyone was shocked by this decision because he needed a fighting beast, and no one buys this beast as a fighting beast. The guy looked at the fairy again and confidently said that he wanted to buy her, all because of her hidden pedigree. After purchasing it, Xiao went to Nanshan Mountain, opened the cage, and told the fairy not to worry, he would not harm her. The guy gave her some kind of golden pill and told her to eat it, and all her wounds would heal immediately. Then, when all her wounds were healed, Xiao raised his finger to her and asked if she would agree to make a contract and become his beast. The embarrassed fairy remembered how kind Xiao was to her, that he did not wish her harm. She agreed, and then a drop of blood fell from Xiao's finger onto her, thus meaning that the contract was successfully concluded. Xiao asked the fairy that since she agreed to accept the blood contract, it meant that she now recognized him as her master. The fairy obediently flew to Xiao's hand, which meant that after the contract was concluded, the bond between the beast and the beast catcher became much stronger. Then Xiao took out the shattered bloodline awakening crystal. With it, the fairy would be able to evolve. The fairy took the crystal in her hands and began to eat it, and it was clear from her face that she was very pleased. But then she dropped the crystal. She began to feel severe pain. A strange glow appeared around her. Xiao asked her to be patient a little longer. Suddenly, Dailu appeared from the purple flame in front of Xiao. She felt a strange energy, so she decided to protect her master. At this time, the fairy wrapped herself in a cocoon, surrounded by a golden glow. The cocoon exploded, and from it emerged a beautiful angel with 4 wings and swords in each hand. A satisfied Xiao looked at the system window and was amazed at the new abilities of the Holy Angel of Light. But what surprised him most was what kind of evolution path the fairy had. Xiao asked the angel when he became the 9th star's beast hunter, would she be able to evolve into a seraph with 12 wings? She remembered that he hadn't given her a name yet. Before awakening, she was a water spirit. He gave her the name Freya. As in Greek mythology, this name is associated with the spirit of water. Freya descended to the ground and knelt before Dailu and her new master. From now on, Xiao, Dailu, and Freya will fight side by side. Freya bowed to Xiao, showing her respect. Xiao took another step towards participating in the supernova competition, Dailu noted. The determined Xiao said that there was only one step left to participate in the supernova competition, which was to become the 2nd star's beast catcher. In his office, the teacher was shocked by the news that Xiao was going to become a 2nd star beast catcher. Xiao confirmed this. Since the supernova competition was about to start, he needed to do this as soon as possible. The puzzled teacher couldn't understand why the youth were so eager to grow up after all. 3 days ago, the Murong siblings had passed the 2nd star exam. Since the Black Fang had recently evolved to the 1st stage of mature form, the teacher handed the boy a bracelet to determine the level of spiritual power. If his level of spiritual power met the standard, then he would be able to take the exam. Xiao happily put on the bracelet immediately to find out if Xiao really had outstanding strength as many people said. The counter on the clock was rapidly increasing, and everyone held their breath when the counter stopped at 2,583. The students and teachers around him were amazed at the result that was shown on the device. The teacher immediately understood what was going on, because when a beast evolves, the master's strength also increases, and the average level of spiritual strength of a 2nd star beast hunter is in the range of 2,000 to 3,000. He praised Xiao because none of his former students had spiritual strength that high, so he would allow him to take the exam. Xiao traveled to the Blood Mist Canyon exam by helicopter, and after opening the door, he immediately began to inspect the area. There was an earphone in Xiao's right ear, and the voices of Director Su and his teacher were heard, asking him to prepare himself and be careful, because this canyon was full of magical beasts. Xiao collected his thoughts, exhaled, and was ready to begin the exam. Director Su told him the conditions for successfully passing the exam. He needed to successfully reach the exit through the canyon. In the observation room, teacher and Principal Su were standing, discussing that Xiao had successfully landed and entered the Blood Mist Canyon. To pass through the canyon, the examinees first had to fight crocodiles with iron jaws and teeth. The next test was to escape from the demonic spiders that lived in the demon cave, among which there were individuals of the third stage of the mature form. The huge spiders with powerful jaws inspired terror, just by their appearance, which Xiao Xinyu would have to deal with. Xiao was descending by parachute and saw terrifying crocodiles with iron jaws visible in the crimson swamp. The crocodiles surrounded the place where Xiao landed. The teacher told him in the earpiece that if he summoned the wolf of the underworld, there would be no danger since the crocodiles were only in their initial magical form. But Xiao ignored the hint and summoned Freya to surprise everyone and test what she was capable of. This shocked the teacher and Principal Su. Why he did not summon the Black Fang, and when did he manage to make a contract with the second beast? The teacher's face was filled with surprise as Zhao was able to form a contract with the mythical Angel of Light. This is unbelievable, since they haven't been seen for many years, and Xiao was seen 2 days ago in the animal shop with the water fairy. Director Su decided to remind Lao Chen that the nether wolf used to be just a storm dog, so perhaps the water fairy had also evolved. The teacher recognized Xiao Xinyu as a true beast catcher, as he always makes the impossible possible. At this time, Xiao was attacked by crocodiles, but Freya destroyed all the crocodiles with one powerful blow. The teacher was amazed that Freya was able to defeat the iron-toothed crocodile with just one blow, which confirmed the power of the Angel of Light and her mythical lineage. Xiao, pleased with the fairy's work, ordered Freya, who was floating in the air, to lead him through the swamp. Freya wrapped her powerful arms around Xiao's waist, causing him to feel a little embarrassed. She picked up Xiao and held him in her arms, which completely took the boy by surprise, and he didn't understand why she held him in her arms in that particular way. After crossing the swamps, Freya lowered Xiao to the ground, and in front of them was a bloody thick fog. Out of nowhere, spiders attacked them. But thanks to Freya's quick reaction, she was able to repel the spider's attack. But then a huge spider with sharp fangs descended along the web, enveloped in a terrifying red aura. Xiao was tense because, thanks to the system window, he realized that in front of him was a bloody demonic spider that lived in colonies. A terrifying aura was coming from the cave, and it became clear that there were at least 20 spiders in it. The teacher decided to remind Xiao that the Holy Angel of Light was only in its initial form. It could ignore the difference in strength and deal damage even to mature specimens of blood demon spiders. But Xiao summoned his main beast, and it turned out to be a powerful storm demon wolf, Black Fang. Director Su was not happy with this. She told Xiao that the main goal of the exam was to reach the finish line, not to kill all the magical beasts. Without listening to Su, Zhao stretched out his hand, formed a goat sign with his fingers, and commanded the Black Fang with a hellish howl. The bloody demon spiders tried to hit the Black Fang with their webs, but it dodged again and again. But then one of the webs still hit the Black Fang. Let's grab him by the hind leg. Xiao didn't lose his composure and began giving commands. First to Freya to activate the sacred shield of light on the Black Fang, then to the Fang to spin around and use the Lotus of Hellfire. The animals obediently began to carry out their master's orders. Thanks to this, none of the attacks were able to reach the Black Fang, all because of the purple shield. Then this purple shield turned into a real tornado, which blew away the spider one by one. Black Fang destroyed all the blood demon spiders. There were only 25 of them. Suddenly, the ground beneath Xiao shook. Rocks began to rise up, and a Black Fang began to howl, all because of the terrifying aura. The cause of these disasters was a fully evolved magical beast that had emerged to the surface. The teacher advised Xiao to retreat quickly. Since yesterday's rainfall had attracted a crypto spider, the boy would not be able to defeat it. But Xiao did not want to retreat, since then he would fail the exam. Xiao folded his hands into fists and said that even if God or Buddha himself stood between him and successfully passing the exam, he would destroy them. Black Fang opened his powerful mouth and released a piercing purple flame. And Freya, with her swords, released a golden beam. But the spider looked unharmed. He managed to make a shield from his thin red web. Xiao was annoyed because he couldn't harm the spider, and the teacher was also distracting him by constantly telling him not to risk his life. Dailu also didn't like the idea of fighting the spider. She agreed with the teacher and Principal Su that it was not worth going ahead, and it was better to retreat. Nothing could stop Xiao as he really wanted to pass the exam and become a second-star beast hunter. Kill that beast and test his limits. The terrifying appearance of the spider did not frighten Xiao. He ordered Black Fang to sneak up behind the spider and use the Claw of Oblivion. Suddenly, the spider opened its mouth and released a large black web towards Xiao. Suddenly, an aggressively minded wolf emerged from the shadows behind the spider. The spider reacted to this and quickly hit the wolf with its sharp metal paw. But Freya came to the rescue to protect Xiao. She activated the divine shield in time. The shield only softened the blow, but Xiao was still sent flying into the rock behind him, and his beast looked exhausted. Xiao recovered from the blow and gave a thumbs down, showing that he was not affected by the spider's mockery. The spider was confused and decided to launch a new attack and released another web towards Xiao. Having climbed onto the black fang, the guy began to dodge the web, as it was very poisonous. Looking at the spider's terrifying eyes, the boy understood that he couldn't just run away from the spider. He needed another plan to defeat it. Then Xiao noticed the health bar above the spider's head, which was constantly and slowly decreasing for no reason. The guy noticed shallow wounds on the spider's back. Blood was coming out of them, so the web became weaker. Due to the injuries he had received, Black Fang would likely not be able to withstand another blow. So Xiao decided to ask Freya for cover. The spider's life bar decreased again, and it became clear how to deal with the nasty spider. Xiao was suspended in the air by Freya. He shouted at Black Fang to spit on the spider. Black Fang turned towards the spider and spat right in his face, which left him confused. The spider got angry and released a very large amount of web, but Black Fang managed to react and hid in the shadows. The animal catcher confirmed his suspicions that the more webs a spider produces, the fewer lives it has. Black Fang's job was simply to wear out the spider, not without risking his own life. The wolf used shadows. He moved from side to side, which made the spider very angry. But again, one of the webs reached its target and the Black Fang was caught and immobilized, followed by a blow from the spider's sharp paw. Xiao ordered Black Fang to not hold back and activate the demonic power, and Freya to use the sacred shield of light on the wolf, and she also needed to remove all the negative effects. After activating the demonic power, the wolf was enveloped in yellow lightning, showing how much his power had increased. Meanwhile, the teacher and Director Su were flying in the helicopter. They did not interfere in the battle, as they assumed that Xiao had found a way to deal with the spider. 7 hours later, the battle was still ongoing, with the exhausted Black Fang and Freya still standing. The exhausted Xiao noticed that the spider had lost 90% of its health. Its web had become lighter. The spider would not be able to defeat Black Fang and Freya. It needed to hold out a little longer. The only thing that bothered Xiao was that the spider, having lost so much blood, did not try to escape, perhaps because it was furious. Opening its mouth once again, the spider fired a powerful shot of web towards Xiao. But since the black wolf used Hell Howl and the purple flame was able to reflect the web attack, the spider was left without strength, and this was a chance for Xiao, and he, without thinking, immediately attacked the spider with the Lotus of Hellfire. In response, the spider released a rain of webs. Freya managed to react and covered Xiao with her body, but the beast didn't need to worry about Xiao. They had to go on the offensive to deal with the spider once and for all. Due to the attack of the Black Fang by the Hell Lotus, the spider received serious damage and its eyes started bleeding. Tired from the battle, Xiao sat down on the ground and realized that he had managed to kill the spider with the help of the coordinated work of his beasts. She stood up and walked deeper into the cave to see what was hidden there. There should definitely be something worthwhile there. Suddenly, Xiao heard someone telling him to leave immediately, because even after death, the spider could continue to move for some time. Immediately after these words, the spider actually rose up and opened its mouth to launch another attack on the beast catcher's squad. Frightened, Xiao commanded his beasts to hide inside it immediately. Freya flew up and decided to launch a powerful attack on the spider's body, which made Xiao worry. This attack sent the spider flying into the air, and then it exploded into tiny particles, which now definitely meant the spider was dead. Xiao looked at Freya with bewilderment, because she was able to master the combat skill on her own. Returning to the cave, Xiao saw what the spider was so fiercely and desperately defending. He decided to ask Delu what it was. Xiao was delighted to hear that it was a heavenly soul vine seed that had an ancient bloodline. Now he would be able to cultivate it. Dailu knew that this would be an extremely difficult growing process, as it required dewdrops from the feather grass plant and nectar from the magical yellow flower, as well as fertilizer from the excrement of higher beasts. Xiao looked at the seed with disappointment. It was so small, but it was even more troublesome than the daughter of an aristocrat. Since Dailu is the form of the king of beasts and is being sought by the empress of this country, she can simply ask for help from other beasts of the same high level. After leaving the cave, Zhao waved to the helicopter and said that he was okay. 2 weeks later, in the city of Xiling, as expected from a national competition, the atmosphere and scale were amazing. As he climbed up to the stands, elder brother Murong was surprised that the great Xiao himself had come so early. Xiao wished good morning to brother Murong and complimented Liu Jin that she had become even more beautiful. Yanshu was so angry that he crushed the can in his hand. and Xiao calmly explained to him that Murong Xinshin's name was too long, so he came up with a nickname for his sister. The guy was puzzled as to how he even had the courage to insult his sister with such a stupid nickname. The sister asked him to calm down and sit down, and he obediently agreed with his sister. Xinshin told Xiao about her successes, because her first beast had evolved and reached the second stage of its mature form, and the second one had awakened the ability to control lightning. Murong Sr. was horrified that his little sister would talk to another guy herself, and even accept this stupid nickname so calmly. The guy was desperate because girls grow up too quickly, and his sister was always so vindictive that she remembers how he gave her a nickname, and after that, she did not talk to him for several days. The world has gone mad. The cat now hangs out with the mouse, and it seems that soon there will be cancer on the mountain because Murong's sister has found her betrothed, Yanshu declared. In order to distract himself from the strange brother Murong, Xiao asked Xinshin who they were fighting today, but he didn't get an answer since the results of the draw hadn't been announced yet. Then a female figure appeared and claimed that the guys were wrong and the results were already known. Director Su approached the boys, holding the results of the draw in her hands, and told them that their first opponent would be the White Tiger Academy, and they must defeat them at all costs. The girl in the luxurious purple dress with a gorgeous figure heard this and asked Su why she was so nervous. Wasn't she afraid of losing to them? An angry Su decided to ask what Director Zhu was doing here, why she wasn't in her place in the preparation area. If you're interested, all the information was on the phone. With their chests pressed against each other, the two headmistresses began to argue over the talent of this year's Azure Dragon Academy's trump card, King Yu since elementary school. The teacher interrupted the headmistress's argument as he announced that the Empress had arrived. Director Zhu continued to threaten Director Su and said that she would force him to return to his pathetic academy in disgrace. There was a roar of excitement in the stands as the Empress descended from the heavens. People believed that she was the most beautiful and powerful woman in the country. Shangguanlan was the Empress of the Dragon State, dressed in a beautiful white kimono and riding a qilin. Xiao watched her with admiration, because she was the strongest beast catcher in the Dragon State, and her presence alone caused awe. The Empress had the mark of 11 stars on her, which meant that she was above all the 10th star hunters. The difference with Xiao was a real abyss. Xiao looked at the 7-colored sacred qilin and saw terrifying characteristics that even he couldn't analyze. There was horror on Xiao's face as he expected. The gap between them was too big. Even the dragon's eye could not appreciate the strength of this beast. Xiao asked Delu, since the Empress ordered the capture of the fox with 9 tails, how could it survive? She should be grateful that Xiao made a contract with her. The qilin was not the only powerful beast the Empress had under her control. She had even more powerful beasts under her command. A golden dragon wriggled around the Empress, its aura striking and breathtaking. The astonished Xiao asked Dailu if Shangguan really had a purebred dragon under his command, to which he received a negative answer. According to the chronicles, only purebred dragons, phoenixes, and qilins have divine origins, and phoenixes and qilins come after dragons in strength. If the purebred dragons were extinct, then how did the Empress manage to make a contract with one of them and obtain one of the 3 dragon treasures, the Dragon Tear? Xiao wondered about these questions. The Empress announced that the battle was about to begin, as the draw had Xiao going first. On the left side of the arena stood the White Tiger Academy's participant, Lin Tianxi, the guild leader's son, dressed in an orange suit, and on the right stood the Azure Dragon Academy's representative, Xiao Xinyu. Without a second's delay, Xiao summoned Black Fang, a purple wolf that announced its appearance with a roar, while the opponent summoned a red snake with a long tongue sticking out and an aggressive hiss. Xinshin and Yang Shuo were surprised by this clash of beasts, fearing that the fight would not be easy, considering that Red Snake and Black Fang were each other's opponents. The Red Snake used a hurricane blade, illuminating the arena with a bright yellow light, directing a fiery whirlwind towards Black Fang. Black Fang, without hesitation, released a purple light from his toothy mouth, the so-called hellish howl. Black Fang, assuming the confident pose of a predator, growled terrifyingly, seeing someone's blood scatter across the arena. The bald guy with cross-shaped earrings in his ears smiled contentedly, voicing that the advantage was clearly not on Xiao's side and it would be better for him to surrender. The confident Xiao, not giving in to his opponent's provocations, resolutely extended his hand forward, showing the number 2, explaining that he only needed 2 attacks. Xiao, who suddenly became serious, confidently commanded Black Fang to use Hell Howl into the sky. The Empress's assistant, who stood next to her, watched the pillar of purple light and assumed that he wanted to melt the sand. But despite his efforts, the fire of the Xiao beast was too weak. The Empress, sitting on the throne, rested her chin on her graceful hand, grinned, and refuted her assistant's guess about Xiao's plan. After revealing Xiao's plan, the Empress looked at the purple pillar with a satisfied smile and explained that Xiao was going to use the 7-colored cloud she had summoned. The frightened opponent, looking at the large wolf spewing purple flames from its mouth, wondered what Xiao had planned. Feeling the raindrops falling on his skin, the frightened enemy gave the red snake the order to stop Xiao. Xiao, against the backdrop of a purple sky with a yellow swirl, relaxedly spread his arms out to the sides, telling his opponent that it was too late and the chance was lost. The clearly maddened enemy looked at the ground where his wet sand lay, realizing that his beast would now be unable to create either sand whirlwinds or hurricane blades. Even more confidently, Xiao extended his hand forward, giving the command to Black Fang to use the Lotus of Hellfire, and the wolf, without having time to listen to the rest of the command, Xiao immediately jumped towards the enemy, spewing scarlet flames from his mouth. The Fire Lotus flower hit the target straight on, causing the snake to hiss in pain, and, opening its mouth, the snake fell to the ground without strength. The red snake, lying on the ground with blood flowing from its mouth, only heard the commentator's words about winning with 2 attacks. The battered opponent fell to his knees, hearing only how great Xiao's idea of artificial rain was. Dressed in golden and white clothes, the Empress looked at the arena with satisfaction, not hesitating to praise Xiao's intelligence. The assistant, who came up from behind with a file on Xiao in her hands, announced that there was nothing strange in his past. And upon hearing this, the Empress said that the invitation to the training camp of the Emperor's souls should be given to Xiao. Xiao, who was returning from the arena, was already waiting for Xinjin and Yang Shuo, who congratulated him on his victory and praised him. Inspired by Xiao's victory, Director Su, dressed in blue as always, jumped up from her seat in the stands, waved her hand happily, and promised to reward him later. Dailu's inner voice told Xiao that he smelled the scent of phoenix grass, which made Xiao very wary because he knew very well that this grass did not grow on the western border. Confused by Xiao's intention to leave, Xinxin asked if he was sure he didn't want to watch the next fight. After receiving a negative answer, Xinxin reminded him that the next fight was hers, and while Yang Shuo tried to scold Xiao for flirting with his sister, he wished her luck and said that he would root for her. Xinxin wanted to say something, but Xiao interrupted her and, awkwardly scratching his head, apologized, saying that he had things to do and could not stay. Nodding her head from side to side, Xinxin suggested that in that case they should go somewhere after the tournament. As the commentator announced the upcoming fight between Jinxin and the son of the ruler of the White Tiger Academy, Xiao ran away, having first agreed to go somewhere. The 2 guards in the crowd of people tirelessly thanked him for his protection, presented him with fresh eggs, and praised Mr. Zhou, who approached them. Confused, Xiao stopped near a passing blue rhinoceros. He didn't understand if this whole crowd really came to greet the army. In front of the blue rhinoceros with a shield on his back, a clearly elderly hunter in golden armor walked with a confident and proud step. The shocked Xiao immediately turned to Dailu in his mind, telling him about the appearance of an 8-star level beast hunter with a top-form rhinoceros and affection above 100. Dailu was not surprised by this information and said that the rhinoceros is part of a clan of fighting monsters that live for the sake of fighting and have long been at odds with her 9-tailed clan, and the only ruler of the western city can be none other than Zhou Xiong. Dailu realized that the phoenix grass could very well be in Zhou's bag and suggested that Xiao steal it, but he was not confident in this proposal. Xiao noticed that the huge rhinoceros was limping for some reason and, looking closer, noticed a red bug in the beast's ears and eyes. Without any modesty, pushing aside people in his path, Xiao rushed forward and approached Mr. Zhou with an offer to cure the fighting rhinoceros, since it was clearly sick. Mr. Zhou, turning to face Xiao, did not understand at all what he was talking about and asked what Xiao meant, thinking that Xiao was the same age as his son, and he probably did not understand anything about healing. Handing over his business card to Mr. Zhou, Xiao introduced himself as a visiting physician from the Heaven Guild and began asking questions. How often did the beast appear lethargic? Did it develop red spots, inflammation, and ulcers on its skin in rainy weather? Surprised by the correct questions, Mr. Zhou accepted Xiao's business card, replying that he had come for precisely this reason, but did not consider him a truly worthy doctor and asked him to name the cause of the illness in order to compare whether his answer would match that of other doctors. Without losing his composure, Xiao pulled out a red bug from the rhinoceros's skin handing it to Mr. Zhou and explaining that the cause of the disease was precisely this bug, the sand mantica. Pleased with the answer, but still serious, Mr. Zhou paid tribute to Xiao and acknowledged his knowledge, saying that he had met many doctors who were unable to cure his war rhinoceros, so how was he going to cure it? Still standing opposite each other, Xiao suggested finding a less crowded place as he would need some herbs, and Mr. Zhou, truly worried about his beast, suggested going to his house and getting everything he needed, and if the beast was cured, he would be willing to fulfill Xiao's every wish. Satisfied, Xiao looked at Mr. Zhou's back, thinking that he would not only receive the phoenix grass but also make a useful acquaintance. Standing in front of a large number of small boxes, Xiao recited out loud that for the purple soul extract, he needed 15 grams of silver lotus petals, 20 grams of sacred grass, 25 grams of poria, and he also needed to add a secret ingredient, and then he could brew a medicinal decoction. Standing directly in front of Mr. Zhou and holding a test tube of purple liquid, Xiao explained that this was the purple soul extract, half of which was to be drunk, and the remaining half was to be applied externally. And if the master did not trust him, he could try the elixir on another beast. Mr. Zhou said he trusted people and knelt down in front of the rhinoceros's face, opened its mouth and poured in the purple liquid. The elixir worked immediately, driving the sandy manticas out from under the smooth blue skin of the peacefully sleeping fighting rhinoceros. Holding the now empty test tube in his hands, Mr. Zhou was surprised at how peacefully his rhinoceros could sleep and acknowledged Xiao as a great healer. Inspired, Xiao spread his arms out to the sides and offered Mr. Zhou a recipe for a medicine to cure his soldiers' war beasts, and he thanked him and asked what Xiao wanted in return. Xiao voiced that he needed phoenix grass and a magical radiance flower, to which Mr. Zhou replied that phoenix grass was very easy to obtain, but the magical radiance flower would require a bit of work. Mr. Zhou, overjoyed at the healing of his beast, invited Xiao to stay and have a cup of tea, but Xiao refused, admitting that he had sneaked out here while Mr. Zhou's son and Xiao's girlfriend were fighting. Hearing about his son's fight, Lord Zhou thought that this would be a great opportunity to visit the Empress and suggested that they go together. Xiao, leaning on the stands with both hands, shouted in surprise that an hour had passed and the fight was still going on. The blue-haired boy smirked, reminding Xinxin that she was in a losing position and reproaching her for being absent-minded from the very beginning of the fight. Xinxin, completely unaware of her opponent's mockery, was only thinking about the reason why Xiao had not returned yet and that she had no right to lose. Otherwise, she would be incredibly ashamed of her weakness. Xinxin immediately turned towards the stands at Xiao's familiar cry, who was surprised that she was still holding on. Xiao quickly assessed the condition of his opponents and concluded that they were almost on the verge of exhaustion, which was both a plus and a minus for each other. Xiao noticed the Xinxin beast, which looked like a bird with icy wings and blue tints, and realized that this was her trump card. Opposing the Xinxin beast was the demonic wolf of darkness, a snow-white wolf with blue eyes and a golden horn on its head, capable of creating 12 shadow clones. Xinxin gave the command to her beast, and it immediately used its icy wings to release sharp ice chips at the enemy, hitting several clones, receiving an angry growl and a counterattack in response. Xiao watched the fight with a serious face, hearing a stranger's words from the side that the shadow cloning technique was vile, since the clones were simply impossible to distinguish. As Xinxin stood there, at a loss as to what to do next, Xiao suddenly coughed, as if giving her a secret sign. Xiao, putting his palm on his chest, began to cough even louder, while the crowd did not understand what was happening. And Xinxin guessed that all this was not just like that, but a hint. Realizing Xiao's plan and hint, Xinxin immediately turned back to her opponent's beast, which was tiredly exhaling fumes from the cold, hiding somewhere behind its clones. Realizing exactly where the original was, Xinxin confidently commanded her bird-shaped beast to attack the enemy, and this precise and swift strike hit the target, spraying the blood of the white wolf. Shocked by the bird's sudden strike, the blue-haired boy attributed his opponent's normal luck to his commanding wolf to move the clones, but even that didn't help the wolf avoid the ice attacks. In the dust, shaking sweat from her forehead, Xinxin listened to the commentator's announcement of her and her academy's victory by a score of 2-0. Yangshuo and Xiao, who were watching Xinxin descend, applauded and shouted congratulations on her victory. Ignoring her brother, who was so happy about his little sister's victory, Xinxin immediately threw herself into Xiao's arms, thanking him for his congratulations. Yangshuo, who didn't understand anything, was shaking with fear, voicing his fears that Xiao had definitely done something to her. Before Xiao could say that he hadn't done anything special, Yang Shuo interrupted him, ordering him to take his hands off his sister and threatening that if he went near Xinxin, Xiao would kill him without a second thought. The blue-haired boy, awkwardly scratching the back of his head, walked back to the director, who was standing with a cigarette in her hands and was clearly angry about her charge's loss. Breaking the smoldering cigarette, the director pointed towards her charges, informing them that no one would go to bed until they came up with the perfect plan and tactics for a team fight. Mr. Zhou, standing next to the Empress, amid the joyful cheers of the spectators, acknowledged that his son had much to learn. But the general's daughter was a promising student who had managed to spot a weak spot at a crucial moment. The Empress, smiling, asked Mr. Zhou not to pretend and admit that it was the very divine doctor he had praised so much who had suggested her weak spot. Hearing these words, Lord Zhou immediately knelt down on one knee, asking the Empress not to punish them and to give them another chance. The Empress, rising from her throne, reassured Lord Zhou and said that all three of them would receive an invitation to the Imperial Soul Camp, to which the Lord smiled and thanked her. Xiao, clasping his hands, addressed Yang Shuo as his brother and suggested having a barbecue in the evening. But Yang Shuo, in turn, embarrassedly and angrily refused Xiao and told him not to call him brother. A guy in a gray uniform appeared in front of Xinxin and Xiao, handing over a beautiful golden envelope with a red seal on it, explaining that their performance had impressed the Empress enough that she was inviting them to the Emperor's Soul Camp. Yang Shuo, having moderated his anger and crossed his arms over his chest, looked at the golden envelope in Xiao's hands, explaining that the Emperor's Soul Camp is an elite program for the best first-year students, supervised by the Empress herself, from where they emerge as pillars of the Dragon State. Xiao, hearing Yang Shuo's words, broke out in cold sweat, realizing that this was a great opportunity, but he was bound by a bloody contract with Dailu, and if they were discovered, there would be problems. Seeing Xiao hesitating, Xinxin put her hand on Xiao's cheek, innocently looking straight into his eyes. Smiling, Xinxin tried to calm Xiao down, asking him to stop frowning, since they were going to a barbecue today, and they could think about it later, to which Xiao still breathed out thoughtfully, agreeing with the girl. While eating barbecue with great appetite, Xiao mentioned that Xinxin and Yang Shuo were from an elite clan, but did not mind eating street food, and Yang Shuo explained that the four great clans were not monks, and that he and his sister liked to eat many other things besides barbecue. Remembering his little blue-haired sister who never ate street food, he admitted that he was sure that the descendants of great clans were accustomed to luxury. Xinxin sighed tiredly as she watched her brother drink from a can, and when Xiao asked what happened, she replied that Yang Shuo was just annoying her. Xiu sarcastically suggested giving Xinxin a massage since she looked too tense, which surprised Yang Shuo so much that he spat out the entire contents of his mouth. Brother Xinxin immediately began to threaten poor Xiao to relax and moderate his ardor. Xiao said that he would drink 3 glasses as punishment. This infuriated Yanshu even more, as he squeezed the can in his hand and said that there were no glasses, since alcohol was not water. Xiao understood everything and raised his hand up, asking the owner to bring something stronger. The owner brought them a whole box of booze, and a new insidious plan was born in Yang Shuo's head. He needed to outdrink Xiao. After drinking a lot, Yang Shuo felt sick, and it became clear that he was drunk. He had already made promises from Xiao that when he married Xinxin, he would not offend her. A pleased Xiao boasted to Xinxin that her brother was the first to get drunk and acknowledge him as his son-in-law. Embarrassed, Xinxin knew that it was because of her brother that she wasn't having as much fun today, so she suggested to Xiao that they go out together sometime. Xiao was pleasantly surprised by this proposal, so he suggested going for a walk the day after tomorrow, since they had a team tournament tomorrow. Lying on his bed, Xiao thought about what he still needed for the seed. He had the phoenix grass, and the magical fusion flower would be brought soon. All he had to do was get the droppings of the magical beast of the Beast King form. Having thought everything over, Xiao covered himself with a blanket, turned to the window and fell asleep, because the morning is wiser than the evening. Morning came and Dailu decided to wake up her master, which caught Xiao off guard. Enraged, Xiao jumped up from the bed and pressed Dailu against the wall, placing his hand on her chest. He didn't understand why she got out of the seal herself. Hearing that Dailu had gone out to get information and no one had seen her, Xiao exhaled and calmed down because his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Because Xiu kept his hand on Dailu's chest, she decided to clarify whose chest the heart almost jumped out of was hers or his. After apologizing, Xiao sat down on a chair and reproached Dailu for leaving the beast catcher's mark without permission. But since she found out something, then let her tell. Dailu told Xiao that the admiral of the Dragon State's fleet, Murong Jin, had captured a jellyfish, a spiritual snake of disasters that knew many things, and was going to be executed in 3 days on the full moon. The fox had known the jellyfish for a long time, and she was her friend, and also a magical beast in the form of the king of beasts. Xiao was amazed that it was no coincidence that Murong Jin was an admiral since he could defeat the beast king form, but it dawned on him that Dailu was going to save the jellyfish. The jellyfish had information that the empress of the dragon state, Shangguan Lan, had participated in the battle to exterminate the dragons, so it was necessary to save the jellyfish, Dailu explained. But Xiao flatly refused this idea. After all, the jellyfish was imprisoned in an underground prison at the fleet headquarters, with 1,000 high-level beast hunters patrolling the area. And in the headquarters itself are the hunters of the beasts of the 10th star, who control the beasts with the blood of the sea god. Xiao flatly refused to go to certain death, and since Dailu is bound by a bloody contract with him, she will listen to him and will not go either. Suddenly, a red system window popped up with the task of freeing the jellyfish, and Xiao began to reason and look for positive aspects in this operation to save the jellyfish. Since Xiao considered the fox not only his beast but also his family, he would help her, and together they would free the jellyfish. Dailu was so happy that she hugged her master's hand and thanked him. Her affection increased and now equaled 90 points. Xie received a message on his phone with the news that the execution of the jellyfish would take place in 3 days, and he asked Dailu why they had chosen that particular date. The fox explained that spiritual snakes have special blood. If you cut off its head on a full moon, you can get a whole magic crystal, but if you kill it on another day, the crystal will be incomplete. Xiao put his hand to his face because he didn't understand how a second-star beast catcher would manage to escape from a prison teeming with powerful fighters. The next day, Xiao stood in front of the blood lake next to Yang Shuo, who told him that it was the fallen dragon lake, which was formed during the battle between dragons. She said that this is a very tough test. If you lose, you will be left without skin. Under the thickness of the water there were dragon bones, from which a very powerful dragon aura emanated. The guy thought about the fact that there were dragon bones at the bottom of the lake. If he let the beast absorb them, it would be equivalent to evolution, but the question remained how to get them from the bottom of the lake. Murong reminded Xiao that there would be viewers watching the broadcast, so he should stop standing there in a daze. The transport helicopters flew off in different directions, which meant that all the participants were in their places, so the host welcomed his viewers to the team battle of the supernova competition. The Xiao sisters watched him on TV. They believed that their little brother would definitely win this competition. To show everyone what he was capable of, Xiao summoned his most powerful beast, the Black Fang. Xiao's opponents decided not to lag behind and summoned their magical beasts to show the results of their numerous trainings. Xiao was confused that the guy in the black t-shirt stood motionless and didn't even summon his magical beast. Yang Shuo decided to strike first before his opponents had time to summon all of their magical beasts. But then something invisible hit his griffin, causing blood to flow from its wing, which frightened Yang Shuo. The invisible creature turned out to be a powerful shadow ninja monkey who could control shadows. Yang Shuo noted the ability to instantly teleport multiple times in a row within a limited area. The red snake released a hurricane blade, and a powerful beam burst out from its mouth, and the demonic wolf of darkness used a shadow clone. Yang Shuo was cursing because he couldn't see anything because of the hurricane blade. He asked his sister to deal with the wolf herself. The guy in the black t-shirt gave Zhou the order to have his demonic dark wolf focus on the netherworld wolf. Black Fang had to continue to push through the sandstorm as Xiao had ordered. But the guy in the black shirt who controlled the shadow ninja monkey said that this would not happen and used the kunai of darkness. To avoid the kunai of darkness, Black Fang used dark hunting, which allows him to disappear into the shadows without a trace. Xinjin was worried about whether Xiao was okay, but since he had foreseen this scenario, he was fine. The Murongs realized that their opponents were using a sneaky strategy of focusing all their attacks on Xiao, so they had to stop them. The White Griffin's heavenly lightning struck the Dark Devil Wolf to destroy its clones. At this time, the Shadow Monkey Ninja continued to attack with his Darkness Kunai. A wyvern came to the aid of the wolf of the underworld and protected the wolf with its breath. The guy in the black t-shirt said that they were wasting their energy and couldn't protect Xiao forever, so Xiao Xinyu's star would be the first to go out today. Hearing the intentions of his opponents, Xiao decided to take action and activated the demon power of the Black Fang. All of the wolf of the underworld's wounds were completely healed, and he was restored to a perfect state. The guy in the black t-shirt tensed up, because the three of them attacked only the wolf of the underworld. If it had been another beast, it would have collapsed long ago, exhausted. All the animals began to fear the wolf of the underworld. He also had a mental effect on them. Black Fang raised his head up and prepared the Hellfire Lotus. Powerful fire was coming out of his mouth. Yang Shuo was shocked that the skill of one beast simultaneously contained 4 attributes: fire, wind, darkness, and demon power. Seeing the impending threat, the short-haired boy decided to use the hurricane blade to put out the fire. But the Black Fang's attack was so powerful that the red snake was unable to repel it. The guy with the short hair was horrified, as the earth element was supposed to suppress the fire. Xiao chuckled at him and explained that elemental superiority was irrelevant in the face of absolute power. The wounded shadow ninja monkey and demon wolf were barely able to stay on their feet. Xin Xin saw Xiao's true strength and realized that he really hadn't fought at full strength yesterday. Xiao mocked his opponents, saying that with such weaklings he could handle the 3 of them alone. The enemy was hurt by this, but his comrade immediately began to calm him down, saying that he should not give in to emotions but should just continue to follow the plan. After these words, the guy in red became inspired, as he thought that even with such strength, the Hell Wolf would not be able to withstand the simultaneous attack of 3. After saying these words, the wolf concentrated his own flames to form armor for defense. The enemy was shocked, since the use of this technique requires not only a high level of consciousness of the beast, but also a huge reserve of spiritual strength in the hunter. Xiao decided to further puzzle the enemy by asking them if they had noticed anything. The enemy realized that the Murong family's beasts had disappeared and were high in the sky. The wyvern was able to catch the monkey off guard, grabbing it and flying away with it. The trapper realized that the shadow ninja monkey would not have the strength to break free and would simply be thrown out of the arena. Therefore, a stone giant was summoned and given the order to save his comrade. Glad that the enemy had fallen for the provocation, Zhao summoned Freya. The enemy was even more shocked, because he recognized the beast. It was a sacred angel of light that was only seen in books. But how could he resist the stone giant if he was in the initial stage? In response, Xiao stated that it was simple. His beast was much stronger than one could imagine. Unfortunately, due to Xiao Xinyu's interference, participant Yang Heng was unable to save his beast. Xiao was not distracted by the defeated monkey and ordered his wolf not to interfere, as he wanted Freya to prove herself. The enemy was perplexed by the impudence. Could a beast in its initial form really defeat their beasts, which had already reached an advanced form? The red snake was given the order to teach this arrogant fool a lesson. The stone giant had to cover his partner. But before anyone could blink, Freya struck the snake with all her might, sending it flying free. The reporters nearby were in shock because the filming had to be slowed down 1,000 times to make out anything. Yang Shuo asked Xiao what kind of technique was used, in response to which the guy said that Freya had mastered this technique herself and it was called lightning dash. The enemy was confused, as even the stone giant with its enormous defense was no match for the angel's attacks, so they had no idea what to do next. Xiao didn't give them a chance to think, continuing to mock them, asking how they liked the lightning dash. They were sure that such a powerful skill couldn't be used often, so they had to attack now to make it in time. After making the decision, one of the guys summoned a thunder rhino. The second guy was also full of determination and, activating the seal on his hand, summoned an indomitable gray fox. The Murong family didn't want to stand aside and began to activate summoning seals after the enemy. Xiao did not expect help from his allies and ordered Freya to deal with the smallest one and remove the gray fox from the arena. In response to the angel's attack, a stone giant stood in front of her to protect the fox. The Murong also sent their beasts in response to delay the enemy. The enemy was on the verge of exhaustion, but since they had almost no spiritual energy left, then Xiao Xinyu's should also be running low. The bald guy supported this statement, saying that he had only enough energy for one more session. So they decided to use their signature technique. It was their last chance to win. Xiao and the Murong family realized that the enemy was running out of steam, so they would launch a final attack that they had to repel in order to win. The stone golem began to grow greatly in size. The dark demon wolf used its shadow clone ability on the stone giant. They intended to all attack the Black Fang at once, but the attack was not successful, as the griffin managed to pick up the Black Fang at the very last moment. Xiao, with a satisfied grin, ordered his beast to finish off the enemy. Xinshin ordered the wyvern to ignite the flames of souls, and brother Yang Shuo was about to unleash the full power of lightning. All the skills were used to combine the power of the 3 beasts, directing everything to attack the Black Fang. The combined attack with enormous force rushed downward so quickly that it broke the sound barrier. The animals below didn't even have time to react. They were all defeated at once. The participants in the battle experienced different emotions from what happened, but one thing was clear: they lost this battle. And the Azure Dragon Academy achieved a crushing victory without a single loss. Xiao was delighted with what they had accomplished and began to congratulate Liu Jin, hugging her around the waist. Yang Shuo was furious that Xiao allowed himself to grope his sister on live TV. The opponent also congratulated Xiao's team on their well-deserved victory, calling him a real monster. Xiao was embarrassed and thanked the compliment. Changing his smile to a serious expression, Xiao thanked Director Zhu, because the whole country was talking about their academy only because of the director and the White Tiger Academy. But at this time, the directors only shook hands vigorously, laughing in each other's faces. Principal Zhu mockingly warned Principal Su to keep a closer eye on her star student in case he transferred to their academy next year. To which Su expressed doubt that Zhu was capable of luring away her student. Su called her favorite student to her. Xiao didn't even realize what was happening, as the director's hand suddenly pulled the guy towards him, and he found himself pressed against the director's chest, which embarrassed him greatly, but he could not break free from the director's strong grip. Su said that she saved his life so he would never betray her, but the guy just asked the director to control himself since they were on live television. Looking at the TV screen, Sister Xiao gripped the remote control in her hand in anger, calling Director Su a vile bitch. After that, the team went to celebrate the victory, but this time it was Xiao who was drunk, not Yang Shuo, so they took him home and put him to bed to sleep it off. But it was just a game, and as soon as the Murong family left, Xiao summoned Dailu. Dailu didn't understand where the guy was going in the middle of the night, especially since he was drunk. In response to which Xiao only said that he had figured out how to save the jellyfish and he needed the fox to go with him. Xiao intended to give Dailu a purebred dragon bone to evolve her because she was stuck at the third stage of the Beast King form. If she swallows a dragon bone and combines her blood with that of a dragon, she can evolve from a fox dragon, to which Dailu only calls him a fool, because no creature can combine their blood with that of a dragon. Xiao agreed, but immediately said that he had a way to do this. Dailu didn't believe that the guy was speaking seriously, thinking that he was joking because he had been drinking that evening. Still, they set off. Xiao was serious and asked Dailu to protect him with foxfire when he went down into the water. Even though it was impossible to see where to swim, Xiao guided Dailu because he could feel where the dragon bone was located. He continued to guide Dailu, sinking lower and lower. Seeing the bone, Xiao said that it was a heart bone, the smallest, but the densest and hardest part of the dragon, while Dailu voiced her doubts about the boy being 18 years old. While the bone ring was absorbing it, Xiao warned the fox that they would go to the forest to merge, as no one would disturb them there. They managed to get the dragon bone, but it wasn't enough for Dailu to evolve, so Xiao took out something else and held it in his hand. Xiao handed over a red pill called Blood Fusion Crystal to Dailu. The fox was astonished by it. The guy also gave her a protective pill that he bought from the system store to increase the chances of a breakthrough. She reminded the fox that eating this pill was a very risky undertaking. If the fusion with the dragon's blood failed, then Dailu would suffer a strong rebound in strength. Dailu calmed Xiao down. It was he who told her that he wanted to become the greatest hunter. Why was he so indecisive now? The fox was determined and was ready to take risks to become stronger. She wants to live freely under the rays of the sun. Hearing the fox's words, Xiao activated the ring, thereby starting the evolution process. Xiao, heading towards Dailu, warned her that the blood fusion crystal had begun to take effect. Dailu immediately went berserk after the evolution began, but Xiao managed to run up to her, saying words of encouragement. Xiao looked resolutely into Dailu's frightened, bright purple eyes, reminding her that if she failed, everything would be lost. Xiao's reflection in Dailu's fiery purple eyes convinced him that he would help him become stronger, take revenge, and would always be there. Dailu's roar, filled with strength, determination, and fury, sent Xiao flying backwards. Xiao, standing confidently on his feet, was puzzled, wondering if everything had worked out and if Dailu was okay. Before Xiao's eyes, surrounded by dust, Dailu confidently appeared naked, with blushing cheeks, in human form. Still with a slight blush on her cheeks and the veins on her forehead swollen with anger, Dailu sighed angrily. Xiao, with a smile on his face, joyfully shouted out an enthusiastic statement that everything worked out. At that very moment, Xiao's expression changed to one of confusion when he saw Dailu quickly approaching him. Without a trace of embarrassment from her naked body, the determined Dailu pounced mercilessly on Xiao and pushed him to the ground, sitting on top of him. The guy found himself pinned to the ground, with a completely naked fox sitting on top of him. Dailu, although embarrassed but determined, shouted curses at Xiao, accusing him of making his words of support sound like a marriage proposal. Being in an unacceptable closeness to each other, both embarrassed, with blushing cheeks, Xiao tried to justify himself, explaining that he didn't mean that at all. Still sitting on top of Zhao Dailu, with her eyes full of despair and hope from the words she had said earlier, with her cheeks flushed and her face innocent, asked him to repeat his words. Looking at the mountains over which the bright sun was rising, Xiao thought about how he was not ready to give up, but he understood that he would not become a great magician by the time he was 30. Sitting on a huge rock, Xiao, with a sunken face, was spinning dark thoughts in his head, scolding himself for giving Dale dragon blood, knowing that it would strengthen her, but forgetting that a dragon is lustful by nature and a mere human cannot cope with a 9-tailed dragon fox. Continuing to ponder in his head, Xiao decided for himself that this situation was worse than waking up in someone else's bed after drinking, and he couldn't restrain himself only because that was the nature of men. Accompanying the curses with her thin arms moving towards Xiao, Dailu suddenly grabbed his neck, scaring him to death. While Xiao was trying to clear his throat, Dailu, who was still naked, had a thoughtful expression and was scolding herself for not being able to control her powers, knowing that if anyone found out, she would definitely be laughed at. After clearing his throat, Xiao reproached Dailu for still walking around naked and used the power of his golden ring, which flashed with yellow light and materialized a very ordinary gray cloak. Happy Dailu, smiling, reproached the owner that he had already seen and done everything that was possible, and there was no point in pretending to be a gentleman. Finally putting the gray cloak on Dailu, Xiao awkwardly tried to explain that they were both old enough now. Holding Dailu by the shoulders, Xiao explained that in the event of unforeseen consequences, he was ready to take responsibility for the little fox's life. Enraged by Xiao Dailu's words, she threw a rock straight at his head, screaming at him to get out of her sight. Awkwardly, but with a smile on his face, he scratched the bruised area, taking his phone out of his pants pocket. Turning sharply to face Dailu, Xiao joyfully shoved the phone in her face, congratulating her on her breakthrough and successful evolution. Finally noticing her reflection on the phone screen, Dailu was surprised to see golden dragon horns on her head. A happy Dailu, with a beaming smile on her face, was surprised that, apart from her horns, all her injuries were healed. A divine panel appeared in front of Xiao, describing Dailu's improvements, the ability Dragon Power that helps deal physical and mental damage to the enemy, Dragon Soul that automatically blocks a fatal attack during critical wounds, increasing affection to 88, as well as the skills Divine Dragon Strike and Dragon Breath. Xiu extended his hand with a thumbs up, indicating that luck was on their side. But instead of luck, Dailu heard about pregnancy. Spreading her arms at her sides in displeasure, she warned Xiao that she would send him to the next world if he mentioned pregnancy even once more. Sitting in the apartment and reading the news, Xiao talked about his fears that they would only be able to save Medusa in 2 days on the ice island, and this was their only chance. Otherwise, they would have to give up this idea in order to have time to take part in the competition to avoid suspicion. Dailu thoughtfully put her hand to her face, wondering how Xiao, a 2nd-star trapper, was going to compete with the 9th-star trappers. Encouraged, Xiao shared the idea of using the dragon elixir with Dailu, with a smile on his face. And since Dailu now had dragon blood flowing through him, he asked her for some blood. Dailu, without a second thought, took out the knife and decisively ran it across his finger, preparing to give as much blood as he needed. A neat finger with a red nail quickly and without hesitation filled a transparent bottle with its scarlet blood. Fearing for Dailu, Xiao grabbed her bleeding finger, licking all the blood and scolding Dailu's reckless disregard for his body. Surprised, Dailu called out to Xiao, who was still holding her finger in his mouth, in an embarrassed and slightly sad voice. Suddenly, the phone in Xiao's hand rang, interrupting Dailu's words before he could finish his sentence. Still embarrassed, Dailu, holding the bottle in her hands, and the surprised Xiao looked at the screen of the ringing phone. A message from Lu Jin appeared on the phone screen, telling them to meet at 7 in the evening and have barbecue with her brother. The white-haired guy, noticing Xiao walking through the night city, called out to him, beckoning him over. When Xiao asked about the guy's early arrival, Yang Shuo's brother's face distorted with displeasure, and he named his sister as the reason. Xin Xin, wearing a white short dress that showed off her large breasts, folded her hands modestly in front and said that they had been waiting for a long time. Not at all embarrassed by Xin Xin's beauty, Xiao walked closer and asked the girl to help him get some special ingredients since he couldn't afford to buy them. Standing opposite each other, Xin Xin, smiling gently, holding her left hand shyly, agreed to help Xiao. While Xiao, holding Xin Xin by the shoulders, thanked the girl for her help and confessed his adoration. Her brother, with slight aggression, reminded her that he was there and would not let anyone harm his sister. An inspired Jinxin, with a glint in her eyes, warned her brother that she would go with Xiao to get some herbs. Not wanting to disturb Xiao and Xinxin, brother Yang Shuo referred to business, but not before pointing his finger to the side at Xiao and asking him to step aside and talk. Putting his hand on Xiao's shoulder in a supposedly friendly manner, Yang Shuo poked him in the chest, warning him that he could tolerate Xiao touching his sister, but he shouldn't think about dragging her to the hotel. Yang Shuo waved goodbye to them, and Xinxin did not forget to remind her brother to return home as early as possible. The herbs were lying on the table, and a satisfied Xinxin, with a bright smile on her face, accepted Xiao's sincere gratitude and promises to prepare strengthening elixirs for her beasts. Still inspired, Xinxin clasped her hands in front of her and asked Xiao if he had noticed anything else. A satisfied Xiao looked at the smiling Xinxin, sure that she was expecting praise for how beautifully she was dressed today, and replied that he didn't notice anything. Surprised, Xinxin looked at Xiao's back as he turned around and walked away, asking again if he was joking. Frustrated, Xinxin sighed, not believing that he really hadn't noticed anything. Xiao and Xinxin were walking around the city at night and came across a very scary-looking dark alley. The frightened Xinxin suddenly screamed in fear, which made Xiao nervous. Xinxin, who was sitting on the ground, assured Xiao that she was okay and was just scared of the kitten. Xiao, like a true gentleman, leaned over to Xinxin and began to help her. Since she had sprained her ankle, she needed to be more careful. The guy turned his back and offered to carry Xinxin on his back, since the street was quite slippery. But she refused because she was able to walk on her own. But the persistent Xiao asked her not to be naughty and took her on his back, which greatly embarrassed Xinxin. Because it was pouring rain outside, Xiao started running with Xinxin on his back so that they wouldn't get soaked to the skin. Finally reaching home, Xiao sat Xinxin down on the bed and began to dry her wet hair with a towel. Noticing Xinxin, Xiao threw her a towel to dry herself off so she wouldn't get sick and offered to massage her ankle. Xiao lowered himself to Xinxin's feet and began to slowly and pleasantly massage her leg. Because of his demonic eye, Xiao knew that Xinxin had twisted her ankle for the first time because of a magical beast. Xinxin began to tell the story of how she ended up at the sea with her father when she was 5 years old. During a severe storm, the Navy ships were attacked by magical beasts, and because of this, Xinxin fell overboard. But her father was able to save her from a black and gold armored shark with the cost of one of his hands. She thought about how tomorrow he would go to the naval headquarters prison to meet her father. Having risen to his feet, the guy began to walk away and asked Xinxin not to strain her leg, and then she would definitely recover before the final. Xinxin managed to grab Xiao's hand as he was leaving and asked him to carry her to the bathroom, since it was difficult for her to walk. Xiao couldn't refuse the beautiful girl and still helped her get to the shower. Afterwards, Xinxin happily took a hot shower after jogging in the cold rain. After getting out of the shower, Xinxin was embarrassed, thinking that the guy was waiting for her. But she saw her brother sitting on her bed, who asked her how her leg was. Brother came because Xiao, who had some business, asked him to. The worried brother understood that Xiao liked his sister, but he asked her to learn to control her feelings, as they could push her to rash actions. The girl sadly agreed, looking at the phone screen, hoping to see a message from Xiao, and understand what kind of business could be going on at such a late hour. At this time, in another place, Xiao raised his hand up and the seal of Dailu lit up on it, which he asked to come out to help with the elixirs. Dailu decided to tease Xiao by asking him why he didn't stay at the girl's house, but he avoided answering by saying that he needed Dailu to control fire to create at least 2 dragon elixirs. The girl was upset that the guy didn't react to her joke and immediately got down to business. After that, they began to brew elixirs with concentration. It was already deep night and the rain did not stop. Having sent him away, Xiao, with bags under his eyes, happily reported that everything had worked out and they had 2 pills. Before he could say that he would go and get some sleep before setting off on his journey, he immediately began to fall from lack of strength, but Dailu managed to catch him. She thanked her master for his efforts, saying that he was not only her master, but the boy never heard who he was to Dailu, and fell asleep. After Xiao's sleep, he stood dressed in front of the mirror and realized that it was time to set off on a journey full of mortal dangers. Dailu was still hesitant, since Xiao had no reason to risk his life for the sake of a summoned beast. Snapping his fingers at Dailu's forehead, causing her to stumble back, Xiao reminded her that she was not just a summoned beast, but part of the family, and that he would be with her until the end. There was also the question of Xiao disappearing from the Azure Dragon Academy for a few days, but the guy had already thought everything through and asked for 3 days off to go home to his sister. The sports complex announced that Xiao had taken a vacation and gone home, so he would not be attending training in the coming days. Upon hearing this news, a frustrated Jinjin prepared to return to the hotel, lying to her brother that she was not feeling well. The disgruntled teacher watched as everyone ran away and no one wanted to go to class. Meanwhile, Xiao and Delu stood on the Azure Beach, since if they sailed directly from there to the island of ice and fire, they would get there the fastest. The fox reminded him with displeasure that she was not a shark, and that if she spent too much time in the water she would feel ill. The guy asked in response what she was suggesting in that case. After asking the master to watch carefully, she began to concentrate her power. The water began to rage violently, raising waves. The fish that were in the sea began to fly out of the water. The waves rose so sharply. Xiao asked Dailu to stop because with such manipulations she would attract all the sea monsters here. But this was what Dailu wanted. Whale appeared from the water, which had the form of the king of the first stage beasts. Xiao and Dailu climbed onto the whale and asked it to take them to the island of ice and fire. She sat down and Dailu noticed how her master began to get nervous. The guy confirmed this. Dailu reminded him that it was not too late to refuse, but he did not regret his choice and asked to wake him up when they reached the island. Looking at the sleeping Xiao, Dailu knew with a satisfied face that she would protect him for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, at the main naval base, Admiral Murong was reading a newspaper that said something about his children and that they were on the right path. Lao Bai came into the admiral's room and said that if the admiral was so worried about his children, then he should take a vacation and visit them. Lao Bai revealed his purpose for visiting. It was because of the execution of the jellyfish, and the empress was worried about it. It turns out that on land, not long ago in Sakurano, cultists tried to break through the border, but the empire's troops were able to push them back. In the south, things are also restless. There are only fugitives and bandits. But the ground forces General Bai Yu assured that no one would dare to interfere with the treasury and the jellyfish, since there were 2 generals there. After these words were spoken, Admiral Murong realized that it would be best to begin the execution quickly and ordered the prisoner to be brought in. In the cell was a beautiful girl, chained, and on her forehead there was a shining red stone. A blue-haired Medusa, bound in chains, knelt before the scaffold, awaiting her death. General Bai assured the jellyfish that if she had survived to this day, after all her countless atrocities, then she had received mercy from the empress. Medusa found his words funny since they considered her a monster, because Shangguan Lan had the most dirty secrets in the world. When they reached the place of execution, Xiao and Dailu were surprised by the fact that the jellyfish was guarded by 2 generals, and they would not be able to fight them. Raising his only hand, General Murong gave the order to prepare the Dragon Fang execution weapon. Medusa spoke to Shangguan Lan, telling him that his secrets would not remain at the bottom of the sea even after her death. Shrouded in her purple aura, the jellyfish continued to say that Lan's sins that she committed 200 years ago would come to light. With the help of this aura, the jellyfish managed to subdue 2 guards, and one of them pointed a sword at his neck, intending to cut it. Seeing this, Bai Yu decided not to hesitate, inserted his hand and used spiritual mist. Roots flew out of the ground and enveloped the guards, not allowing them to make any unnecessary movements. General Bai noted that the jellyfish was truly incredible. Even in such a position, it could still use illusions. Medusa reminded the general that out of the 5 great clans, only his was destroyed, and now he serves Shangguan Lan, betraying his ancestors. The men in cloaks approached the guards, who showed them the location of the electrical panel and gave them orders to act when they turned off the power. But then other guards noticed them and ordered them to raise their hands up, or else they would open fire on them. They realized that they had been ambushed and decided to detonate the dynamite right then and there. There was a deafening explosion that could be heard throughout the entire prison. After this, the alarm was raised, lanterns were lit, and a message about an attack on the prison was broadcast over a loudspeaker. The people in black cloaks took advantage of the moment to attack the jellyfish's guards and called on their beasts. General Murong gave the order to continue the execution, since if the jellyfish died, they would no longer have a reason to attack. Amidst all the noise and confusion, Xiao ordered Dailu to take action, to which she said that she would not let her master down. Dailu broke through the guards to the jellyfish with her powerful jerks, and no one could stop her. Having reached the jellyfish, Dailu told her not to ask anything. First, it was necessary to get out of the chains. General Murong was surprised to see the fox with 9 tails here, as it was wanted all over the Dragon State. Now he was ready to kill them both. General Bai interrupted him, asking him to wait and pay attention to the neighboring rock. On the rock stood a guy in a cloak and a terrifying mask in the form of a skull with fangs. Bai Yu raised his head to the masked stranger and asked him if this guy was from the Yan clan. The guy continued to glare at everyone around him, declaring that they didn't need to know this because he only came for this snake, and whoever stood in his way would die. Medusa immediately thought how a guy could address her like that with such spiritual power. And Delu, showing a small smile, also noted in her thoughts that Xiao had gotten into character very well. Everyone who was watching the guy on the rock began to discuss among themselves who he was, thinking that he was one of his own and could even help him. But General Murong, still smoking a cigar, told the man in black that no matter whether he was from Yanmeng or not, the only thing that awaited him for invading the naval headquarters was death. And supporting the general, Bai Yu shouted with all his might that whoever captured the guy alive would receive a generous reward. At these words, Xiao grinned slightly, but no one could see his smile under the mask. Medusa, looking at the guy, immediately noticed that his spiritual power had just increased tenfold and continued to look at the guy with an amazing look. Finally, Xiao told Dailu that he would last for a maximum of 10 minutes, and then his life would be in her hands. And the fox only replied that she understood what the guy was talking about. Murong pointed his index finger at the rock, signaling everyone to advance. All the guards and the animals of the people in cloaks rushed towards the three figures standing on the high cliff. Almost quickly, the animals were already next to Xiao and the others, and Dailu was the first to come out to them. After commanding the fox to act, Dailu asked the boy to take care of the jellyfish before launching an attack. Later, taking a step forward, Dailu crossed her arms in front of her. And having placed them again, the fox quickly activated her powers, causing stones to fly in different directions behind her, her eyes to glow with a bright light, and magic to sparkle around her body. And at that very second, there was a powerful flash that reached right up to the sky, blinding everyone around. The soldiers could not hold back their screams from such a strong light, and everyone wanted only to turn away from the source of the light. The animals also began to whine, unable to withstand the fox's strength. The people in cloaks, seeing their summoned animals suffer, were also affected by the power, and one of them noted that this just indicated that the guy was indeed from the Flame Alliance. Murong, looking at what was happening from the side, immediately thought that the fox apparently had evolved. Lao Bei, looking at the dragon's scales, horns, claws, and pupils, immediately recognized these things as the power of the dragon that had disappeared 200 years ago. But Murong also added that this guy was extremely dangerous and could not be allowed to leave this island of ice and fire. Bai Yu crossed his arms slyly and replied that he understood this perfectly well, continuing to smile sarcastically. At this time, the rock began to crack and the earth began to tremble. Si showed all his confidence as he walked slowly along the crumbling cliff. And suddenly, when the three fugitives were walking on the stones, their feet unexpectedly found themselves on a large predatory flower with teeth. Trying to keep Dailu on her feet, she didn't even understand at first what was happening, while the flower itself continued to rise. And as if under hypnosis, all three began to fall into the wide-open mouth of the plant. Dailu let out a cry from the unexpected fall, and right during the flight, she tried to see where they were flying. And suddenly, the flower's mouth slammed shut, leaving only a solid red light around the guy, the fox, and the jellyfish. The guards couldn't help but be surprised when they saw the cursed demonic flower, as this plant beast with an ancient lineage was truly incredible. And one of the fighters added that this was to be expected from a god among plant animals. Xiao was one of the first to come to his senses. Being inside the plant and immediately opening his eyes, the guy began to look around. Turning his head, the guy noticed that Dailu, standing on her feet, was looking into the distance and asked out loud where they were. But, on the other hand, the voice of the jellyfish was heard, who explained that this was the stomach of the cursed demonic flower. And immediately after her words, completely different demonic creatures, similar to animals, began to attack the three. Medusa, also standing on her feet, quickly began to cast her gaze in different directions, so that if anything happened, she would have time to defend herself. Xiao, as if giving a sign to the fox, briefly glanced at her. Dailu quickly understood the guy and formed a circle around herself and the others, protecting them for a short time from the onslaught of the creatures. Xiao understood that they would not be able to defend themselves here for long and began to quickly look for ways to get out of here. Looking to the side, the boy quickly commanded Dailu to use Dragon Breath and attack the weak spot on the right. The fox quickly began to fulfill the request and launch the dragon's breath into the place she had been told. The plant, from the side, began to swell in different parts of the body, as if explosions were happening inside it. Murong quickly noticed that 6 minutes had already passed, and Lao Bai, knowing that after being swallowed by the cursed demonic flower, you would experience the sensation of your flesh beginning to decompose, and your bones being ground into powder, and so the man was confident that these three would not be able to escape. But suddenly, the plant was torn into different parts from the inside, leaving only a small stem intact. The next minute, a large figure of a red fox with horns on the top of its head burst out from the already collapsed plant. Laobai held his breath and couldn't believe that this was even possible, because he knew very well that no one had ever managed to escape from the cursed flower. Murong also added that the power of the dragon flame was truly impressive, and even the cursed flower with ancient blood could not withstand this attack. As soon as the huge beast stepped forward, the general saw that same guy standing on the fox's head and shouted to him, hoping to find out who he really was, because he had such power. But he was not even in the top 10 wanted. Xiao, standing confidently on the animal's head, only laughed slightly. Murong, who was not at all satisfied with the guy's behavior, said that in that case they would have to arrest him and slowly interrogate him in an underwater prison. And after his words, a large fish began to move under the water, trying to get to the surface. Xiao quickly tensed up as he felt something under his feet, and the big fish, opening its mouth, began to radiate its powerful force, from which came equally strong shockwave shocks. These shocks reached the fox and the guy, and only because of the fox's large size were the two able to stay on the ground. The guy, looking forward, felt what a powerful destructive force had just passed through him. The fish, more like a shark, continued to shoot out of its mouth like charges, which, with a shockwave, captured the area of land where Xiao stood. But the fox was not going to give up so easily, and in order to defend herself, she opened her mouth and also began to radiate her bright red power. The big fish, in front of the boy and Delu, continued to exude its energy, trying to absorb its enemies, but the fox did not hold back its attack, also showing its strength. Xiao understood that he couldn't drag out the fight, because the medicine would only work for a little more than 3 minutes, and he immediately voiced his thoughts to the fox. Delu, understanding the guy, suggested that in that case they leave quickly. But Bai Yu stood in front of them, not wanting to let the uninvited guests go so quickly. The man extended his hand and released a myriad of vines, and Dela began to be engulfed in vines from all sides, first wrapping around her paws and then her body itself, preventing her from moving. The general continued to hold his hand outstretched, but already clenched it into a fist and added that although they had burned his flower with dragon flame, plant animals by nature do not feel pain. Xiu looked down at the man and realized that they were being attacked from 2 sides, surrounded from the front and from behind. It seemed that everything was lost. The vine wrapped around all parts of the animal's body and then began to strangle the fox, causing it to lose its balance. The large fish standing in front of them, having finished giving impulses, suddenly formed a large trident above itself, making it clear that it was intended for the guy. This trident almost immediately flew towards the fox, who could not even move. Seeing the angry fox, Xiao knelt down on one knee and continued to be on her head. He told her to stop resisting and suppress the dragon's power by turning off the energy shield. Dailu didn't even understand why she should do this at the moment when a large trident was flying at them, but the guy convinced her to just do it. And suddenly, the two seemed to fall through the ground, and the vine began to get entangled in the ground. Laobai couldn't understand why the fox stopped fighting and even gave up defending itself, watching as clouds of dust began to rise from the place where they were standing. Murong thought that it didn't matter now because, in any case, no enemy could withstand the blow of the sea god Leviathan's trident. But what was their surprise that after the trident hit them exactly, the guy and the fox remained alive. After waiting a couple of seconds for the smoke to settle, a huge dragon suddenly flew out of it, making loud sounds. General Murong couldn't help but be surprised, realizing that he was definitely seeing a dragon soul. Laobai also stood in great shock. He finally made sure that the guy was able to release the dragon's soul, and then he became more and more worried about who this stranger was. When Dailu finally realized what was going on, she didn't even believe at first that she had survived the encounter with the trident. But Zhao explained that it was her dragon soul ability, which automatically protected against fatal damage and was perfect for fighting the Leviathan and the cursed demon flower. The guy's spiritual energy was almost at 0. In a minute, he could lose consciousness or even die. And having warned Dailu about this, he said that they needed to get out of here as quickly as possible. The fox, understanding the importance of the words, decided to quickly think of how to escape from here as quickly as possible. Bai Yu stared at the couple with a grimace, stating that they definitely wouldn't be able to leave. And immediately, new stems began to sprout from the ground on all sides. But Dailu was already so angry about all this that the fox had no trouble using his power to begin holding back the advance of the new plants. After releasing a powerful beam, the stems began to reach their target more slowly, giving them time to escape. Xiao, looking at what was happening, began to feel blood starting to flow from his eyes, and the guy immediately realized that it was a bloody gaze, which meant there was even less time left. The fox, realizing the seriousness of the situation, let out a very powerfoul roar, after which a circle formed around them, protecting them from attack, and something began to thicken in the sky. And raising your head up, you could see the sign of an eye in the middle of a circular funnel. General Murong, full of seriousness, began to shout that they represented the honor of the Dragon State's navy. There were billions of citizens behind them, and they could not allow the guy from the island of ice and fire to escape. And finally, the man ordered the Leviathan to continue using the sea god's trident. Leviathan, understanding the order, began to hide in the thickness of the water to use the trident again. And the weapon began to appear as if from water, which flowed around the trident from all sides. And then the water weapon rushed to the very top, to the place where the eye continued to hang. But as the trident got closer and closer to its intended target, its color suddenly began to change to purple instead of blue. It seemed as if its tip was about to touch the clot of energy from which a powerful aura emanated. But in an instant, there was a powerful explosion, accompanied by a bright flash, and the Leviathan even got a little scared and wanted to quickly dive back into the water. In the place where the fox stood, a confrontation between water and fire began, knocking everyone off their feet. The fox, having lost her balance, began to roll on the ground, and Xiao, who was on her head, also began to fall, trying to grab onto at least something. And after the smoke began to settle, and the area where the battle was taking place could be seen, Murong noticed that he couldn't see anyone. Without letting go of the cigar in his mouth, the general hissed menacingly that they had escaped after all. Bai Yu sighed and admitted that he was already old enough to fight against such a powerful dragon soul. But General Murong was not prepared to put up with this so easily and put his hand forward and declared that this was the naval headquarters, and no one could just come and go on a whim. Having quickly made a decision, the man began to call all the warships, giving orders to comb all coastal waters. Many ships set out to explore the area, but something happened to one of the ships. Murong stood on the observation tower holding binoculars. The radio reported that they were attacked by the Southern Island Alliance, and then the ship was hit, leaving it with a leak in the hold. The voice on the radio tried to calm the general down, saying that the attackers were no match for them. But in the next few minutes, reports began to arrive that the turbine of the 7th ship had been disabled. When Murong was informed that the captain of the 7th ship was wounded, the man clutched the radio in his hand and began to worry more about his men. Ordering the soldiers to stop searching for the man in the black robe, Murong ordered the Leviathan to immediately swim to the surface and help the damaged ships. At this time, Delu, who had returned to her human form in the middle of the sea, tried to find Xiao by looking around. While the fox was calling for its owner on the surface of the water, the boy was slowly sinking to the bottom, realizing how strong the side effects of the dragon elixir were. His body slowly sank deeper and deeper, until at some point a large snake-like creature swam past him. And suddenly, a jellyfish began to appear from the water, which had grown several times in size, and behind it, water snakes were swarming. Since the girl had become very big, she was able to easily pull the guy out of the water and holding his body in her palm. The jellyfish noted that the guy was an ordinary person, but was able to resist 2 high-ranking hunters at once, which was truly amazing. Looking a little more at the facial features of the tiny boy in her arms, the jellyfish quietly apologizes and opens her mouth, preparing to swallow Xiao. After a while, as if in a dream, Xiao tries to gather all his thoughts together and slowly opens his eyes. The first thing he sees in front of him is the worried face of Dailu, who can barely hold back her tears. The fox, holding the guy's face, finally began to rejoice that he had finally woken up. As soon as Xiao was able to wake up, he began to look around, not understanding where they were, but Dailu immediately calmed him down, answering that they were inside the jellyfish and he should not worry, because no animal moves through water as quickly as she does. But Xiao was no longer very concerned about the situation, and looking at the fox, the guy touched her cheek, wet with tears, and quietly said that the main thing was that everything worked out and he kept his word. Immediately after his phrase, the guy began to close his eyes and the fox began to anxiously shout at Xiao not to sleep. At this time, the jellyfish moved quickly through the water, hiding from the pursuing ships. She understood that the guy was seriously injured and unconscious, and his condition was very serious, and seeing an uninhabited island in front of him, the jellyfish decided that it was worth stopping there for now. The island was small, surrounded by a stone wall on the sides, and the rest of it was dominated by mountains with a small amount of vegetation at the foot. Murong looked into the distance and realized that even 2 generals could not cope with such a task, considering it a great shame. And while Lao Bai was calming Murong down, suggesting that he think better about how they could avoid the Empress's wrath, a bright point suddenly appeared in the sky, growing larger with each passing second. With a sharp movement, a bright beam burst out from the point, from which emerged a divine creature resembling a wolf with horns, whiskers, and the claws of a bird. Both generals raised their heads and immediately tensed up when they saw who exactly had come to them. And when they were absolutely sure that it was the Empress, both froze in fear, not knowing what to expect. And the Empress, standing on the head of her divine creation, which was frozen in the sky, asked the men where the jellyfish was. Murong decided to explain himself first, saying that unfortunately the prisoner had escaped, and Lao Bai added that, in addition, they had been attacked by other forces, otherwise that person would never have left. This answer quickly angered the Empress, and she began to shout that she did not want to listen to their excuses and simply wanted to know who took the jellyfish. Lao Bai, fearing the Empress's wrath, immediately replied that it was a man in a black cloak and a mask with a demon's face, and with him was the nine-tailed fox Dailu, his battle beast. But the girl was not satisfied with even this answer, and she began to ask in the same shout how two generals could not protect the naval headquarters. Murong fell to one knee and began to admit his guilt, saying that he was ready to bear the punishment he deserved, and Lao, in order to justify himself, stated that those who came to them possessed the power of a dragon, and the nine-tailed fox even had a dragon soul. The Empress, having heard about the dragon's soul, could not believe what she heard, because such a thing simply could not happen. Deciding that it would be better for her to do everything herself, the girl asked where the man in the black cloak had run off to, promising to discuss the general's punishment later, as soon as she returned. Hearing that the fugitives had gone to the southeast, the Empress, standing on her beast, directed her gaze in that direction. She immediately flew off to look for that person, while Lao Bai thought that even if the Empress interfered in this matter, it seemed like big changes were coming to the dragon state. By the time everything around had become quiet, the moon lit up the night sky and it began to rain on the island. Dailu, Zhao, and the jellyfish sat in the cave next to the newly lit fire and waited for the rain to pass so that Zhao could wake up. Medusa, having decided to break the silence, turned to Dial, noting that she had not thought that so much would happen to her during this time, and the fox added that without her master she would have died long ago in a dark cave. But Medusa seemed surprised by this answer, considering that the fox seemed to be in too close a relationship with this guy. Their conversation was interrupted by Xiao's voice, who was almost sleepily asking for water, and the jellyfish quickly concluded that there was no fresh water on this island. Dailu had already figured out how to solve this problem, and taking a small knife, the fox made a small cut on her finger. And then, bending her finger towards the guy's lips, she began to wait until the blood began to flow and get into Xiao's mouth. Medusa, watching what was happening, was very surprised that the fox really decided to spend her own blood for the sake of some person. As soon as the first drop of blood entered Xiao's throat, unknown images began to flash before his eyes. And then, he saw a girl with white hair, who stood with a bloody sword in front of the slain dragon. And then this girl stood in front of him and Xiao seemed to recognize her as Shangguan Lan. As soon as he said her name, the girl suddenly put her hand in front of his face, which made the guy put his hands in front of his face, thinking that he was about to be attacked. But the moment the girl put out her hand, his dream seemed to begin to crack into little pieces. He jumped up sharply, accompanying his awakening with a scream. The guy didn't even immediately realize that it was a dream. The fox, smiling at the fact that the guy had finally woken up, immediately exclaimed how happy she was. First of all, Xiao was immediately interested in where they ended up this time, and Dailu calmly supported the owner by the shoulders and explained that they were on an uninhabited island near the magical strait, and it was outside the jurisdiction of the Dragon State Fleet, so there was no need to worry about them being found. Having come to his senses a little, licking his lips, Xiao felt the taste of dragon blood and also learned from the fox that after losing consciousness, he was severely dehydrated, and there was no fresh water on the island. So this was the only way, and the guy was very grateful for such care. As soon as he expressed his gratitude, the system showed that the affection level had increased to 99. But their conversation was interrupted by a jellyfish, who suddenly entered with a glass of water in her hands. But Zhao didn't immediately notice the water because he was only looking at the crown that was on the jellyfish's head. The guy, of course, gladly accepted the water from his savior. The moment the jellyfish bent down to hand over the glass, Xiao's eyes dropped to the level of her chest, which was only slightly hidden by her dress. Xiao, as soon as he noticed that the girl's chest seemed to be about to fall out of her thin dress, immediately blushed with embarrassment and hurried to change the subject. Medusa, as if noticing the guy's embarrassment, folded her arms across her chest, declaring that there was no need for thanks, since she should be thanking the guys for saving her life. The fox, looking out from behind the guy, noticed that this was the highest form of gratitude among the snake tribe. Not noticing Dailu's words, the jellyfish continued to thank the guy, stating that the snake tribe always repays kindness, especially for saving a life, so Xiao can wish for anything. The guy, having finally quenched his thirst, looked at the snake with an almost greedy gaze, not even hiding his gaze. After thinking for a while, Zhao said without any embarrassment that in that case he wanted a jellyfish. But the snake immediately and sharply refused the guy's wish. Xiao, who did not expect a refusal to his request, did not even know what to say in the first seconds. There was silence between the two for a few seconds. The snake crossed her arms and declared that she was ready to do anything for the guy except sign a bloody contract. And the guy immediately asked why that was impossible. And then the jellyfish explained that orcs would never be slaves. But the guy decided to try his luck and offered food and shelter. But the snake still refused. Dailu, watching this, remembered how she had once been forced to enter into a bloody contract with Xiao Xinyu. But in the end, it was all for the best. The guy was so disappointed that he even started spitting blood, which caused concern among both ladies. Clutching his head, Xiao began to say how he thought that if he risked his life for the snake, he would be able to warm its cold heart. But how wrong he was, and the guy demonstratively groaned that now there was no more room for warmth in his soul. With his hand on his heart, Xiao continued to say in a pained voice that since the jellyfish didn't want to make a contract, then he no longer had a reason to live, and in his next life, he would never save such an ungrateful snake. Medusa, listening to the boy's suffering, could no longer bear these words and abruptly declared that she would sign the contract, if only the boy did not die. Having named the jellyfish Shasha, the guy began to talk about how kind she was, adding that he now had an incentive to live. The fox, pulling the guy aside, asked him since when he began to manipulate so shamelessly, to which the guy only added that in such a situation all means are good. But Dailu, continuing as if scolding the guy, asked him what he would do if moral pressure did not work. Smiling slyly and looking straight into the fox's eyes, Xiao said that he would simply catch the jellyfish and hand it over to the authorities for a reward. That way, it would definitely give in faster under his pressure. Having discussed all the plans with the fox, the guy hurried to conclude a bloody contract with the jellyfish, and touching the forehead of the jellyfish with his finger, the guy, with the help of his blood, left a small seal on the forehead of the snake as proof of their contract. Afterwards, when the deed was done, the jellyfish stood up and almost immediately the seal began to glow underneath it. And on the snake's forehead a small, barely noticeable mark appeared. Xiao, satisfied with what he had done, declared that now Shasha was his jellyfish. Swaying a little, she herself could not believe that she had made a bloody contract with a human. Almost immediately, the guy's system had a complete description of the snake, which contained a lot of useful information, starting with its abilities and ending with what the path of hidden evolution is. Looking at the large stat, the guy noticed that Shasha was really strong, thinking that he could use another dragon bone. Suddenly, over the island where they were hiding, a powerful clap of thunder was heard, accompanied by a bright red light. Xiao, who a minute ago was simply beside himself with happiness, suddenly stopped, feeling as if lightning had pierced him. Dailu immediately noticed the owner's condition and quickly asked the guy what was wrong with him. And Xiao, continuing to hold his hand on his chest, said that he had some kind of bad feeling. Although the danger had already passed, the guy's heart was still pounding wildly. And it suddenly dawned on the guy that he had sort of saved the jellyfish. But the system had not given out a reward, which meant that the task had not been completed. Quickly coming to his senses, Xiao commanded Dailu that they needed to quickly leave the island, but the fox and the jellyfish did not really understand why there was such a rush. The guy, putting on the mask, understood that if they didn't leave now, it would be too late later. As soon as everyone was about to leave, the jellyfish offered to sit on her back, since she swims better in water anyway. When everyone left the island and found themselves on the water, the island suddenly seemed to explode. It was as if someone had fired a large beam into the middle of the earth, blowing up every part of the island. Sitting on the snake's back, the fox turned his head and realized in horror that the island had simply been razed to the ground. Xiao, with a mask on his face, began to run his eyes in search of who did this to the island and almost immediately noticed someone in the sky. Looking up at the sky, someone's silhouette was visible. It was the Empress who, looking at the fugitive's features, immediately recognized in him exactly the one she was looking for. The fox, as soon as she saw the seven-colored sacred Kilin, at first did not even believe that the Empress was here. The snake, turning into a large water serpent, raised its head higher above the water and added that they were being pursued, and it was unlikely that they would be able to escape. Xiao, looking at one of the strongest of all the beast hunters, mentally thought about why she was here, and realizing that his spiritual power was already running out, there were no pills left and the guy would not be able to use techniques, so the situation became even more complicated. Dailu, noticing the owner's concern, stepped forward, activating her power and asked the guy not to worry and just trust her. Meanwhile, the Empress approached the fugitives, continuing to stand on her large white beast. The girl, looking at the fox walking ahead, said that she was just lucky to merge with the blood of a purebred dragon, and turning to the guy, the Empress, as if ordered him to tell her who he was and then she would save his body. Lisa, realizing the danger of the situation, immediately began to stop the Empress, offering to talk, in the hope that she would not find out about Xiao's identity. The fox's violent reaction really attracted the Empress and she agreed to listen. Shielding the guy with herself, Dailu declared that she was ready to swear allegiance to her right here and now, and she could leave her master alive even if it meant imprisoning him forever. But the Empress didn't like this idea at all, and the girl was even ready to simply kill everyone present there. Having angered the snake with this, the jellyfish began to scream that in that case it was worth simply fighting the Empress, and there was nothing more to wait for here. These words became like the beginning of action for the Empress, and she, looking once more at her victims, prepared to rush into the attack. Having flown higher into the sky, the girl summoned her yellow dragon, which was many times larger than all those taken here. The fox was the first to feel the dragon's strength, and even tensed up from such power. The Empress's mood changed to a more threatening one, and it became clear that she was not going to talk. As soon as she landed on her beast's head again, large black demonic wings appeared on her back. Dailu looked at the Empress with confusion, seeing the ominous energy of the black dragon's soul emanating from the girl, although this was impossible for people. But then the jellyfish declared that this was precisely the real face of this woman, adding that now they knew for sure that she wanted them to take this secret with them to the grave. The fox was almost completely overcome with fear from such powerful energy. But Dailu still wasn't going to give up so quickly for the sake of her master. With one quick jerk, the Empress's beast flew at the three of them, approaching them closer and closer. Dailu, having encouraged herself a little, was already ready to enter the battle. In a second, she transformed into a nine-tailed fox and stood confidently in a fighting stance, awaiting the attack. And deciding not to wait for the full approach, the fox made several dashes towards the large beast. But as soon as Dailu got close to the beast flying towards her, something unexpectedly began to inflict numerous cuts on her. Xiu was only able to understand this when he saw the fox start to bleed. And at that very moment, something cuts off one of Dailu's paws. Immediately after this, part of her ear is also quickly cut off, leaving only a small piece. And then, without even having time to scream, the fox loses his head with just one felling. She quickly shouts the girl's name, afraid that this is how it will end now. Fearing for the fox, the boy sees how it, having become human again, began to fall almost unconscious at a great height. The boy couldn't leave Dayla like that and quickly ordered the jellyfish to catch the fox. As soon as the jellyfish lowered its head to the fox's body, the guy tried to lift it up, realizing that it was almost exhausted. Placing her head on his lap, Xiao saw Dailu trying to call out to him. The girl tried not to show weakness, and stretching out her hand to her master's face, the fox felt sorry that they had only recently met. Xiao, hearing what she wanted to say with this, couldn't help but let tears slowly start to flow from his eyes. The guy kept trying to find out from the fox how to help her, but Dailu, instead of words, put her hand on his head and pulled him closer. And then, very tenderly and with all the love she had, she kissed the guy on the cheek, unable to hold back her tears. Smiling slightly, Dailu tried to speak with all her might, apologizing to the guy, adding that it seemed she would leave first. The fox, wanting to touch her master again, stretched out her hand forward, but suddenly it fell to the ground. Xiao frantically began to shout the fox's name, seeing how she didn't blink or breathe. The guy finally realized what exactly had happened, and he could no longer hold back his tears. All the good and bad moments associated with the fox immediately began to float through his head, and realizing how attached he was to her, the guy hugged the girl's already lifeless body. The Empress, watching what was happening, said that there was no need to worry so much because they would soon be reunited. Xiu seemed to no longer pay attention to the words of the one who killed the fox and simply continued to hug her body, while the Empress, deciding to take advantage of the moment, began to form a new attack. The girl, flying up on her wings, began to gather all her energy together to strike the others again. The snake, beating the owner, directed its gaze at the Empress and declared that it would protect the guy to the end, But immediately after her words, Xiao loudly and clearly shouted that this should not be done. Medusa paused for a second, not understanding the meaning of the words spoken to her. But Xiao, who could no longer calm down, continued to shout that this was not the ending he wanted. And wanting Delu to survive, he took out a small but strongly glowing crystal. The snake, as if understanding the owner's desire, wrapped itself tighter around him, hiding him from prying eyes. Small particles of water began to thicken in the sky. And suddenly, a powerful flash appeared around the guy, surrounding everything around with a shockwave, from which the water, the sky, and everyone who stood nearby began to fill with blue light. The Empress froze in place as soon as she saw the dragon's tear, not believing what was happening. And then, the time on the clock seemed to start rewinding, starting from 7 hours and 10 seconds all the way to 4. As if a clock had been rewinded, the torn parts of the fox's body began to grow together. The wounds on her body began to disappear on their own, as if they had never been there. After all this, her body again acquired a living appearance. The Empress, looking at the guy, tried to do something, but as soon as she even waved her hand, nothing happened. And then everything seemed to return to its original state. Not far from them, stones from the destroyed island began to appear from the water. And as if brick by brick, the recently destroyed territory began to be put back together. In the end, it was as if no one had touched the island. Xiao only came to his senses when he heard Dailu calling him. The fox, not noticing anything, already standing on her feet, asked the guy why he was in the clouds. But suddenly the girl seemed to realize what was happening. And the next moment the guy jumped up on the spot, ran up to Dial, kissing her right on the lips, confusing the fox. Medusa, having forgotten, or rather not knowing, what would happen in the future, looked at the guy in surprise. Breaking away from the kiss, Xiao commanded the two that they needed to leave, and then he would definitely explain everything. Dailu, also forgetting everything that happened to her, agreed with the guy, seeing how worriedly he spoke. And after some time, something happened again that only the guy remembered. The island began to collapse from a powerful shot. The Empress, leaving a large hole in the center of the earth, waited for the guy she was chasing to finally come out. But looking at the destroyed island, the girl realized that they had escaped after all. The Empress promised that next time there wouldn't even be bones left of that guy in the black cloak. Meanwhile, Xiao, the jellyfish, and the fox wanted to quickly hide from the impending threat. Hiding on another island in a rock, the guy tried not to look out, afraid that someone might follow them. But the jellyfish hastened to calm him down, assuring him that most likely no one was chasing them anymore. And Dailu was still very interested in how Xiao understood that Shangguan Lan would pursue them. Turning worriedly to the fox, the boy took her hand and declared that he could not lose her a second time because he would never survive it. Clutching the crystal in his hand, Xiao explained that he was helped by a dragon tear that accidentally activated, and holding it closer to the girls, the guy invited them to touch it to confirm his words. Medusa was seriously about to touch the crystal, while the fox continued to show only incomprehension. As soon as Dailu touched the stone, tears flowed from her eyes, causing confusion in the snake. When everyone had come to their senses a little, the system showed the guy a notification that he had completed the task and received 1 purebred dragon egg as a reward. Realizing that, since the reward had already been given out, it meant they were finally safe, and the guy could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Turning to Shasha, the guy remembered how Dailu told him that the snake knew the secret of that battle with the dragons that happened 200 years ago, and asked the girl to tell him more about it and who Shangguan Lan was. Medusa began to remember how she once exterminated dragons in flocks, but in the end, she herself became what she fought against, an evil dragon. 90% of the strongest warriors of the dragon state participated in that war. And at that time, there were 2 strongest fighters, Shangguan Lan and Xiao Lian. And then Shangguan was not yet the empress of the dragon state, and Xiao Lian was not the leader of the rebels of the Flame Alliance. At that time, the jellyfish was just a small snake hiding in a rock. But she remembered how they fought in the Dragon Valley, where her refuge was, so she saw the whole battle with her own eyes. After Shangguan Lan killed countless dragons, she stood in the center of the valley, covered in dragon blood and laughing hysterically, and then transformed into a black dragon that was much larger than its brethren. Possessed by the thirst for blood, she destroyed the entire valley, not distinguishing between the enemy or ally in front of her. When the battle was over, the dragons were destroyed. Almost all the trappers were killed, and the only survivor was the current leader Xiao Lian, and the jellyfish, because it was far away and was able to escape death. But even despite this, Shangguan still wanted to kill it, and the guy finally understood why Xiao Lian handed over the dragon state, created the Flame Alliance, and became an enemy of Shangguan. After the girl's story, Xiao wondered how Shangguan became an evil dragon. Thinking that it was because of the number of dragons destroyed, the answer to this could only be given by Leon, since he was the only one who took direct part in that battle. But then the guy stopped his thoughts, because he was a student of the second star Azure Dragon Academy, and he was the leader of the rebels, and they would simply never be able to meet. The guy's thoughts were interrupted by a jellyfish who asked him what he would do now, knowing what Shangguan really was. But even Xiao didn't have many options, because going against such a strong person would be suicide. The fox also reminded that now after this incident, Shangguan was targeting the guy in any case, and now she would not leave him alone. But the guy reminded that the Empress was hunting for the Black Cloak, and this did not matter to him at all. Dailu didn't understand at all why the guy was talking like that because he was the Black Cloak. But the guy quickly changed the subject and suggested that the fox not bother her head with this, and that it would be better to go and rest, and then return to the city. Having decided that he really needed to rest, the guy looked at the dragon tear one last time. But suddenly, Xiao's head suddenly began to feel heavy, and the guy could barely stand on his feet, causing the fox to start to worry. At that moment, the guy seemed to stop seeing and could only see darkness in front of him. But then suddenly a large golden dragon stood in front of him, grinning and breathing heavily, approaching closer and closer. Thinking that this was all real, Xiao started to run, afraid that the black dragon had finally reached him. But when he was running, the guy accidentally came across a mirror, and at first did not attach much importance to it, only wondering where it came from. But when it dawned on him that he was not in a cave, the boy seemed paralyzed and unable to move. Suddenly, the skin on his hands and face began to grow dragon scales, and Xiao was horrified and did not understand what was happening. Covering his eyes with his hands, the boy began to scream that he did not want to turn into a monster while the dragon continued to stand behind him. Screaming as if Xiao didn't want to be a monster, he suddenly seemed unable to do anything, and the next second he began to rise into the air, black wings appeared behind his back, and horns of the same color appeared on his forehead. While Xiao was unconscious, a fox and a jellyfish were sitting next to him, who understood that the guy was still very weak, feeling a slight fever, assuming that he would remain in this state for a couple more days. Looking at Dela, the jellyfish stated that the milk of a magical beast could increase its immunity and ability to recover. But the fox, as if not understanding her look, immediately snapped back that she definitely did not have milk. Realizing that she would still have to go in search of milk, the fox headed towards the exit of the cave, promising to get something. And leaving the cave, the jellyfish was left alone to watch the exhausted guy. After a while, unexpectedly for everyone, Xiao jumped up shouting that he was not a monster. Looking around, he finally realized that it was a dream and calmed down a little. Having become a bit of a pest, the guy immediately asked the snake where they were and how long he had been sleeping. Medusa calmly answered the owner that they were in the same cave next to the magical strait, and 3 days had already passed. Upon hearing this, the guy was very upset because it turned out that he missed the supernova competition. Still recovering, the boy realized that about 5 days had passed since they left the city, and he needed to return urgently to make it to the finals. Otherwise, the academy might suspect something, and if the Empress noticed, then he would definitely be finished. Delu was very happy to see the guy conscious, while Shasha sat next to him and dissuaded the guy from returning to the city because he was still weak. The worried fox came up and said that the milk of the magical beast would help him get back on his feet faster. But Zhao, as soon as he heard whose milk it was, began to resist and grimaced, saying that he was a human and only drank milk tea at most, and that the animal's milk was too disgusting. Medusa decided to intervene immediately, hinting at how it was precisely due to this milk that he had remained unconscious for 3 days, and that the milk would strengthen his immunity and restore his vital energy. And for this, by the way, the fox had sacrificed a lot. Looking at the slightly embarrassed fox, the guy at first did not understand the jellyfish's words. But when the whole meaning suddenly dawned on him, Xiao had completely lost his desire to drink milk. The snake, standing behind him, continued to pester the guy, repeating that Delu had gotten this milk especially for him, and if the guy didn't drink it, she would be very upset. The fox herself joined the conversation, saying that she had put in so much effort that now he was obliged to drink this drink. Xiao, understanding how much Delu had sacrificed for him, could no longer simply refuse her and hurt her again. And opening the bottle cap, the guy began to quickly drink the milk, without even inhaling air between sips. When he finally tore himself away from the drink, the young man immediately realized that it was the milk of the Silver Tiger Empress. Jellyfish quietly laughed and whispered to Xiao that the tigress was currently in her lactation period, and that was why the fox hunted female animals every day. Deciding to end this awkward moment, Zhao drank some more milk and asked Shashi how long it would take to return to the coast of the dragon state given her maximum speed, and the snake, without thinking twice, said that half a day should be enough. Realizing that there was still time, the guy suggested that the girls catch the beast and roast it together. Once the fox and the jellyfish had gone hunting, Xiao could finally see what kind of reward the system had given him. Looking at the dragon egg in his hand, the guy began to read about the item in the system. After learning that this was an ice lotus made from dragon bones, Xiao remembered that he couldn't even grow anything from a seed, but here in front of him lay a real dragon egg. But the guy's thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a sound coming from the entrance of the cave. It was a fox with a jellyfish that was being dragged by several animals. After a while, all three lit a fire, cut up the meat, and finally roasted it over the fire. Having gathered around the fire, everyone began to eat. And Xiao's attention was drawn to how the jellyfish was eating another piece of meat and, compared to the fox, had definitely eaten more. As he continued eating, the boy thought, "Are they that big even in humanoid form? By the way, if she eats so much, then the rest of her is big too?" Noticing the thoughtful guy, the snake asked him what the gentleman was thinking about, and then Xiao, without any suspicion, asked what kind of relationship he had with the jellyfish and received the answer that for the girl, he was her savior, so he could speak directly. A little shy and stuttering, Xiao carefully asked the jellyfish to give him some of its feces. At this question, the snake immediately bared its teeth and released its claws, asking the guy if he was looking for death by asking such questions. Wanting to pounce on the guy, the jellyfish was quickly stopped by the fox, who tried to calm her down. But Xiao, as if he was asking for something simple, decided to ask Delu for it in that case. The fox, continuing to hold the jellyfish so that it would not attack its owner, declared that the guy was too spoiled if he thought that after the jellyfish refused, he could just ask her for such a thing. Unable to contain her anger, Delu herself was now angry, calling the guy a pervert, and the jellyfish completely agreed with her words. To calm the girls down, the guy took out a small pot containing some kind of fruit with a root and showed it to the girls, saying that his request was needed for exactly this. Medusa, looking at the plant in surprise, didn't even know what to say, but Dailu said that they were not wild animals after all, and they also had dignity. The guy, of course, agreed with her words, and even realized that he was rude to them, but he tried to explain to them how he really needed it. And the main thing was that the magical beast had the form of the king of beasts. Medusa, guessing that other magical beasts would be suitable for such a task, said that in that case it was not a problem, because there was a magical strait at the bottom of which many beasts of this level slept. So after their meal and conversation, all three went to the strait in search of the necessary resources for the guy. Approaching the shore, where it was clear that someone was living there, the guy began throwing small stones to attract attention. And to make sure it worked, Xiao threw a slightly larger stone at the end. Almost immediately, someone began to scurry about in the water, wondering who dared to disturb his peace. And suddenly, a little girl with blue hair appeared from the water, screaming at those who disturbed her. Xiao, as if joking, began to be surprised, calling the creature a mutated imperial whale, which was a great rarity. But the words about rarity did not make the girl happy at all. And seeing that the guy was able to anger her, he began to shout, offering to fight him. This proposal only made the girl even more angry, and she immediately jumped out onto the rock with her fishtail. And suddenly the girl stood up on her feet, staggering a little, and then stopped abruptly as soon as she saw who was standing in front of her. A jellyfish stood in front of her, who threateningly stated that if the girl wanted to touch her master, it would be very bad. And the fox, confirming the snake's words, asked if the girl had already chosen how she would die. The little sea beast quickly fell to her knees, begging her for mercy, adding that she had a mother and 3 more unhatched eggs. And then Xiao came up to her, gently stroking the girl's head. The guy said that they had no need to kill her, and slightly leaning towards the girl, Xiao declared that he just needed her to go to the toilet once, and then they would immediately let her go. The very next second, the guy was called a pervert and given a powerful slap in the face, which made the guy unable to even stand on his feet. So Xiao sailed away without getting what he needed. The guy sat quietly and could not hide his irritation, and Dailu simply laughed at him. To distract himself from his thoughts, Xiao suggested that they first take a rest, because he needed to wash himself, otherwise someone might suspect something due to the strong smell. And the snake happily replied that the right place would be when they crossed the snowy mountains. After a while, the three found themselves near a small freshwater reservoir. Taking off his outerwear, the guy looked at the fox and the jellyfish, offering to wash together, but the fox, embarrassed, immediately refused. And the jellyfish, without even hiding her gaze, began to say how much energy the gentleman had and how hardy he was. But Dailu didn't particularly like such approving words towards her master, and the fox hurried to cover the jellyfish's mouth. And Xiao was finally happy, seeing how the girls were getting along. And to diffuse the situation, he added that he had heard that the girls in the Silver City were also not bad. But the jellyfish quickly snapped back, saying that she was not some kind of girl. While the girls continued to argue among themselves, Xiao already wanted to go closer to the pond. But suddenly he heard someone rustling in the forest. And as if confirming the guy's thoughts, someone suddenly flew out of the foliage. Xiao didn't have time to follow the beast, but he realized that it landed right on his head. It was a small rabbit with lightning instead of ears. Taking the animal in his hand, the boy asked Dailu what kind of animal it was, to which he received the answer that it was an electric rabbit. And later, from the forest, they heard someone approaching the guy, and it was definitely clear that a crowd was moving towards them. A whole pack of storm wolves ran out of the forest, and as soon as they reached the guy, they began to bare their teeth and show their displeasure. Xiao guessed that, apparently the wolves mistook him for a competitor in the hunt, because he was holding the hare tightly in his hands. Even a little embarrassed, the guy asked the fox and the jellyfish with a smile on his face if they would figure this out. And the girls, waiting for some more words, headed towards the wolves. Not even a minute had passed before Dailu returned to the boy, leaving behind a whole pack of wolves lying on the ground. Xiao even considered it too cruel. Having made sure that there was no more danger for the little animal, the guy released the bunny from his hands, telling him at last that the strongest survives and next time he will not be able to help him. The little animal quickly jumped off Xiao's hand and moved to the ground, but after that, for some reason, it turned around sharply, jumping towards the guy again. And to Xiao's surprise, the bunny began to climb right into his pants, which made the guy completely embarrassed and even angry. Pulling down his pants, Xiao began to shout at the hare that he would sue him for harassment if he came out right now. Without waiting for obedience, the guy simply pulled the animal out of his pants, holding it tightly by the ears. But looking into his small eyes, Xiao even began to think that maybe it was worth giving the bunny another chance, and if they were connected by fate, then he would leave him. And as soon as he decided to keep the beast for himself, the system showed all the information about the electric rabbit. Seeing that the little animal could reset the cooldown of the ult, the guy was very surprised at how useful this animal could actually be. Inspired by all this information, Zhao approached the girls with a rabbit in his hands and declared that this long-eared one would go with them, and the guy wanted to make a bloody pact with him. But the jellyfish and the fox immediately began to dissuade the owner from such an idea because this beast was still weak, did not develop, and was completely useless. Meanwhile, the city of Cailong lived its life peacefully, illuminating the city's residents with bright sunshine. Spectators had already gathered in the open arena, and loudspeakers were shouting at the top of their lungs that the decisive battle of the supernova competition would take place today. One of the screens showed Xiao's team, and on the second screen, the second team from the Red Crane was visible. Meanwhile, Yang Shuo, convulsively clutching the phone, did not understand why Xiao, who was supposed to show up, was still not there. Xinjin tried to calm her brother down, saying that he just needed to call again, but the guy couldn't stand it and started shouting angrily, saying that he had already called Xiao 15 times. But despite his sister's attempts to persuade him to call again, Yang Shuo gave in and was about to call again. Putting the phone back to his ear, the guy heard that the called subscriber did not have enough funds in his account, and now Yang Shuo really felt better, because now it was clear that Xiao was at least within reach, which meant close. And then, quite unexpectedly, a joyful Xiao entered, exclaiming how much he missed the guys. Although Yang Shuo was angry at the guy, he still put 100,000 yuan on Xiao's phone and threatened him not to disappear next time. Xinjin, seeing how embarrassed Xiao was, asked the guy if he hadn't gone to Longyin to see his sister, because if they had called him so many times, then why was the guy out of reach? Xiao, realizing that he had absolutely no idea what to say, decided to quickly change the subject, and taking Xinjin's hand, the guy said that she was especially beautiful today. But Yang Shuo clearly did not appreciate such a compliment to his sister, realizing that the guy had simply changed the subject and was clearly hiding something. Deciding to deal with it later, Brother Murong heard over the loudspeaker that there were 10 minutes left before the match, and the participants were asked to get ready and go on stage for the opening ceremony. Xinjin, realizing that she would have to go out now, quickly ran to the toilet, promising to return quickly. And as soon as the girl disappeared, the guys were left alone. Xinjin went to the mirror and decided to rinse her face to calm down a little, and didn't even notice how someone was standing behind her. Standing in front of her was Zi Lian, who even scared the girl a little, and Xinjin finally realized that Lian was replacing Liu Liner in the tournament. The girl, in a sly voice, said that Linner was sick and injured and asked if it was bad that she was replacing Liu. But in order not to get involved in the conflict, Jinjin decided to remain silent. And Leon continued to say that even though they were childhood friends, there was no mercy to be expected from her. Xin came closer to the exit and said that they would see who was who. Finally, her opponent added that in this tournament, she would definitely disgrace the girl in front of everyone. When Leon came out of the toilet, her brother was already waiting for her, and he was about to enter the arena. After asking if the girl was ready, he took her hand, and together, holding hands, they walked towards the exit. The arena was noisy at this time, the spectators were jubilant, and the commentator finally announced that he was welcoming everyone to the final of the Supernova competition. The Red Crane Academy team was already standing on the left. The spectators began to shout even louder, rejoicing at the team's arrival. And everyone was especially looking at the handsome Wei An. Yang Shuo, entering the arena with the others, immediately notices the brother and sister from the Z family and begins to say that they are not ordinary people. Their father is the 10th star hunter Zizhong, one of the Empress's advisors and the chief strategist of the Dragon State. And when the Azure Dragon Academy team was announced, Yang Shuo gave the command to come out. When Xiao entered the arena, he noticed the Empress he had just fought with. She was sitting in the judge's seat and smiling as if nothing had happened. Advisor Sai stood next to her, thinking out loud about who would ultimately win. And when the conversation died down a little, the advisor quietly asked whether the Empress had managed to find out anything about the man in black. Still maintaining a calm face, the Empress stated that the Imperial Association had dispatched all the Silver Priests to secretly check all the 9th and 10th star trappers. But so far there had been no results. But the advisor, deciding to put in his own thought, added that this man in black might not be a high-level trapper at all, but, say, an influential official or even a minor figure from a backwater town in their country. Xiao tried not to show it at this time, but the guy clearly saw the advisor looking straight at him. And then the guy's face suddenly changed, and Xiao realized who this woman was, and it was no longer possible to hide his surprise. Xin, who noticed the boy's anxiety, asked what happened to him, but Xiao, deciding to keep it a secret, quickly came to his senses and tried not to give away his appearance. Even though he had survived Shangguanlan's attack, the memories of it still frightened him, and he hoped that she would not find out that he was the man in black. Meanwhile, the first test was about to begin, and Yang Shuo volunteered to go, telling Xiao and his sister to watch and learn. The commentator in the arena asked to choose participants for the first fight, and from the Red Crane, the main trump card immediately emerged in the person of Ziwei. Yang Shuo didn't expect to see the guy, because he thought he would be fighting Dongfang Jing or Xie Lian, and he clearly didn't expect to encounter such a strong opponent from the very beginning. The guy was knocked out of his train of thought when Wei An started saying that it was all over, because as soon as he stepped into the arena, the fight was already over, and he would single-handedly destroy the opposing team. But Yang Shuo, without losing heart, declared that the guy should not dare to underestimate his team and quickly summoned a white griffin. The clouds began to thicken and, accompanied by thunder and lightning, a large white griffin appeared above the guy's head, flying around the arena. Wei An, who also decided not to wait, summoned his fiery demonic beast in the form of an animal with 3 heads, a wolf, a tiger, and a panther. Yang Shuo clearly didn't expect this and didn't immediately understand what kind of monster it was. Xiao was also afraid for his brother, not understanding what kind of monster had been summoned. Looking at the beast, the system quickly gave out all the information, and it became clear that this beast was really very strong. Although, of course, the white griffin Yang Shuo was not inferior in parameters. Xin immediately began to worry about her brother, but Xiao quickly calmed her down by saying that Yang Shuo would have time to attack the chimera's weak point, its tail. The guy understood that the advantage of the white griffin was its high explosive power and damage, and that the first 3 minutes would decide the outcome of the entire battle. If he didn't take the initiative into his own hands, the griffin's low endurance would play a cruel joke on him, and he had to figure out how to help his brother in that case. Meanwhile, Yang Shuo had already begun to attack the enemy, commanding the griffin to go on the offensive using the Thunder Spear of Heaven. But the demonic flaming beast quickly took the blow on itself at the command of its master and seemed not to even feel anything. All this time, the commentator loudly spoke about each action of the participant. And this time, the words of admiration fell on the demonic beast, who withstood the reception of the white griffin. Yang Shuo, seeing how the situation was developing, began to panic, realizing that he didn't have much choice. The way the beast took the griffin's attack was a great surprise to him. Wei An immediately began to make sarcastic remarks, saying that although the white griffin was a battle beast that relied on quick dominance, it was weak in a battle of endurance. Yang Shuo didn't want to listen to his opponent's advice at all and quickly ordered his beast to continue the attack. But this only amused Wei, who couldn't even hold back his laughter. The monster responded by quickly running towards the griffin. The griffin didn't even have time to take off before the chimera grabbed his wings with both of its heads. The griffin fell under the pressure of the enemy, covered in blood. The arena was filled with the enthusiastic cries of the spectators, who praised the son of the strategist Sei. Wei Yan, as if mocking the guy, said that he shouldn't get so carried away and ordered the beast to release the griffin. The demonic beast quickly obeyed the order and retreated back, leaving the now weak griffin behind. Wei Yan suggested that he simply surrender to his opponent, but Yang Shuo confidently stated that he definitely did not plan to surrender and would fight to the end, especially with his sister watching the fight. Xinshin wanted to call out to her brother, worrying about him more than anyone else, but Xiao quickly put his hand on her mouth so that the girl couldn't make a sound, realizing that there was nothing to say now. The girl, a little angry, immediately asked the guy why he stopped her. But Xiao, also not hiding his excitement, said that at that moment, Yang Shuo was not a participant in the competition, but her older brother. At this time, Yang Shuo was thinking about the damaged wings of the griffin, and to use the skill, more energy would be required, and in general, the guy could not lose to the Z family in front of his sister. Realizing that there was no other way out, the guy quickly summoned a steel gorilla, which, as soon as it appeared behind him, began to growl uncontrollably. The guy thought that he could stall for time until the white griffin came to its senses. Commanding the beast to use the steel staff, Yang Shuo aimed his hand directly at his opponent's beast. The gorilla almost immediately rushed to attack, not holding back his rage. This was followed by an order for the white griffin to use the power of thunder, and both animals ran to attack, accompanying all this with powerful flashes of thunder and a loud roar. The gorilla's fists clearly helped her move, and she was already very close to the demonic beast. Wei Yan commanded the three-headed beast to use absorption, and the demonic beast immediately began to blaze with fire, and one of its heads could not contain its tiger roar. The gorilla went on the offensive first, and the griffin continued to fly behind her. Yang Shuo, trying to see what was happening behind the clouds of dust, realized that it seemed that the enemy had withstood this technique. And then Wei Yan once again shouted uncontrollably at the beast to use the blue demon's roar. With its paws in a stable position, one of the heads let out a powerful roar, after which a blue beam flew towards the gorilla. The gorilla was immediately knocked off his rather powerful legs and fell almost dead. And a few seconds later, the entire arena was told that the fight was over in favor of the red crane. The white griffin was also lying on the ground and seemed not to even move. Yang Shuo fell to his knees, unable to contain his emotion, while Wei Yan smiled slyly as if his victory was too obvious. Xiao immediately realized that their opponent had such a strong beast for a reason, and perhaps it was due to his father, to which Xinshin quickly picked up on the thought, saying that the guy's father was a 10th star hunter, and with his strength, catching a beast with demon blood would be easy. The girl even remembered how, as a child, she and Zilian had an argument over a bat with bone wings. This beast was caught when the Empress and her army were fighting outside the palace. Then the two girls argued about whose beast it was, and in the end it scratched Lian, leaving a small wound. And then, the girl told Jinshin that it was her fault, and that she had disgraced her by taking what belonged to her. The girl even remembered how her friend said that the C family never forgot a grievance, and it was then that she remembered how at that moment the whole family simultaneously had red, angry eyes. Xiao remembered that the guy had gray eyes, but Jinshin explained that it was heterochromia, a genetic feature of the Z family. Nothing special except the difference in color and the frightening appearance. And suddenly, Xiao seemed to be afraid of something. Looking at Wei Yan, he clearly saw how the system showed that the guy had an eye of foresight that could track the enemy's movements. It was clear that Shangguan Lan and the C family, two important figures in the dragon state, were both related to the beast, and it seemed like there were still a few secrets left from the time of the dragon extermination. Before he could even think a little more, the boy heard someone shouting that the second duel was about to begin, and Xinjin confidently walked towards the arena. Before the fight, Zilian asked her brother to teach her ex-girlfriend a good lesson. But the guy said that he was a gentleman, and he would do everything he could regarding the assault. Wei Yan put his hands forward and, just like last time, offered the girl to surrender. But Xinjin, showing her determination, shouted that she was not afraid of the guy. The fight began, and the girl immediately summoned a bone-winged wyvern. The wyvern immediately began flying around the arena, screaming menacingly and shooting acid. The blast went straight towards Wei's beast, and the demonic beast didn't even know what to do at first. But the guy quickly commanded him to dodge faster. The animal quickly dodged, jumping back, watching as the wyvern's liquid pooled on the floor. The commentator suggested that perhaps the beast was afraid of the wyvern, since it dodged, avoiding the attack. The head of the Z family realized that Zinshin had learned about the vulnerability of the demonic beast from Xiao, which made him very surprised. The Empress, interfering with the man's own thoughts, asked the advisor who, in his opinion, would win this time, and the answer was in favor of his son. The wyvern meanwhile continued to shoot acid, and at one point, the enemy beast did not have time to dodge, receiving a charge right in the face. The demonic flaming beast seemed to be drowning in the liquid. The wolf's head howled while the tigers seemed to be angry. Xiao supported the girl and shouted to Xinjin that it was a great hit. Xinjin continued to attack, and without waiting for a break, she ordered the wyvern to use a shower of necrotic arrows. The beast quickly flew to carry out the order of its mistress, and the next second, small but powerful projectiles flew from its mouth. The arrows began to pierce the demonic beast's body, causing it to writhe in pain and scream. Weiyan became very angry and almost started shouting at the beast to use Blood Whirlpool. And after the whirlpool, the order was given to use Reflection. The wyvern's arrows were reflected and flew towards her, slightly wounding her. Xinjin understood that the flaming beast had too many abilities, and each of its heads was responsible for them, and the tiger head had not even shown its capabilities yet. Wei An, who was already fed up with all this, shouted that it was time to end this fight and prepared for something very powerful. Xinjin, realizing that there was little time, commanded the wyvern to use its ultimate Wrath of the Undead as soon as it recovered, and the wyvern quickly carried out the order, as if it had launched its wings at the enemy, which made the spectators begin to rejoice. Using the technique, the beast began to make a whirlpool, and the girl, as soon as she put her hand forward, gave a sign that it was time to act. But the demonic beast did not lag behind and was already preparing a new attack. Wei An, realizing that things were bad, began to panic, thinking that he needed to do something. Otherwise, he would end up in a losing situation. Although Undead Wrath was a fairly powerful skill, it still couldn't finish off the demonic beast, and the girl realized that it was time to deal the killing blow. In a word, she gave the order to act, and the wyvern launched a powerful spear from which the flaming beast hastened to dodge. Wei An even laughed, thinking that such a slow attack was useless. And to Xinjin's surprise, the spear seemed to start turning in the other direction as the enemy beast ran away. The girl could not contain her surprise. She had already spent her powers on the Wrath of the Undead, and now she could not summon a second beast. Lian, meanwhile, shouted to her brother that now was the time to finally finish off the girl. Wei An, hearing his sister, prepared to finish off the enemy without even hearing that they were trying to stop him, and his beast quickly launched a powerful charge straight at the wyvern and its mistress. The beast Xinjin tried to protect the girl by covering her with himself, but suddenly, just when it seemed like the end was near, a large wolf figure flashed past Xinjin's head. The beast quickly fired a counterbeam, preventing the demonic beast from striking the wyvern. And when the blow stopped and the smoke settled, everyone saw Xiao covering the frightened Xinjin with his body. We immediately noticed that this guy's beast easily repelled the roar of the blue demon. Xiao, not paying attention to anything, began to shout at the opponent what he was doing, because according to the rules, if one of the participants runs out of spiritual energy, he is considered the loser, but the guy completely ignored it. The audience began to pick up on Xiao's words, agreeing that it was mean. Advisor C decided to intervene, saying that it was the mistake of the referee who was unable to stop the fight in time, and the man quickly ordered the incompetent referee to be removed from the arena. Xiao didn't even seem surprised that all the blame was placed on the judge. The commentator, sitting on the high platform, calmed the spectators a little and announced that the second fight was over in Si Weian's favor. Xinjin immediately began to justify herself by saying that she could have won, but Xiao quickly stopped her, promising that he would deal with the rest. Lian couldn't help but feel angry at this guy, because if it weren't for him, her brother would have been able to finish off the wyvern. Meanwhile, another judge approached Wei An and said that according to the rules, if one participant wins twice, he is given a pill. The guy quickly took the pill and sarcastically stated that he already knew this. At this time, the arena had already announced that after the defeat of the Azure Dragon, only Xiao Xinyu remained on the field, while no one from the Crane Academy had dropped out. She stepped forward and again heard Wei An's proposal to surrender. But the guy's face changed in an instant when, raising his eyes, he saw a different Xiao in front of him. The guy didn't hide his anger, as if he was on fire, and his eyes were filled with a red light. Such a terrible look frightened even Wei An himself. Xiao at this time declared that now his opponent's sister would see with her own eyes what a miserable state her brother would be in. Wei An, who had summoned the demonic beast again, was not prepared to give up so easily. The guy from the Azure Dragon's side had already managed to summon his wolf, first ordering him to do the Black Fang technique. But Wei An, not lagging behind, gave the order for a bloody whirlpool. Right in the beast's flight, Xiao ordered the use of the Oblivion Claw technique, which almost immediately hit the target. The wolf landed 28 consecutive blows, confusing his opponent while the spectators cheered. Unable to bear it any longer, Wei An ordered a retreat, realizing that the beast would not last long. But Xiao, hearing the order to retreat, decided to take advantage of the moment, commanding the wolf to attack harder, and the guy's beast firmly grabbed the enemy with its mouth. Then the wolf released chains which gradually began to surround the demonic beast, which was still trying to escape. And then, when the chains completely encircled the beast, the wolf jumped high up together with the beast, and from above he fell down on the demonic beast, which howled in pain. Wei An's beast flew down at a rapid speed, and it also quickly crashed, leaving an imprint of its landing in the ground. The demonic beast had a large number of wounds on it, and it seemed like the animal was no longer even making any sounds. Wei An couldn't believe that Xiao the wolf was able to defeat his beast. The boy's father looked at Xiao and didn't understand why his strength and aura were so different from what it was a few days ago. But to the surprise of many, the demonic beast jumped up on its paws, trying not to hold back, and, on the order of its master, began to use fiery punishment. The flaming beast finally shows its true power, and everyone around is starting to think that the wolf won't be able to resist. Xiao reacts almost quickly and gives the command to hunt in the darkness. And the wolf runs quickly towards his goal. The demonic beast fires a powerful beam at its opponent, and for a second, due to the bright flash, it becomes completely impossible to see what is happening. Meanwhile, the wolf, unexpectedly for everyone, found himself behind the animal, and, running out of hiding, the wolf bites the victim's tail with all his might. Wei An, not even suspecting what was happening now, had already begun to sarcastically say that this was the end for his opponent. But Xiao only smiles, making it clear that it seems he does have his own trump card after all. And at that moment, there is a powerful flash that prevents you from seeing anything. Wei An starts screaming that this is not his real body and realizes that it is a clone. The wolf, meanwhile, on the other side, is already running up to the enemy, preparing to attack. And with a powerful roar, the beast hits its target, knocking down everything around. The demonic beast, having fallen to the ground, cannot get up for several more minutes. And Wei An, who is fed up with everything, cannot believe how this is even possible, because it turns out the guy predicted his next move. Clapping his hands, the boy reluctantly admits that Xiao is indeed worthy of him fighting with him, because now he knows him in a completely different way. Unable to contain his anger, Wei extends his hand forward, giving the order to the second form. The demonic beast immediately rises up on its hind legs, continuing to growl menacingly, and suddenly, fur-covered arms begin to emerge from his back. The demonic beast now has 6 arms in addition to 3 heads, and the beast has completely changed. Now his appearance was more frightening, and the beast itself began to stand on its hind legs as if it were a human. Xiao, realizing that the enemy had taken on a humanoid form, thought that this was still not enough to defeat him. Activating the summoning of the second beast, Xiao began to wait, and Wei An couldn't believe that this guy could summon someone else without even knowing who it would be. And suddenly, a small electric rabbit appeared on the arena. Everyone froze in bewilderment. Wei An's mouth even opened in surprise. Yang Shuo, who was retreating from the battle, even let out a surprised sigh. And Xinxian just silently looked at this whole picture. And only Lian, as if understanding something, looked at the little rabbit with distrust. Even the Empress herself looked at the electric rabbit with confusion. And then Wei An lost his mind and started laughing uncontrollably, not believing that the guy was doing this in all seriousness. Adding that Xiao was not worthy of being called a beast hunter, the boy ordered the demonic beast to quickly use the 6 paths hammer to finish this off quickly. The beast, rearing up, confidently clenched his hands into fists, forming a blue flame in them, and he quickly ran towards the wolf, who was still standing on his paws. Xiao, meanwhile, gave the command to the rabbit to help the wolf. And in the arena, the wolf was already fully engaged in defense against the demon's attack. Standing confidently on his paws, the wolf began to howl, summoning a powerful beam that could knock down the enemy. But Wei An understood that it was all useless, because his beast was now 3 times stronger than before, and the Lotus of Hellfire would do nothing to him. But Xiao, hearing his opponent's anxiety, said that maybe one of them wouldn't do anything. But what would happen if there were 2 or 3 of them? Wei An didn't really believe the guy's words because this was the ultimate move of the underworld wolf, and it would take a long time to recharge. But suddenly, something happened that no one expected at all. Right in the middle of the arena, a lotus began to glow with a red light. Wei's mouth dropped open in surprise, not believing that the lotus could open so quickly, and out of fear of losing, the boy quickly commanded to use Blood Whirlpool. But Xiao stopped him, saying that it was too late, holding the little rabbit in his arms. The lotus began to act, striking the demonic beast. And suddenly, to the surprise of others, a second fiery flower appeared in the air, and then the third one, which began to completely absorb the beast. Literally a second later, a powerful explosion is heard in the arena, preventing anyone from seeing anything. And when the smoke finally clears, the end of the fight can be heard being announced in Xiao Xinyu's favor. Wei Yan can't believe her defeat while everyone is saying that this fight will go down in history. The guy couldn't understand how Xiao was able to summon 3 lotuses at all, thinking that maybe that was why he made a contract with the rabbit. But Xiao corrected him, saying that the attack wasn't triple at all, but rather that the ability was simply refreshed 3 times. And finally, the guy said that he could even release 1 more lotus of hellfire. Yang Shuo began to shout joyfully, unable to contain his joy. Meanwhile, the Red Crane director, seeing one of his students lose, immediately ordered Zi Lian to go out next to fight. But the girl almost immediately declared that she would simply be ground into dust. But she had no choice because her father was sitting in the stands, and showing herself in a bad light was simply unacceptable. Lian stepped forward with her crane and stated that she never expected anyone to defeat her brother. Xiao, seeing the girl, laughed and said that he had been waiting for her for a long time. And the next second, his face changed to a serious one. And the guy declared that now he must avenge Lu Jin and destroy the beast Leon. The girl said that it would be better for the guy if he simply played along with her, or just gave up, since her father was sitting in the stands. But Xiao didn't care about this at all, and the guy decided to quickly start fighting. The girl released her water peacock and immediately gave it the order to attack. But as soon as the bird flew towards the enemy, it seemed as if something pushed it away. Lian looked at her beast uncertainly, not understanding what was going on. And then Xiao reminded her that he had promised to destroy her animal. The peacock quickly gave in and, under the pressure of Xiao's attacks, quickly fell to the ground, almost lifeless. The fight ended in literally 1 attack in favor of the Azure Dragon. Lian looked at her wounded animal in fear, not believing that the firewolf was even capable of such a thing. The girl already understood that she wouldn't be able to win, but now she only needed to last 3 rounds, and then at least she wouldn't disgrace her academy and family. The judge quickly brought the girl to her senses, saying that she could summon the second beast. But she was stopped by Wei An, who said that his sister refused to participate and that they should call the next participant. The fight ended very quickly again in favor of the Laser Dragon Academy, and the third participant, Dongfang Qing, finally entered the arena. The young guy, who seemed completely harmless, had already begun to come up with a plan on how to defeat his opponent. And stretching out his hand forward, Qing clearly stated that Xiao should pray, because soon everything would end. The guy summoned 3 large birds at once, which were already ready to cling to the victim with their claws. But they all fell in a fairly short time, and Qing raised his hands and said that he surrendered. The director of the academy could not bear such shame. Xiao thought that this Qing was the strongest of his team and breathed a sigh of relief that the strongest opponent was the first one. But Qing shrugged and said that even if Wei An lost, he didn't have much of a chance. Yang Shuo and Xin Xin immediately started running up to Xiao, congratulating the guy on his victory, which had not come so easily to them. The guy, seeing how calm the girl was, even asked her the reason for her calmness because she should be happy for their victory. But without waiting for an answer, Xiao picked up Xin Xin and began to shout joyfully, suggesting to celebrate such a significant moment. Meanwhile, the other team was beside themselves with anger. Wei An tried to vent his anger by hitting the wall, and in the arena, fireworks had already been launched in honor of the winning team, and the spectators all shouted words of congratulations. She saw that the system had finally closed the quest and received an attribute crystal and a bloodline enhancement crystal as a reward. Smiling pleasantly, the guy was very glad that the mission was finally accomplished. After looking into the system, he also learned that the attribute crystal allowed the beast to add another attribute, but the bloodline enhancement crystal improved the beast's bloodline, which could very well suit Black Fang. The Empress approached the young men and, having hung a medal on each of them, congratulated each one. Xiao leaned forward with a carefree smile and waited for his medal. But when he felt the Empress's no longer so soft hand on his head, everything in the guy's body tightened, The Empress leaned towards Xiao and whispered to him, asking if they had met before. Xiao didn't even know what to answer because now everything was at stake. But the Empress immediately moved away when the cup was brought to her. Noticing the guy's excitement, Shangguanlan immediately asked why he was so nervous, and the guy could not find anything else to do but simply answer that he was very nervous, being so close to the respected Empress for the first time. All three winners stood with medals around their necks and smiled. But only Xiao, clutching the cup tighter, could not understand why Shangguan had told him about this at all. It seemed like the guy was really in great danger. Already in the evening, near the residential complex, there was a crowd of fans waiting only for Xiao. Many people wanted to get the guy's autograph and also invite him to their guild. But without even listening to the others, the guy simply turned around and went inside the building. Xiao understood that the more famous a person was, the more trouble there would be, and decided to just go back as quickly as possible. But Yang Shuo, who was standing next to him, did not understand why the guy refused so easily. After all, these people were from the top 50 guilds of the country. But Xiao was very loyal to Qin Yanren and the ant from the Heavenly Guild, who were very kind to him, and the guy could not leave so easily. And as soon as the boys entered, they were already met by a joyful Sue with a bottle in her hands. And next to her was Teacher Chen, who was grumbling to the director that she herself had established the rule that students were not allowed to drink alcohol. Director Sue, who had already drunk enough, immediately began to grumble that this rule should be abolished. And approaching Xiao, the girl hugged him with one arm, saying that even though he was the star of the evening, it was clear that something was bothering him. The director, having promised to help the guy relax, began to wait for Xiao's answer, but the guy simply asked the girl to show him her legs. Sue immediately grabbed the guy by the collar of his shirt, calling him a pervert. And Teacher Chen, Yang Shuo, and Xin Xin looked at the guy sarcastically, realizing that after such words he was finished. Dragging the guy along with her, Sue led him into the room and, locking the door, they were left alone. Pressing Xiao against the wall, the girl said that the guy had a lot of courage to ask for such things. But suddenly, Sue unexpectedly took a step back, lifting her skirt a little, revealing her beautiful legs. And going closer to the guy again, the girl suggested that if he passes the certification for a 4th-star tamer by the end of this semester, he will be able to do more than just watch. But when Sue wanted to continue speaking, she was suddenly interrupted by a voice from the side asking her not to flirt in this room. Turning his head, the guy saw a girl who told him that the Empress was inviting him to the palace for a conversation and that the whole journey would take only 4 hours. Xiao, who understood that he couldn't refuse, only briefly agreed, preparing for the worst. 2 hours later, he was already in the Imperial City. The girl who accompanied him kindly offered to go inside from one of the palaces, saying that the Empress was already waiting for him. Seeing that even the entrance was guarded by a beast in the form of a beast king, Xiao felt everything inside him tense up with fear, not understanding what awaited him. And exhaling, the guy slowly headed inside. Entering the hall, Shangguanlan was already waiting for him, calmly sitting on her throne and smiling sweetly at the guest, asking if Xiao knew why she had called him. Having decided to improvise, the guy declared that he was far from the girl's wisdom. And then, Shangguan told that a serious crime had recently occurred in the Dragon State. An unknown person had kidnapped a death row prisoner, and at that time the guy was not in the city. Shu tried his best to keep his cool and not show his excitement, and in order not to arouse suspicion, he asked what this had to do with him. The Empress related how Advisor Sai had hypothesized today that if a person was hiding anything, he might be hiding his true strength and identity. Xie scratched his head and said that this was too general a conclusion, and that it did not apply to him at all. But suddenly, the Empress stood up from her throne, still holding a sweet smile. Slowly walking towards the guy, Xiao heard every click of her heels, which made him even more tense. But Shangguan walked past him a little and stood in such a way that Xiao could only feel her with his back. And turning around a little, the girl declared that it meant he was that man in the black cloak, which caused goosebumps to run all over Xiao's body, and fear began to overcome him completely. As he expected, Shangguan understood everything, and now it was completely unclear what he should do. And while thinking what to do next, the guy felt a woman's hand on his shoulder. And then the girl laughed a little and said that she was just joking. Xiao quickly turned around and asked the Empress if she hadn't suspected him. But she reassured the boy, saying that her people had called his sister and she had said that he would return home for a day or two and then go out to catch a new rabbit. Shangguan thought the guy was very cute, even though the advisor suspected him, but the guy had even gotten his first beast less than a year ago, so there was no way he could be that man in the cloak. Xu felt relieved, but he was already able to hide his fear from the stress he had experienced. And even though his sister had saved him, the guy would definitely have to thank her for it. The Empress continued to say softly that she thought the boy was very cute, but then Shangguan asked what Xiao would do after he graduated from the academy. But the boy still had 3 years and somehow didn't think about it. To this, the girl stated that ultimately he would have only 3 paths. The first is to join a trapper's guild. The second is to join the army to become part of the land, sea, or air forces. And the third is to join an international organization and become a bounty hunter. Coming a little closer to Xiao, the Empress asked him that if she gave him the 4th option, would the guy accept it? It began to dawn on Xiao that the girl might try to take advantage of the guy due to her position. Finally, Shangguan offered the boy to become part of the Imperial Soul and serve her. The Imperial Soul organization was Shangguan's personal guard, and they were essentially suicide bombers carrying out the most dangerous missions. The regular members of the Silver Priests are completely replaced every month, which once again proves the mortal danger of this profession. Seeing that the guy was thinking for a long time, Shangguan decided to ask him again if he agreed with her proposal. Xiao thought for a moment and thanked the Empress for this opportunity. As soon as he started to say this, Shangguan interrupted him, realizing that he wanted to refuse, but Xiao tried to assure her that he really wanted to enter the Imperial Soul. Patting the guy on the shoulder, the girl gently replied that she immediately noticed that Xiao was a smart guy and made the right choice. Exhaling, the guy realized that it was as if he had no choice.